The story began in a bustling town, filled with adventurers walking through the streets. His name was Rita Dixon. He was a member of the C-rank party, Jet Black Wolves. Because he admired the life of adventurers, he came to the royal capital when he was 25. Now, 5 years later, he was the only one who still remained an F-ranker at 30 years old. He may have been weak in combat, but a girl suddenly sat on the ground, saying her knee hurt. The other child looked at her and called her weak as always, while another told them to leave her behind. Rita noticed the children and walked over to them. He politely approached, then asked if he could look at her knee for a moment. While crying, the girl asked why. Rita then healed her knee. The girl reacted in shock, realizing the pain was gone. Rita told her to keep it a secret. The girl happily agreed. She waved at him and thanked him with joy. Rita revealed that he had a personal skill called heals. He then murmured that he was a little thirsty. Rita also possessed an item box. While drinking, he wondered what Jill was thinking, suddenly calling him to the tavern. He thought perhaps it was about how they would rank their party up to be this time. After a while, Jill, the leader of the Jet Black Wolves, apologized and asked Rita to leave the party. Rita reacted in confusion. Jill coldly told him not to make that face. He said he had gone out of his way to speak kindly and even imitate manners for this talk. Then Jill bluntly declared that Rita was fired. Rita stood up and questioned Jill, asking what had happened so suddenly. Jill replied that it was not sudden at all. Their party now had a chance to rise from C rank to B rank. Rita said he had already heard about that, but did not understand why it led to this. Jill answered that Rita had only been useful as a substitute for potions and as someone to carry luggage. He no longer wanted Rita slowing them down. Rita tried to argue that he had still supported the party, but Jill angrily slammed his cup onto the table. Jill said they had been struggling desperately ever since they were 10 years old. Someone who only started in his mid-20s and had never ranked up at all should quietly disappear. Then Jill calmly added that Rita should leave behind all the items they had entrusted to him until now. When Rita tried to speak, Jill cut him off again and said they could not afford to hand over any equipment when they were about to challenge the next rank. Rita shouted for Jill to wait a moment. Without those items, he would no longer be able to work as an adventurer. Jill smirked and questioned him about being an adventurer at all. He told Rita that he was never suited for that life and should return to the countryside to plow fields instead. Rita fell silent, his fists tightly clenched. After a long breath, he told Jill that he understood. This was their farewell. Jill replied that he never wanted to see him again and called him useless. Rita walked away in silence. Behind him, Jill shouted that their rise to B rank was now guaranteed and loudly thanked him for leaving. Rita continued walking quietly. Then a girl suddenly called out in surprise after noticing him. Rita turned and recognized Rinser. Rinser, who was Rita's lover, looked at him and asked if he had quit being an adventurer. She then noted that if he had quit, his income would be gone as well. Rita quietly admitted that was true. Rinser paused for a moment. Then she told him that if that was the case, she had no more use for him, and they were breaking up. Rita reacted in confusion, unable to understand what she meant. Rinser remarked that he truly was a slow person. She told him that if he no longer had money, there was no value left in dating him. Rita repeated her words in disbelief. He reminded her of everything he had done for her until now. Rinser asked if he meant the money. She said that since she had allowed someone like him to go out with a beauty like her, it was only natural for him to hand over money. She asked if that was not obvious. Rita answered that the money was for the parents she told him were buried in debt. He only wanted to help her family. Rinser laughed lightly and questioned him about those parents. She told him he truly believed that story. Then she coldly added that she had not even seen her parents' faces in years. Rita asked if that meant she had lied to him and wondered why. Rinser stepped closer to him. She told him it was for the money and asked what else he could have expected. She then turned and walked away, saying goodbye because she had another date to attend. Rita asked who the date was with. Rinser replied that it was with someone who had plenty of money, a superior adventurer, unlike him. Rita tried to stop her, refusing to accept it. Rinser waved him off and told him goodbye, adding that he should never speak to her again. As she walked away, Rita quietly murmured Rinser's name. Rita stood alone at night, broken and weighed down by sorrow. By the next morning he was still asleep on his bed. Empty beer bottles were scattered across the floor. Rita slowly woke up and noticed that morning had already come. He sat upright, rubbing his head as pain throbbed through it. He wondered if he had really drunk that much yesterday. Then the memories of last night returned all at once. Rita gave an awkward laugh. He noted to himself that he still had it in him to laugh. Rita then slapped his own face and declared that he would refresh himself first. After that, he needed to look for a new job today. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, capital headquarters, Rita looked around and hoped there would be something he could do. A girl suddenly told him that she had kept him waiting. Rita flinched in surprise. He turned toward her and awkwardly recognized Syra. Saira then asked him to follow her to the back and requested that he explain his situation there. Rita tried to protest, saying it was not yet his turn, but Saira firmly asked him again to come with her. After some time, Saira declared it unbelievable and questioned why Jill would do something so shameless. Rita looked at her in confusion. Saira then stated clearly that Jill was acting under a misunderstanding. She explained that the guild had extended the rank-up proposal to the entire party, and that naturally included Rita as well. Rita showed clear confusion at those words. Saira, a staff member of the Adventurers Guild capital headquarters, explained further that while Rita's adventurer rank remained low, he still possessed an item box and healing magic, both of which held value. Rita responded that his healing magic could easily be replaced by potions, and that his item box was only useful for carrying things around. Saira let out a deep sigh. She said she understood now. Those irresponsible people must have planted such thoughts in him so they could continue using him for their own convenience. Saira then told Rita firmly that both his healing magic and his item box were extremely rare abilities, and that he needed to understand that. She added that if the jet black wolves had not always been causing so much trouble, Rita would have already risen much higher in rank by now. Rita awkwardly remarked that such a thing sounded silly. Saira suddenly raised her voice in frustration, telling him that he did not understand his own value at all. Rita tried to calm the situation and told Saira to set that aside for now. He explained that he had come there today to look for new work. Saira blushed slightly and excused herself for losing her temper. She then told him that they currently had several jobs available for him to review. On top of that, there were also a number of parties actively looking to invite healers to join them. As Rita looked through the notices, one headline caught his attention. It was an immigrant recruitment posting. Rita pointed it out to Saira. Saira apologized and explained that it was an immigrant recruitment notice that must have gotten mixed in with the others. Rita read the paper carefully and thought about the town of Amulus. Too many things had happened to him in this city lately. It might be good to start fresh somewhere else. With sudden energy, Rita declared that he would go to Amulus town. Saira reacted in surprise and tried to stop him. Later that night, beneath a peaceful sky, Rita sat alone beside a campfire. As he sipped from his cup, he quietly noted that spring might be close, yet the nights were still cold. There were still 3 days left until he reached Amulus, or so he guessed. Rita reflected that Saira had tried everything she could to stop him at first, yet in the end she warmly sent him off. He remembered Saira telling him that she had a good friend at the guild in Amulus, and asking him to take a letter of introduction with him. Rita noted that she had even handed him an introduction letter for the local guild. He thought she was truly a kind person. She had also arranged for him to travel halfway there on the carriage of a trader. Rita opened his item box and declared that tonight he would treat himself by grilling a thick slice of fine meat. Even while traveling like this, raw meat would not spoil at all. He then admitted that the item box was far more useful than he had once believed. Oil and milk, root vegetables, salt and pepper, and finally some bread were all brought out one after another. Those should do it, he thought. Rita began cooking the meat in the pan when a sudden stomach rumble echoed through the quiet night. He flinched and quickly noted that it had not come from him. Rita immediately grabbed his knife and cautiously asked if someone was there, telling them to come out. The figure remained silent for a moment before slowly stepping out from hiding. Rita looked over in surprise. A young girl with empty eyes and torn clothes stood there quietly. He put away his knife and muttered in surprise that it was a girl. Looking at her condition, he realized she was completely worn out. Rita gently asked if there was anyone else with her, such as her father or mother. The girl silently shook her head. Rita grew concerned. A child that young, alone in a place like this, surely had more behind her situation. He then asked if she was hungry and invited her to eat together with him. The girl gave no answer. Rita awkwardly urged her to come closer, saying it was cold over there. He added that this old man had been lonely by himself and would be glad if she joined him for dinner. At that moment, the girl's stomach rumbled again. Slowly, she began walking toward him. The girl ate with desperate hunger. Rita realized she must have been starving for some time. Then her stomach rumbled once more. Rita told her it was fine and encouraged her to eat some meat too. He assured her that this uncle still had plenty left. The girl looked at him with quiet amazement. After a while, they finished eating. The girl softly thanked him for the meal. Rita told her she was welcome. Since they had already shared a meal together, he decided to introduce himself properly. He told her his name was Rita Dykens, an adventurer of sorts. The girl simply introduced herself as Mina. Rita then asked Mina if she knew where her home was or if there was any other place she could go. Mina shook her head again. Rita looked troubled. He then asked if she wanted to come with him for now. He explained that he was heading toward a town called Amulus. Along the way, he would first stop by a smaller town nearby. Mina quietly asked if that was truly all right. Rita answered that it was. He then pointed out that her feet were hurting, were they not? He said he would treat them and asked if he could touch them. Mina replied that he did not have any medicine. Rita answered that he did not actually need any. He quietly focused on soothing the girl's wounds. In the next moment, Mina's injuries healed completely, leaving her stunned. She exclaimed that it was amazing and that it no longer hurt anymore. She thanked him again, though she hesitated over what to call him. Rita smiled and told her that just Rita was fine. With tears in her eyes, Mina happily agreed and thanked Rita once more. After that, he gave Mina some honey tea so her body would not grow cold. Then the two of them slept soundly together inside the small tent until morning arrived. The sound of wheels echoed through the quiet forest as Rita and Mina sat in silence on the moving cart. Mina suddenly expressed how glad she was that they had met someone kind like Rita. Rita answered with a small smile in agreement. The old man driving the cart spoke up and told them the place was already in sight. He pointed ahead and revealed that it was Morelia. At last they had arrived. Rita thanked the old man sincerely. The old man brushed it off, saying he only did what he wanted to do. Soon after, another elderly man greeted them with curiosity, wondering what business a father and daughter had in such a remote town. Rita introduced himself as Rita Dixon and introduced the girl beside him as Mina. Mina politely greeted the man as well. The old man let out a soft chuckle and warmly remarked that she was a sweet little lady. He then introduced himself as Roji Morelia, the mayor of the small town. Rita shook hands with him and told him they would be under his care for a few days. Roji then noticed Mina's condition and asked if she had even walked through puddles. He advised them to first wash her up in the inn's bath. He explained that if they continued straight ahead, they would find a store, with a woman running the inn and an old grandmother managing the shop. He told them to buy clothes and shoes there. Rita thanked him for his kindness. Roji chuckled again and said that even if the town had little to offer, the people were kind and the food was delicious, so they could rest and relax there. The doorbell rang suddenly. A cheerful woman welcomed them into Sparrow's Wings Inn. Rita awkwardly mentioned that they wished to stay the night. The woman glanced at Mina and immediately decided that the girl should take a bath first. She rushed to a cabinet, opened it, and quickly assigned them room 201 on the second floor. She explained that the price included meals and cost 2 silver coins. She also pointed out that the bath was to the left. Then she tossed a pair of boots to Rita, explaining that Mina could not go shopping barefoot. She added that she would take them back later, so they should go shopping after the bath. Rita thanked her deeply. The woman only winked and brushed it aside. Mina, slightly shy, quietly thanked the woman as well. Rita then said they would head to the bath first, and Mina agreed. A sudden thought crossed Rita's mind, and he asked whether Mina could bathe by herself. Mina flinched at the question and shyly insisted that she was no longer a child. At the women's bath, Mina removed her clothes and carefully placed them in the basket. Lost in a daze, Mina suddenly murmured about father and daughter, her voice soft and confused. After a while, Mina told Rita that she had returned. She worriedly apologized and asked if he had waited long. Rita assured her it was fine, and more importantly, they would now go buy clothes and shoes. The woman at the inn gave them a thumbs up and happily urged them to go and buy some cute clothes for her. Mina looked confused at the remark. Rita waved to the woman and told her they would be heading out. Afterward, they entered the store. A voice welcomed them inside. Rita greeted the owner and explained that he wanted to buy clothes and shoes for Mina. The old woman reacted warmly and remarked about father and daughter adventures before calling Mina closer. Then she looked at Mina's worn clothing in surprise and asked why her clothes were so shabby and worn out. She wondered if the girl had no spare clothes at all. Rita scratched his head and gave a vague answer. The old woman told them to wait for a moment while she searched for something that would fit. When she returned, she brought a pair of boots and a one-piece outfit made from fairly good fabric, suitable for a short trip. She then called Mina over to try them on. Mina quietly entered the dressing room. The old woman suddenly asked Rita if there was a reason behind it all. Rita answered that he had come to this town to see whether there was anyone who knew her, but there was still uncertainty. The old woman told him it was unfortunate, but she had never seen Mina before. Since it was a small town, all the residents were close and knew one another. Rita quietly asked if that was so. Mina then peeked through the curtain and softly called for Rita. She stepped out of the dressing room. Mina stood there anxiously, fidgeting with her fingers as she waited for Rita's reaction. The old woman gave Rita a small shrug, signaling him to respond. Rita then told Mina that she looked cute. In his mind, he already knew she was cute, but he had not expected it to this extent. The old woman then asked if they should choose more clothes for her as well. Mina reacted in surprise. The old woman reminded her that she was traveling, and one set of clothes would never be enough. Rita gently patted Mina's head and told her they would take whichever clothes she liked. Mina began searching through the hanging outfits. After a moment, she shyly picked one and asked about it. The old woman answered positively and asked if she was sure she liked it, or if she wanted to see others first. Mina turned back to the rack and continued searching. Soon, she tried on another outfit and stepped out again, quietly asking how it looked. Rita told her it suited her very well. Mina blushed and could not finish her words properly. Rita then asked what would be next and told her to show them more. After a while, the old woman joyfully thanked them for their patronage and said she would offer one set of clothes as an extra service. Rita thanked her sincerely. They exited the store. Rita told Mina that he could store the items for her if needed. Mina shook her head. Then Mina nervously called Rita's name. Rita asked what it was. Mina smiled and thanked him for buying her clothes, saying she would treasure them. Rita told her she was welcome and suggested they return to the inn for their meal. They went back to Sparrow's Wings Inn. Mina and Rita gave thanks for the food together. Mina spoke with amazement, saying the demon pig steak was truly delicious. Rita agreed and noted that the pig seemed to be a specialty product of the area. It was the first time he had tasted such meat. The woman replied that it was their signature dish. She proudly added that the demon pigs raised in town were especially the best. However, she mentioned that some trouble had been happening lately. Rita suddenly asked what was going on, noticing how noisy it had become outside. The woman turned toward the unexpected commotion and said she would step out for a while. Rita peeked through the door and wondered what was happening outside. Then he flinched in surprise. Injured people were being brought in. An old man shouted for potions from the storage. Another man said he had brought light. Rita looked around in confusion at the large number of wounded people. Mina worriedly asked what had happened. One injured man cried out in pain while the old man urged another patient to hold on. The old man then approached the wounded and said he had brought herbal painkillers. Another voice cried out in shock that there were even fatally injured people among them. Rita quickly stepped forward and excused himself, saying he was an adventurer who could use healing magic and asked to help. The woman noticed Rita. Mina watched in surprise as Rita told her to stay at the inn. Mina refused and insisted on coming too. Rita urgently asked to be taken to the fatally injured first. The woman pointed toward a certain place and directed him there. The old woman shook her head and said that without a priest's healing, the man would be finished. His stomach had been torn open. Rita answered that he would try for now. He then cast healing magic. Mina approached them carrying bandages and herbs. She asked what had happened to everyone. The old woman turned to her warmly and thanked Mina. She then explained that a pack of wolves had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and attacked their livestock. The injured man let out a weak chuckle and said they ended up like this when they went to hunt the wolves. He told Rita that he was fine and urged him to help the others instead. Rita sharply told the man that since he was awake now, he needed to stop talking. Rita worriedly realized the wound was not closing and thought he should have learned advanced healing magic. Rita then firmly declared that if one cast was not enough, he would keep using it as many times as necessary. He repeatedly cast his healing spell. Slowly, the fatal wound began to close. The injured man looked shocked and asked if the pain was gone. He tore away the bandage and stared in disbelief. He shouted that he had been healed. The old woman stood stunned and wondered if Rita could use healing magic equal to that of a priest. The injured man deeply thanked Rita. Rita calmly replied that it was only beginner-level healing magic. He then silently activated Wind Wash in his mind. After that, he called for the next fatally injured person. A man quickly answered that there were 4 more. With tears in her eyes, the old woman said this power might even save her son. Mina encouraged Rita and wished him the best. Rita answered confidently and told her to leave it to him. Sweating heavily from the strain, Rita eventually announced that this was the last one. He silently cast heal in his mind once more. The injured man happily moved his healed arms in amazement. He then bowed deeply to Rita and thanked him. Rita wiped the sweat from his face and let out a tired sigh. Suddenly, a voice called out to Rita. The gathered crowd bowed before him. Roji Morelia stepped forward and said they could not thank him enough for saving their people. Rita quickly asked them to raise their heads, saying he had only done what he was supposed to do. Roji apologized for causing him trouble and said they could only offer 500 silver coins for his hard work. Rita immediately refused, saying it was too much. He explained that he had only acted as a substitute for potions and could not accept that amount. Roji told him to stop joking, saving that many injured people would normally cost 2,000 silver coins. Rita reacted in surprise. The old woman then asked whether Rita was perhaps a priest or healer, wondering how he could not know the cost of treatment. Rita scratched his head and said that since wounds could heal on their own, he had never cared much about such matters. The woman looked at him in amazement and explained that only a handful of people could use healing magic. Even treating a small wound usually required expensive potions. Roji added that if a priest were healing someone on the verge of death, he could only imagine how much payment they would demand. The old woman then told Rita that even if it was truly beginner healing magic as he claimed, the nobles would still want such an ability for themselves. Rita could only ask in confusion. Then Rita thought about what Syra had once said regarding his own value. Rita suggested that perhaps taking that day's accommodation as payment would be enough. Roji Morelia shook his head and said that alone would not be enough. Mina suddenly offered another idea, suggesting that they be given accommodation the next time they visited again. Roji considered it and then proposed something better. From that day onward, whenever they came to Morelia, their stay would be free of charge. Mina smiled happily and asked Rita if he was not glad. Rita responded with an awkward smile. Rita then told Roji that he would accept it. After that, he asked whether the men were planning to head out and hunt the demon wolves. Roji answered that they had no choice. If things continued like this, their livestock would keep being attacked, and eventually the wolves might even enter the town itself. Rita then asked to join them as well. Roji looked surprised and asked if he truly meant it. Rita turned to Mina and explained that they were on their way to Amulus. He did not want the two of them to be attacked while traveling alone. He added that although there was not much he could do, he also knew some offensive magic and believed he would not hold them back. Roji immediately denied that thought, saying there was no way Rita would hold them back. Just having someone who could use healing magic would allow everyone to fight with ease. Rita smiled and said he would be in their care. Roji replied the same, warmly placing themselves in Rita's care as well. Afterward, back at Sparrow's Wings Inn, Rita let out a sigh and said he felt refreshed. He then told Mina that she had done well too. Mina thanked him. Mina smiled, then suddenly called out to him. Rita turned toward her curiously. Mina blushed and told him that he had looked really cool. Rita immediately blushed in embarrassment and awkwardly thanked her. He then told her he was about to turn off the light. Mina quietly agreed. Rita extinguished the light and wished Mina good night. Mina returned the greeting. Later, morning arrived. The men had already gathered together. Rita greeted everyone with a good morning. The men cheerfully greeted him back. Another man then told Rita to give them orders. Rita answered firmly that they would now go hunt some demon wolves. The men shouted their agreement in unison. Time passed, and the demon wolves surrounded the wagons as the men raised their weapons and took defensive positions. The wolves stared at them with fierce eyes. A woman apologized to Dict and said they had gotten her right leg. Dict called out to her in shock, recognizing it was Feifa. He cursed and wondered why demon wolves were this close to town. Dict then shouted for everyone to protect their employer and the wagon. Feifa cried out in pain. One of the men shouted that the wolf's fur was so tough that even arrows could not pierce it. Dict cursed under his breath and worried about how things were turning out. He suddenly asked Feifa if she could still use magic. Feifa answered that she could still continue. She silently cast a spell in her mind, calling on the spirit of fire to burn down the enemy. Then she released Fireball. The spell struck one of the wolves, leaving only a small burn as smoke rose from its fur. Feifa realized it was useless. She cast the same spell again, knowing one attack alone would not defeat them. Dict suddenly flinched in surprise as a wolf slipped past him. The beast lunged straight toward Feifa with its jaws wide open. Feifa cried out in fear as tears gathered in her eyes. At that instant, Rita crashed into the wolf and drove it away from Feifa. The wolf slammed onto the ground. One of the men shouted in excitement. He raised his sword and successfully stabbed the fallen wolf. The men then shouted for everyone to follow Rita and Commander Riggs. Commander Riggs called for them to move, and the men answered in unison. Rita quickly warned the commander that even if wounds were healed, lost blood and physical strength would not return, so they should not act too recklessly. Rita then approached Feifa and excused himself. He immediately realized her bones were broken. Feifa looked at him with confusion while sweating heavily from the pain. She cried out when Rita touched the wound. Rita silently cast heal in his mind. While working, he asked whether they were adventurers. An old man suddenly called out to Commander Riggs. Riggs turned in surprise and recognized him as Eric. Eric confirmed it was him and explained that they were escorting a peddler from the capital. Rita then announced that it was done. Feifa's wound had completely healed. Feifa shouted in disbelief that she had been healed. Dick then asked Rita if they were going to help them as well. Rita moved forward and healed him too. Rita answered that it was true. They had come there to hunt the demon wolves. Eric thanked Rita deeply and tried to speak about treatment costs. Rita immediately cut him off and told him it was fine, as it would be free of charge. Dick shouted his thanks and declared that he and Feifa would handle the left side of the carriage. He said the right side would be left to the people of the town. The others shouted their agreement and launched their attack against the wolves. The men roared as they charged. Commander Riggs ordered everyone to surround them one by one and kill them. Commander Riggs then sat beside Rita and said that at this rate, they might be able to completely subjugate the demon wolves. Rita quietly cast a healing spell on the man's injured leg. Suddenly, Rita told everyone to wait. The men flinched in surprise. Someone shouted that something was coming. Then a massive demon wolf appeared before them. The men froze where they stood. Rita shouted in shock at the sight of it. Commander Riggs exclaimed that it was enormous and wondered if it was the boss. The giant demon wolf swung its tail and struck the men, sending them flying. When the dust settled, only Rita and Commander Riggs remained standing. The massive beast fixed its fierce eyes on them. Commander Riggs nervously asked if it was staring at them. Rita answered that he thought so too. The wolf let out a thunderous roar and leaped toward them. As it charged forward, its huge body crashed past the others and hurled more men into the air. Commander Riggs cried out in panic as it closed in. He admitted he might not be able to do much, but he would still protect Rita. Rita answered that he would have to attack as well. He closed his eyes and quietly chanted in his mind, calling upon the spirit of fire to burn the enemy. A cluster of fireballs suddenly appeared, stunning Commander Riggs. Rita released the spell, and the fireballs shot toward the beast from every direction. They struck it repeatedly from all sides. The monster halted in its tracks. Rita shouted that it had stopped. Without wasting time, he chanted another spell in his mind, calling forth a spear of flame to pierce the enemy and burn it down. At once, a sharp lance of fire burst upward from the ground beneath the wolf and stabbed through its body. Rita unleashed Fire Lance. More blazing spears appeared one after another, piercing the beast again and again. Then, as suddenly as they had come, the fire lances vanished. Deep holes remained across the beast's body as blood burst from the wounds. The massive demon wolf released one final breath and collapsed lifeless to the ground. After the battle ended, Rita made his magic book disappear. The men stared at the fallen beast in shock. Feifa asked what that had been. Dick said it was Flame Lance, but wondered what kind of power it truly was. Commander Riggs told Rita that his magic was incredible. Rita looked at him with confusion. The commander explained that it was the first time he had ever seen something like that. Rita scratched his head and awkwardly said that even so, he was still only F rank. He was a mage after all. Meanwhile, Dick suddenly flinched and shouted for everyone not to get distracted. The remaining wolves were running away. Feifa immediately agreed and urged them to hunt down the rest. Rita quickly offered to help as well, asking them to take care of the wagon while he joined in. At the same time, back at Sparrow's Wings Inn, Mina worriedly said that Rita still had not returned. The old woman smiled and assured her that her father would likely come back safely. Suddenly, the woman called out to her mother and to Mina, announcing that they had returned. Mina flinched in surprise and rushed outside. From a distance, she stared at Rita with wide eyes. Rita smiled toward the gathered men, while Mina smiled in relief. Rita then noticed Mina in the crowd. She walked over to him, and Rita opened his arms to welcome her. Mina ran into his embrace and hugged him warmly, welcoming him back. Later that night, the people held a feast. The townspeople happily danced around a large campfire. Rita remarked that it was a celebration for the subjugation of the demon wolves. He added that ale after a job well done tasted especially good. He was also glad that Mina seemed to be enjoying herself. Roji Morelia suddenly called out to Rita and asked whether he was having fun. Rita answered that he was enjoying it. The mayor sat beside him and then brought up Rita's planned departure for Amulus the next day. At that moment, Eric Latcher loudly called out to both Morelia and Rita. Roji remarked that Eric had arrived at the perfect time. Eric apologized for forgetting to introduce himself earlier and explained that he was Eric Latcher from the Latcher Corporation. Rita introduced himself as Rita Dixon. Eric smiled and thanked him for what he had done that day. Thanks to Rita, all of his escorts were safe. Since the products were unharmed as well, he could now travel to Amulus without worry. Rita replied that he was glad to hear it. Eric then mentioned that he had heard from Roji that Rita planned to head to Amulus with his daughter. He offered that they travel together with his group. Rita asked if that was truly all right. Just then, a voice suddenly called to Rita. Mina stood there and asked him to dance together. Rita told Mina to wait, admitting that he could not dance. The woman pushed him forward and told him not to worry about that and simply go. Eric Latcher told Rita that they would see him tomorrow. Rita gave a brief reply and turned toward Mina, who was smiling at him. In his thoughts, Rita repeated the word dance. It had been a long time since he had last done such a thing. Mina moved her feet to the rhythm and laughed as she guided Rita through the dance. Rita awkwardly recalled an old memory, remembering that he had once danced with Rincer. A man jokingly shouted, asking what had happened to the town's hero and why his face looked so gloomy. Rita blushed deeply in embarrassment and shouted for them to stop calling him that. A laugh slipped from Mina's lips, causing Rita to look at her in confusion. In his thoughts, Rita knew there were things he needed to consider. He wondered whether it would truly be a good thing to bring Mina along with him. No one in Morelia had known her. His journey would end in Amulus. Mina then pointed out that Rita's face had turned very red. Rita continued thinking that there was no guarantee they would find anyone in Amulus who knew her either. If that were the case, then this town where she had begun to open up might have been enough. Rita suddenly called Mina's name. Mina looked at him with a questioning expression. Rita told her that he would be leaving for Amulus tomorrow. Mina smiled brightly and said she was looking forward to it. Rita stood stunned for a moment. Surprise crossed his face as he looked at her, and a quiet smile formed on his lips. Rita then told her that things would become difficult starting tomorrow, so they should sleep once the celebration ended. Mina happily agreed. When morning came, the townspeople gathered to see them off. Rita thanked Eric sincerely. Eric replied that they should help one another. The lady handed Mina some cookies they had baked. The old woman gently patted Mina's head and told her to eat properly. Mina thanked them both. Commander Riggs told Rita to please come again. Roji Morelia chuckled and said Rita would always be welcome there. Eric then told Rita that if he had finished saying farewell, he should climb aboard. Rita answered and got ready to leave. The townspeople watched as the wagon slowly departed. They shouted Rita's name and asked him to visit again someday, saying they would be waiting for him. The wagon rolled away from the town. Dick let out a sigh and said that being unable to do anything against the demon wolves showed they still had a long way to go. Pfeiffer agreed completely. Dick asked whether Rita was truly only F rank, even though he could use such amazing healing magic. Pfeiffer added that his offensive magic had been incredible as well. Dick then said with embarrassment that they were also F rank, but doubted they would ever make it to E rank. Rita encouraged him, saying he was still young and could make it. If he continued like this, he could even reach C rank or B rank someday. Dick smiled and said that if that were true, then he was glad to hear it. A man suddenly called out to the leader, warning that things might get dangerous from there onward and telling him to stay alert. Dick answered that it was work time. He then told Pfeiffer to move out. Pfeiffer agreed. The two stepped down from the wagon. Eric Latcher then told Rita that at this pace, they would arrive before evening. Rita looked surprised and asked if they would arrive by evening. He had heard it should take 2 days. Eric explained that 2 days would have been by the old route, when travelers had to go around the mountain. Now they could go straight through because a bridge had been built and a new route had been established, making travel much easier. Rita let out a sigh and remarked that the development of Amulus was truly something else. Their journey continued peacefully as Mina and Rita enjoyed the freshly baked cookies. Suddenly, the wagon came to a halt. Rita turned his head and saw walls rising in the distance. He remarked that it was a town. Mina asked if it was Amulus. Rita observed that a large number of people were working on the half-finished outer wall. Eric explained that since the town was still under development, there were not many buildings yet. Even so, it was a lively place. Rita agreed, saying it seemed that even if becoming an adventurer was not an option, there were many other jobs to do there as well. Eric said they would reach the town shortly, and if any trouble arose, Rita should leave it to the Latcher Corporation. He added that he would definitely repay the favor he owed. Rita looked at him in confusion and asked what favor he meant. Eric explained that it was because of the demon wolves. Thanks to Rita, he could now trade without worry. Rita replied that he also wanted to thank Eric for allowing him to ride the carriage into town. If Eric was ever troubled, he would help him as well. Rita then suddenly noticed that Mina had been quiet for some time. Mina had fallen asleep peacefully beside him. Eric laughed and said their conversation must have been boring to her. At last they had arrived. Eric announced that they would now head toward the merchant gates. Dick called out to Rita and said they would meet again, hoping to do quests together when the chance came. Pfeiffer also bid farewell to Mina. Rita said they had been in their care and offered his farewell in return. Rita then told Mina that they were finally entering Amulus. Mina rubbed her eyes and quietly answered. Rita took Mina's hand, and together they walked through the entrance of Amulus. In the bustling town of Amulus, Rita and Mina walked side by side while Rita read the letter given to him by Syra. Before long, they arrived at the Adventurer Guild Amulus branch. As they stepped inside, they were greeted by the guild receptionist, Millet. With a warm smile, she welcomed them and asked what business they had that day. Rita answered that he wished to migrate and register with the guild there. Millet repeated that he wished to transfer to their branch, then gestured for them to come closer. She placed a form before them and asked him to fill it out. While writing, Rita quietly muttered about first names. He wrote down Rita Dixon and then paused in thought for a moment before continuing. After Rita completed the form, Mina glanced at it and looked slightly surprised when she saw the name Mina Dixon written there. Rita apologized for writing it on his own and then asked if she disliked it. Mina shook her head and softly answered no, thanking him instead. Rita thought that if he found any blood relative of Mina in this town, he could simply explain the reason at that time. Rita then suddenly remembered something else and handed Millet the letter. He explained that it was an introduction letter from the guild in the capital. Millet said she would take a look. The moment she read it, she reacted in surprise. She explained that it was not a letter of introduction at all, but a letter of recommendation, and on top of that, it was from Syra. Mina asked if that was something bad. Millet quickly replied that it was the opposite. It was even better than a normal introduction letter. She then turned to Rita and said that the letter mentioned it, but she wanted to confirm whether he could truly use healing magic. Rita simply answered yes, though he added that he could only heal. Millet then mentioned that there was also a healer's guild. Rita replied that he had been an adventurer all this time, so he intended to remain one. Millet explained that even beginner-level healing magic made him valuable simply because he could use it. She then asked whether he could immediately begin taking requests starting the next day. Rita reacted in surprise and asked her to wait a moment. They had not even decided where they would stay that night. Millet then told him there was an inn affiliated with the guild and advised them to go there. She leaned closer and quietly added that, of course, the guild would cover the fees, and he would also be allowed to read the magic books owned by the guild for free. Rita awkwardly thanked her very much. Millet smiled and asked if he would then be accepting requests. Rita answered yes, though he added that his healing magic could only replace a few potions. Millet bowed politely and said there were no problems at all. She thanked him sincerely. Rita modestly replied that it was nothing. Millet then handed him another letter and explained that it was an introduction letter for the inn. Rita thanked her once again. Later that night at the inn, an old man laughed loudly and said that he had finally arrived, calling Rita warmly. He introduced himself as Rigstoran, the owner of Bearded Dwarf Inn. The girl beside him politely greeted them and introduced herself as Mirin. They were dwarves. Rita introduced himself as Rita Dixon. Mina also introduced herself. Rita explained that Mina was a little shy and asked Mirin to get along with her. Mirin brightly agreed. She immediately held Mina's hand and said that since Mina was going to live in this town, they should become friends. Mina softly replied in agreement. Riggs smiled and remarked that his daughters seemed to like Rita's daughter very much, and that made her happy. Rita hesitated for a moment and clarified that Mina was not actually his daughter. Riggs looked slightly surprised, then calmly said that when someone was an adventurer, there were often many circumstances behind such things. He added that he did not care about the details. If Rita was taking care of her, then that alone was what mattered. Riggs then informed Rita that their room would also be the same room. Rita replied that it was not a problem and said they would be in his care from then on. Riggs happily answered that they felt the same way. Since they were living under the same roof, Rita could treat them like family. Riggs then called for Mirin and instructed her to show them their room, as well as the toilet and bath. He ruffled Mirin's hair and told her to eat together with them afterward. Mirin replied that she already understood. Then, without warning, she grabbed Mina's hand and cheerfully pulled her away. Mina, slightly surprised, called out after her. A little while later, Mirin returned and loudly apologized for the wait. She announced pilaf, salad, and soup filled with plenty of meat. She set the dishes on the table and sat beside Mina. Together, they spoke in unison and began to eat. Mina lifted a spoonful of soup to her mouth and reacted with delight, saying it was delicious. Mirin chuckled proudly and praised her father's cooking. Mina recognized the meat at once, saying it was Morelia's demon pig. Rita added that the heat was perfect and the flavor was wonderfully rich. The slightly salty taste of the pilaf made Rita forget the tiredness from the long journey. Rita told Rigstoran that he was impressive. When Rita thought of dwarves, blacksmiths were the first thing that came to mind, yet Riggs could even create food of this level. Mirin explained that her father used to make swords in the past, but after she was born, he became a cook instead. Rita told Mirin that her father was amazing. Mirin proudly smiled and said she already knew. Afterward, they returned to their room. Rita remarked that Mirin was a nice child. Mina smiled and agreed, saying she had become friends with her. Rita said that was good to hear, since they would be staying there for a while. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Rita answered, and Mirin cheerfully opened it, inviting Mina to join her in the bath. The next day, Rita healed a man's wrist. Tex looked on in amazement and noted that Rita had even healed 3 seriously injured people while bringing a child along to escort lumberjacks. Tex wondered what kind of person he truly was. Rita chuckled and apologized, saying they had only arrived the day before, so he could not leave Mina alone. Tex smiled and told Mina that she surely had a good father. Mina thanked him politely and called him uncle. Tex jokingly cried out and protested, telling her to at least call him older brother, since he was only 40 years old. The man standing behind Tex remarked that he was already quite old. Another man added that he was more like a grandpa. Tex immediately threatened them and asked if they wanted to fight. Tex then grabbed Rita and asked whether Rita was also an uncle to Mina. Mina fell silent for a moment, thinking deeply. Then she smiled and said no, he was Rita, not an uncle. Rita let out an awkward chuckle and thanked her. After a while, they arrived before a stretch of towering trees. Rita looked ahead in surprise and asked what this was. Tex replied that he would leave it to Rita. Rita stared at him in confusion, wondering what exactly Tex meant. Tex scratched his head and explained that he simply thought a mage might be able to do something about it. Rita pointed toward the trees and asked if he only needed to bring them down. Then he immediately said there was no way he could do that. Rita paused and thought deeply for a moment. Then he said that maybe he could at least give it a try. Tex responded that this was what he expected from him. If Rita had thought of something, then he should try it. Rita agreed, but warned everyone not to stand in front of him. Silently, Rita cast a spell in his mind, calling on the spirit of wind to become a blade and sweep as widely as possible. A powerful gust burst forward and sliced through the towering trees, sending many of them crashing to the ground. Rita looked at the result and admitted that it had been too powerful. The adventurers behind him stood frozen with their jaws dropped in shock. Mina softly murmured that Rita was amazing. Tex shouted in disbelief, saying he had asked Rita to do it, but not to that extent. One man asked in shock if that had really been Windblade. Another questioned whether it was not supposed to be beginner-level magic. Tex jokingly slapped Rita on the chest and said that Rita's version was clearly not at the level of a normal Windblade. The man beside him joked that they would all lose their jobs at this rate. Another suggested that Rita should just become a lumberjack instead. Rita, embarrassed, replied that he was only feeling lucky lately. Tex then said he had heard that magic power depended on how much mana a person possessed. He wondered just what was going on with Rita's magic power, though he decided to leave that matter there. He then pointed out the real problem, asking what they were supposed to do with all the trees. The wagon could not possibly carry everything. Tex suggested that since they still had time, they could haul them back little by little. There were around 30 trees in total. Rita then cast another spell to restrain them. He called out chain bind. At once, numerous chains appeared and tightly wrapped around the fallen trees. Rita gave a small wink and revealed that he actually had an item box. He activated it, and the cut trees were pulled inside one after another until none were left behind. The men standing behind him dropped their jaws in shock once again. Tex stared at him and said Rita really could do anything. The men quickly gathered around him. Mina quietly watched Rita. She thought back to when they first met. At that time, she had been wary, believing he might be a frightening person. But after getting to know him, she realized that was never the case. He had taken care of her when she knew nothing except her own name. He always looked after her and had been the kindest person to her. He was completely different from the healers she had known before. Suddenly, Tex announced that they would head back sooner than planned. He ordered everyone to load the remaining materials and prepare the wagon. They began getting ready to return. Mina remembered that the healers she had met in the past only ever spoke about money. Rita, however, only worried about the people he healed. Rita turned to Mina and told her that he would go help them, so she should wait for a while. Mina answered for him to go ahead. Mina smiled. She was truly happy to have met such a kind person. She knew that Rita had been asking about her family. He had asked Malay and Riggs Doran as well. Mina looked up above and quietly murmured about the moon. Then she softly repeated the word family. She wondered what would happen if the truth came out. He might stop smiling. He might come to hate her. He might leave and go somewhere far away. She did not want that. Rita then called out to Mina and told her to come as they were heading back. Mina answered that they would return. Silently, within her heart, she wished to stay with Rita forever. Back in town, a mysterious figure watched them from a high place. Rita and Mina walked side by side, unaware that eyes were fixed upon them. The figure's dark gaze followed them closely. Mina laughed as she held onto Rita. Then, without making a sound, the mysterious watcher vanished from sight. Later, in the forest, the beasts defeated by the adventurers lay lifelessly across the ground. Rita quietly healed the injured man. The man gratefully told Rita that he had saved them. He had heard about it from his little sister, but Rita's healing spell was truly amazing. He had been on the verge of death. Rita wondered who he meant by little sister. The man pointed toward his eyes and signaled him to look. Malay immediately came to Rita's mind. Rita realized it was Malay. He then asked if that meant he was Iron. Iron smiled and gave a thumbs up. Iron admitted the situation was troublesome, saying it was hard to believe such huge monsters had appeared there. Rita asked if he meant this place that was only an hour away from town. Iron explained that he had only seen small monsters in that area before. Mina suddenly mentioned that demon wolves had also appeared in Morelia. She clenched her hands with worry. Iron fell into deep thought, then guessed that maybe there had been some kind of turf war. Rita asked what they would do now, leaving that matter aside. Iron answered that they would sort out the cargo and repair the carriage. They would camp there for the day and then head to Amulus. Rita said they would be going back while the sun was still up. Iron smiled in understanding and asked them to take care. Rita and Mina waved goodbye and slowly began walking back. Rita yawned. Mina asked if he was all right and whether he was sleepy. She reminded him that the night before she fell asleep, he had still been studying magic from the guild's book. Rita replied that he was fine and had slept before it became too late, thanking her for worrying about him. Suddenly, a loud sound broke the quiet forest. Rita looked startled. Mina worriedly asked if it had come from deeper inside the forest. She quickly pointed out a path nearby and said they should go check, but if it was dangerous, they would turn back. Rita agreed. They followed the path, and Rita soon noticed something troubling. Dead beasts were scattered across the ground. He stared at the scene with concern. Rita then noticed someone and asked if he was all right. The man turned toward him. Rita looked surprised when he realized they were elves. wondering why they were near a human village. The elf man shouted for him not to come any closer. Rita immediately tried to calm the situation, saying he had no intention of harming anyone. He thought to himself that he knew elves hated humans, but he did not understand why it was this intense. Then Rita suddenly noticed something else and looked shocked. It was a child. He quickly asked what had happened to him. The child whimpered in pain. The elf man shouted that it was their problem and they would resolve it themselves. Mina worriedly said that the child seemed to be suffering. Rita told them that he could use healing magic. The elf man firmly refused, saying there was no way he could trust a human. Rita pleaded with them to trust him for now and allow him to look at the child. The elf woman said she appreciated that he felt that way, but the child had been poisoned by a ruby tiger. She explained that healing magic alone would not be enough. Rita quickly answered that he could also use antidote magic. The elf woman turned to him in surprise. Then she desperately begged him to look at her son. The elf man shouted her name, Edith. Edith cried out to Claus, saying that at this rate, the child would die. Rita immediately ran past them. Claus raised his arrow and shouted at the human. Mina quickly stepped in front of Rita and shielded him with her body. She declared that if Rita did anything strange, he could attack her first. Then everything would be fair. Claus reacted in surprise. Rita thanked Mina and announced that he would begin. In his mind, he thought of antidote magic and felt grateful that he had learned it from the guild's magic books. He believed he should prioritize learning every healing and treatment type spell. Rita cast the healing spell. The elf child was sweating heavily in pain. Edith muttered in relief as she looked at the child's face. Slowly, the child's expression brightened and relaxed. Claus softly murmured Kate. Mina sighed in relief and thanked the heavens. Claus suddenly bowed to Rita and apologized. He thanked him sincerely from the bottom of his heart for treating his son. Claus then admitted that they did not have enough money to pay the treatment fee. Rita told him not to worry about it. He said he was only an adventurer who could use healing magic, after all. Rita then added that if Claus truly wanted to repay him, he could simply report to the Adventurer Guild in Amulus that the quest had been completed. Rita handed them a paper showing the request fee. Claus read it and reacted in surprise at the silver coins listed. Edith said it was even cheaper than the potion they had purchased before. Mina explained that monsters had recently increased, and prices were only going to rise further. Rita then asked about the potion. He wondered why they had purposely come to a human town when the elves were supposed to have an elixir passed down among them. He had also heard that it was far more effective than potions. Claus then revealed that the elixir had run out. Rita asked in surprise if it had run out and wanted to know what had happened. Claus replied that it was because of a dragon. Rita reacted with shock. Claus explained that recently, a black dragon had appeared near their village. It had attacked them without warning. Edith added that the warriors fought back and somehow managed to drive it away, but the damage was far too great. The elixir had also been completely used up, and many warriors were still suffering from their injuries. Claus said that in their current condition, if they suffered another attack, they might be forced to abandon the village. Mina quietly called out to Rita. He smiled and gently patted her head. Rita then asked Claus if possible, could he take him to their village. He believed his healing magic would surely be useful there. Edith turned toward Claus and softly called to him. Claus agreed and said he would trust him. He then paused, unsure of what to call him. Rita introduced himself as Rita. Claus said he would surely persuade everyone in the village, and asked him to please save their warriors. Afterward, night arrived. While unconscious, Kate felt something shaking beneath him and wondered if it was a carriage. His body no longer hurt. He thought he was probably already dead. Kate slowly opened his eyes. Mina immediately asked if he was all right. Kate looked confused. Mina worriedly asked whether it still hurt and if he was fine. Kate looked at her in surprise and answered that he was. Mina smiled widely in relief and said she was glad. Feeling overwhelmed, Kate wondered what was happening. He remembered coming with his father and mother. They had hidden their ears and brought potions from the human town. Then they were attacked by a ruby tiger, and when it struck him, he thought he had met an angel. There was also an old man beside her, but that did not matter. Mina placed a wet towel on his forehead. Kate suddenly sat up. Mina reacted in surprise. Kate blushed and quickly introduced himself as Kate, thanking her for taking care of him. Mina told him her name and said they should get along well. Kate asked Mina where she had come from. When he heard Amulus, he shouted in excitement, saying he had also gone there that day. Mina awkwardly replied in understanding. Kate then spoke nonstop. He proudly shared that his father was better with a sword than with a bow, and that his mother was skilled at cooking and medicinal herbs. Rita looked around in amazement, noticing how the trees were making a path for the carriage. Mina added that once the carriage passed, the trees would return and close the path again. The wagon suddenly came to a stop. Mina looked around in confusion and wondered why it had stopped. Kate explained that it had not truly stopped, and that only elves could use this ancient teleportation magic. Suddenly, they vanished into thin air. In the next moment, they appeared inside a village. Rita quietly muttered that this was it. Edith confirmed that it was the village of the elves. Mina nervously reacted in worry. They stood at the entrance. Claus called to Rita and apologized, then asked if he could heal the warriors right away. Rita immediately agreed and said that was exactly why he had come there. An elf suddenly noticed Claus had returned safely. Another quickly reacted and pointed out that a human was with him. The elf angrily demanded to know what this meant. Guards immediately surrounded them. The elf man shouted and demanded to know who had given permission for a human to be brought inside. Claus raised his voice and told everyone to listen. He explained that Rita could use healing magic and had even saved Kate's life after he was attacked by a monster. The elf man questioned whether he was truly a healer, saying human healers only cared about money. Mina quickly defended Rita and said he was not like that. Kate also shouted in support, declaring that Mina's father was not that kind of person. At that moment, an old elf appeared and demanded to know what all the commotion was about. The elf man addressed him as elder. Edith stepped forward and said her family would vouch for Rita, pleading for him to be taken to the warriors. Rita calmly addressed the elder and introduced himself as Rita Dixon, an adventurer who could use healing magic. He explained that he could at least perform healing equal to a high potion and wished to treat the injured as soon as possible. The elder remarked that for a human healer to visit their village at such a time was unusual. He looked at Rita with suspicion. Rita stared back, slightly nervous. Then the elder suddenly smiled and said that perhaps it was time for them to make some changes. He agreed and called for Rita Dixon to save their warriors. The guards behind them reacted in shock at the elder's decision. They then entered the room. Rita muttered in surprise at what he saw. Injured warriors were lying everywhere. The elder explained that they were fortunate, because thanks to Hildegarda, there had been no deaths. Mina curiously asked about Hildegarda. The elder explained that even without using a bow, Hildegarda was the strongest warrior in the village through magic power alone. Everyone had fought the battle under Hildegarda's direction. However, while protecting everyone, she ended up taking the dragon's breath attack herself. The elder said that with the pride of a warrior, even when elixirs and potions were not enough to heal her, she insisted they be used on the others instead. Rita remarked that Hildegarda was truly amazing. The elder replied that her injury was extremely fatal. No, it was a dire situation. Even if he could not fully heal the wounds, simply easing her pain would still mean something. The elder paused. Rita answered that he would do what he could. The elder told him that she was in the room behind the curtain. He then announced that they were entering. Rita and Mina slowly stepped inside. The elf women in the room turned to look at them. A girl was lying on the bed, her body wrapped in bandages. Rita looked surprised. He quietly asked in disbelief if it was a girl. He then muttered in amazement that such a girl was the village's strongest warrior, Hildegarda. The girl named Hildegarda slowly opened her eyes and looked toward them. She gradually pushed herself up and called to the elder. The elder quickly told her not to get up. Hildegarda then asked why a human was there. She fixed them with a firm and steady gaze. Hildegarda asked why a human was there. The elder answered that he had brought him, and that he could use healing magic. Rita introduced himself as Rita Dixon and said he would heal her. He then slowly approached her. Hildegarda reacted sharply and refused to let him touch her. Rita gently pushed her back onto the bed. Hildegarda cried out from pain. Rita silently cast a healing spell in his mind. Hildegarda shouted again in frustration, saying that if she could move, he would hear her complaints later. She repeatedly demanded to be let go. Rita raised his voice and told her not to move, warning that her wounds would open again. Hildegarda angrily protested, asking where he was touching. Rita replied that he could not heal her without touching her body. She continued resisting and demanded to know how long he planned to keep touching her. Without warning, she kicked Rita. Rita cried out in pain. Hildegarda then stood up. Slowly, the bandages wrapped around her body loosened and fell onto the bed. The girls in the room gasped and cheered when they saw her wounds were gone. Hildegarda looked at her own arms in surprise. She quietly muttered that the burns had vanished without a trace. She turned toward Rita and asked if he was truly Rita Dixon. Suddenly, she grabbed his clothes and spoke in disbelief, remembering how her flesh had been melting and even her bones had been visible. To heal something like that so easily, she demanded to know who this man truly was. Rita quickly told her to wait and asked that before anything else, she should cover her body. Hildegarda immediately flushed with deep embarrassment. The room became silent. At once, she kicked both the elder and Rita out of the room, then shouted for all the men to leave immediately. Rita awkwardly remarked that they had been kicked out. The elder chuckled and apologized. He then respectfully called him Rita Dano and thanked him for healing her. Rita smiled and replied that it was nothing, and that he was simply glad she was safe. He then added that since he still had mana left, they should heal the others as well. The elder smiled and agreed. Rita moved from one wounded warrior to the next, healing them one by one, with Mina staying by his side. Edith and Kate also helped. Mina and Kate soaked towels in water and used them to cool the patients. The elder said in amazement that everyone had been healed. Rita replied that there had been 50 of them. The elder chuckled and said that, as expected, it must have been tiring. Rita smiled and said he had been feeling good lately, and could sense his mana increasing. It felt as if a lid had been lifted from his body. Claus called out to the elder and reported that all the potions had been stored in the warehouse. The elder praised Claus for his work. Claus then turned to Rita and said that thanks to him, he had been able to store all of the potions. Rita replied that it was good to hear. The elder then interrupted and said it was about time for Rita Dono to get some rest. He asked Claus if he could guide Rita there. Claus agreed immediately. Edith then invited Rita to stay at their house for the night, mentioning that luckily their home had not burned down. Rita smiled and thanked them, saying they would stay the night. Mina then told Kate that they would get along well. Kate blushed and awkwardly agreed. Before long, Rita and Mina fell asleep. Afterward, morning dawned over the elven village. At the headquarters, Rita apologized for the intrusion as he entered the room with Mina. Hildegarda noticed that he had arrived. She asked if they were Rita and Mina, then sat upright on her bed. Mina smiled brightly and commented that her skin had become even more beautiful. Hildegarda simply replied with thanks. She then called to Rita and apologized for kicking him the day before. She explained that elves did not like humans, and Rita cut her off and asked if he could at least know the reason for that hatred. Hildegarda agreed and began explaining. She said that in the present age it had decreased quite a bit, but in the past, there were wicked people who kidnapped elves and sold them. That was the first reason. Because of their long lives, elves were forced into labor and slavery. They were imprisoned in the basements of wealthy men's mansions and tortured. She said she could not even count how many raids had been carried out to rescue them. She added that of course, many never returned alive. That was why humans were hated. They had begun creating distance between themselves and humans. Rita replied that he understood now, and that was what had happened. Hildegarda added that some elves still chose to leave the village and live among humans. Setting that aside, she then spoke about the healing of the village warriors. Hildegarda bowed her head and told him she was truly grateful from the bottom of her heart. Rita replied that he had only done what he was able to do, so she did not need to thank him. Mina pouted and scolded him, saying that even though Wani-chan was thanking him, he was brushing it aside. Rita scratched his head and said he understood, and that he accepted her gratitude. Hildegarda said that was how it should be. She then pointed at Mina and said she had heard Mina had also worked hard together with Kate. Hildegarda pulled Mina closer and said she would give her a hug as thanks. Mina softly reacted in surprise. Hildegarda smiled and pulled Mina into a warm hug. She said that although she hated humans, for these two she would allow them to call her Hilda. Mina turned toward her and repeated the name in surprise. Hildegarda reacted happily, saying Mina was extremely cute. She hugged Mina even tighter and excitedly added that she would even allow her to call her Wani-chan. Mina happily thanked her and called her Hilda Wani-chan. Rita smiled to himself, glad to see the two getting along. Hildegarda suddenly flinched in shock. She asked if he was perhaps thinking that she was the same age as Mina. Rita looked at her in confusion. Hildegarda said she could understand him treating her like a child, and she could not say much about it. But suddenly she raised her voice and declared that she still would not accept it. Though her growth was slow, she was still 316 years old. Mina reacted in amazement and praised Hilda Wani-chan, wondering how she had lived for so long. Hilda chuckled and said Mina should show more respect. She added that she was still young for an elf. The elder was already 1,000 years old. She then continued, saying that the elder of the next village, which took about a month to reach, was said to be 2,000 years old. Rita's jaw dropped in shock, while Mina silently mouthed her amazement. Suddenly, Hildegarda's ear twitched. Mina asked what was wrong, calling her Hilda Wani-chan. Rita curiously wondered if it was running sounds. Hilda said she hoped it was not bad news. Suddenly, Claus burst into the room and urgently announced the disturbance. He said it was here. Hilda immediately asked if it was the Black Dragon. She quickly ordered Claus to get ready. Claus answered at once. Hilda then turned to Rita and Mina, thanking them for their time. She said she had to go and fight. Rita worriedly tried to stop Hilda, saying that even if she had been healed, she had still suffered such heavy injuries. He asked if she was truly planning to go. Hilda playfully punched him and declared that she was the village's strongest warrior. If she did not fight, then who would? Rita stared at her in silence, thinking deeply for a moment. Then, with quiet determination, he said that he would go as well. Mina's eyes widened in surprise as she called out to Rita. Rita said he could at least support them with healing magic. Mina immediately declared that she would go too. Rita turned to her and firmly told her that he would come back safely, so she should stay there. Mina agreed, telling him that he had to return safely. The warriors gathered at the center of the village, tense and silent. Hilda raised her voice and addressed the brave elves. She declared that their enemy was the black dragon that had burned their village and harmed their friends. She said she understood that they were afraid, because she felt the same. But if they ran away, then who would protect their village and their companions? She shouted for them to place all their pride into their arrows and bring the dragon down. The warriors roared in answer. Hilda declared that they would not lose this time, and that victory was in their hands. With renewed spirit, the warriors lifted their bows high with a cheer. Hilda then announced that it was here. She ordered everyone to move into position, with the archers ready. The black dragon flew toward the village, its eyes fixed on the land below. Rita, slightly nervous, muttered that this was the black dragon. The dragon soared high above them, watching carefully from the sky. A voice shouted that it had arrived and gave the order to fire. The archers released a rain of arrows toward the dragon overhead. They continued firing, and several arrows struck true, piercing the dragon's wings and body. The dragon roared in pain. Hilda shouted that for now, they had to bring it down. The archers continued firing without pause. Smoke began to gather inside the dragon's mouth. The dragon slowly opened its jaws. Hilda immediately shouted for everyone to watch out for its breath attack. She then commanded them to deploy the barrier. The black dragon released a massive blast of fire. The flames rushed toward the warriors, but a glowing barrier rose just in time and shielded them from the burning attack. Rita looked around in surprise and asked what this was. Even after blocking the flames, he could still feel the heat. The dragon's attack ended, and smoke curled from its mouth. The warriors stood firm, staring at the beast as they waited for the next command. The smoke slowly cleared from the air. The black dragon looked down at them, then began rising higher into the sky. Hilda loudly gave the order to fire. The archers unleashed another storm of arrows. Suddenly, the dragon stopped in midair. Hilda warned everyone that it was about to use its breath again. The black dragon unleashed another blast of fire. They quickly activated the barrier once more, protecting the group again. Rita wondered how long they would have to keep repeating this. Hilda told Rita that she felt sorry for dragging him into this battle. Rita replied that he had been the one who asked to come. Hilda said that even so, she was relieved to have a precious healer like him there. She added that after defeating the black dragon, she would reward him from the village's collections. Rita said that now she was truly making him feel like an adventurer, and that he was looking forward to it. Hilda raised her voice again and declared that its breath attack was about to wear out. She ordered the archers to ready themselves and fire. Another wave of arrows was launched into the sky. Rita stared at the black dragon above and thought that the arrows were definitely hitting it, and it was taking damage. But he still wondered if they could truly defeat such an enemy. He paused, then strengthened his resolve. No, they would win for sure. The black dragon unleashed another blast of fire, crashing into their barrier. Sweating heavily, Rita shouted that at this rate, they would be cooked alive. He quickly cast a healing spell on Hilda's burned shoulder. She already looked exhausted. Rita loudly asked if anyone else had burns. In his mind, he realized that even without being struck directly by the dragon's breath, the intense hot air alone could cause burns. Because of that, many injured people had appeared. The dragon's attack finally stopped. Hilda raised her voice and declared that its breath had worn out. She ordered everyone to take aim and fire. The archers released another volley of arrows. The black dragon flew wildly, trying to avoid them, but several arrows still struck its body. It let out a furious roar. Hilda gave a short laugh and remarked that the foolish dragon was becoming truly irritated. She said it did not even notice the condition of its own wings, and that in the end, it was still just a lizard. Rita looked confused and asked about its wings. He focused on the black dragon's wings and was surprised to see that they were already badly torn. Rita shouted that its wings were severely damaged already and wondered if everyone had been aiming for that from the start. Suddenly, smoke began gathering inside the dragon's mouth. Its stomach swelled as the smoke thickened. Rita nervously asked what that was. Claus warned him to stay on guard, saying it was the dragon's trump card. Hilda immediately shouted to everyone that flame bombs were coming. She ordered them to deploy the barrier. The dragon opened its jaws and released a massive ball of flame. The ground shook violently from the impact. Far away, Mina cried out in shock and asked what had just happened. Kate quietly said it was a loud noise and heavy vibrations. He then confidently assured her not to worry, saying he would protect her. The elf woman gently patted Mina's head and told her not to worry. She reminded her that Hildegardisima, Claus, and Rita-san were there. She suggested they pray for everyone's safety. Mina closed her eyes and prayed for Rita, hoping he would do his best and return safely. The massive ball of flame struck the barrier. Hilda ordered them to strengthen it, declaring that 2 barriers would be enough to stop it. Rita then announced that the injured had already been treated and that he would help as well. He said he would supply mana to the barrier. The barrier held firm, shielding them from the fiery blast. One warrior smiled and declared that they would win like this. Another shouted that they should keep going. Rita then suddenly noticed the black dragon preparing another attack. He immediately called out to Hilda, urging her to look. Hilda shouted that this was bad. 2 shots in a row. She cursed the black dragon, wondering if even while its own body was injured, it still planned to burn them all down. The dragon opened its mouth once more. Hilda's voice rose with alarm as she declared that this was not good. She said there had never been a dragon so reckless until now. The dragon unleashed another attack. Hilda called out to Rita and told him that even if only he could escape, he needed to run from there. Rita immediately refused. The barrier cracked under the impact. Hilda shouted for everyone to pour more mana into it, warning that at this rate it would not hold. The barrier shattered. Rita stared at it in shock. The flame bomb slowly pushed forward through the air, heading straight toward them. Rita fixed his eyes on it and firmly declared that he would not die in a place like this. He could not die. He would return alive. Silently, he began casting a spell within his mind, calling upon the spirit of the wind. Suddenly, a fierce wind swirled around him. A wind spirit appeared behind Rita, and its glowing hands passed into his body. The spirit unlocked a hidden seal, releasing thick black smoke from within him. The wind spirit quietly urged Rita to do his best. Black smoke poured from Rita's body, growing darker and stronger as the seal continued to open. Rita focused and continued chanting in his mind, calling for it to become a shield. A massive gust of wind surged forward, forming a powerful barrier that protected them from the incoming flame bomb. Hilda gasped in shock at what she had just seen. Rita wondered what had happened to the heavy weight on his heart. The lid was gone and he felt light. His mana was overflowing, and he felt as if he could do anything at that moment. Rita chanted again in his mind, calling on the spirit of the wind to become an invisible blade and dance. Then, out loud, he roared that he would bring down that cursed lizard. The wind blade launched toward the black dragon, tearing through the air. It struck the black dragon's wings. The creature shrieked in pain as one wing was cleanly severed. It twisted violently in the sky, lost balance, and fell. With a thunderous crash, the dragon slammed into the ground. It rose again and roared in fury. The black dragon tried to open its mouth to attack once more. Claws smirked and declared that it could no longer breathe because its fangs were broken. It could no longer fly because its wings had been cut. Right now, it was nothing more than a giant lizard. Hilda raised her voice and commanded everyone to act now. Rita cast another spell within his mind, calling for it to bind the dragon. Then he shouted the spell's name. Thick vines burst from the ground, wrapping tightly around the dragon's body and pinning it in place. Hilda turned toward Rita in shock. In her thoughts, she wondered what kind of man he truly was. She had believed he was unreliable. Yet he had the courage to stand before a dragon and fight it directly. She had thought he was only skilled in healing magic, but he had just blocked the dragon's breath and cut its wings with a single spell. Hilda trembled with excitement as she thought she had never seen such a human. No, such a man. Just watching him filled her with excitement. Hilda suddenly called Rita over and told him they would finish this together. She held out her hands and told him to pour his wind magic into them. Her heart pounded rapidly. As Rita held her hands, she blushed slightly. Rita, somewhat nervous, asked if this was right. Mana surged between them. Hilda shouted for more, demanding as much as he could give. Rita shouted back in agreement and urged her to do it. A powerful surge of wind magic gathered at the tip of her arrow, shining brightly. Hilda raised her voice for all to hear and declared that the black dragon that had harmed their village would be defeated by Hildegarda Edera and Rita Dixon. She released the arrow. It flew toward the dragon. The dragon looked at the approaching arrow with widened eyes. The arrow struck its head with a deafening explosion. Wind burst outward in every direction. As soon as the roots binding the dragon loosened, the massive beast collapsed to the ground with one final thud, motionless. Blood slowly trickled from its skull. Rita and Hilda stood still, staring at the dragon's lifeless body. Rita quietly asked if it was over. Hilda turned to him and declared that it was their victory. She then stepped forward and raised her voice high for all the warriors to hear. She called for them to let their cries of victory be heard across the entire forest and mountain, so all would know that they were still there. The elves cheered loudly for their forest, their earth, and their new friends, Rita Dixon and Mina Dixon. Joyful voices rose everywhere as laughter filled the air. Everyone celebrated together and enjoyed the feast. Edith asked Rita if the food suited his taste. Rita smiled and replied that the fruit wine was truly delicious. The woman giggled and remarked that he really seemed to like wine. Rita scratched his head and chuckled, quietly wondering to himself why she was so beautiful. Mina cheerfully said that the juice and food were also very delicious. Kate, blushing deeply, suddenly spoke up and said those dishes were delicious too, urging her to try them. Mina smiled warmly and thanked him. Mina then happily said that it felt like another festival. Rita agreed and said she was right. Kate looked slightly confused and asked what kind of festival she meant and where it was. While continuing to eat, Mina explained that 10 days earlier, they had held a festival in Morelia after exterminating the demon wolves. Edith reacted with amazement and said he had even exterminated demon wolves. Rita shyly replied that no, everyone had worked together, just like this time. Suddenly, Rita became serious and said that although they had defeated the Black Dragon, things would still be troublesome from now on. Edith then called to Rita and told him to look at the seed resting in her palm. Rita asked if it was the fruit seed from the food they had just eaten. Edith silently cast a spell in her mind, calling on the spirit of the earth to grant the power of life. Suddenly, the seed began to grow. Mina cried out in surprise and praised Edith. Edith smiled and explained that elves were skilled at helping plants grow. She added that it would still take around 3 years for the great tree to fully return to normal, though other trees would grow full leaves again in summer. The elder suddenly approached and apologized for making Rita Donna wait. Rita replied that he had been wondering where they had gone. Claus then explained that they had been discussing his reward. The elder said that even if they rewarded him from the village's storage, it would only amount to a small sum. So instead, they had decided to give him 30% of the money earned after selling the Black Dragon. Rita shouted in surprise, wondering if that was far too much. The elder replied that Rita had done tremendous work, and they had even thought it might still not be enough. Claus then told Rita to please accept it, adding that it would also be for Mina's future. Rita paused and fell into deep thought. After a moment, he said that he understood and would use the reward wisely. Claus suddenly remembered what had happened earlier when Rita used his item box to store the Black Dragon. He had already been surprised by the wind barrier and wind blade, but Rita's item box also had an incredibly large storage capacity. Rita shyly admitted that he had thought it would become full after putting the dragon's wings inside. The elder said that thanks to him, they did not even need to dismantle the dragon. They could take it to the human town in excellent condition as it was. Claus smiled and said they would use the money for rebuilding. They had also decided that from now on, they would interact with humans. Slightly surprised, Rita said he thought that was wonderful. Suddenly, Hilda spoke up and said that was not the only reward. The elder and Claus turned toward her with questioning looks. Hilda told Rita that she had heard he did not even have a spouse yet. Rita looked confused and answered yes, waiting for her to continue. Hilda smiled widely and then boldly declared that because of that she, Hildegarda Edera, would become his wife. Everyone froze in shock. The small village fell completely silent. Rita's jaw dropped in disbelief. Panicking, he grabbed his head and stammered internally, wondering what she was saying. The elves reacted in shock, unable to believe that Hildegarda had said such a thing. One elf remarked that Hilda was doing the same thing as her older sister. Another asked in disbelief if Hilda had truly said she would marry a human. Hilda angrily demanded to know if they had just referred to her in that way. Mina then tugged on the elder's robe and innocently asked if Hilda Wanichan also had an older sister. The elder patted her head and said that was right, and that he would have to explain it to her and to their son-in-law as well. Rita gave an awkward smile and asked in surprise about being called a son-in-law. The elder proudly confirmed it. He explained that Hildegarda had an elder sister. Among the few children in the village, the two sisters had shared a strange and very special bond. But around 50 years ago, when Hilda had reached the age of 260, her sister eloped and rebelled against the tribe, and she had done so with a human. Since then, Hildegarda's hatred for humans had only grown stronger. Hilda shouted, her voice trembling with despair and fury, demanding how those human scum dared to take her sister away from her. As an act of rebellion against the sister who had abandoned her and broken the elven law of having no interaction with humans, she devoted herself to becoming a warrior. Hilda scoffed and declared that love and romance were meaningless. She would live only as a warrior. Remembering that moment, Claus mockingly repeated her old words about living as a warrior, but suddenly, Hilda slowly called his name in a low and threatening tone. She grabbed her sword and attacked him at once. Claus laughed and declared that he would not lose in close combat. The elves cheered loudly as they watched Claus and Hilda clash swords. With an awkward smile, Rita asked if she had only been joking about the marriage. Mina immediately asked him if he was not glad instead. Afterward, morning arrived. A magic circle had been drawn into the ground. Kate cheerfully said he would come play next time. Mina happily replied that she would be waiting for him. Hilda then called out to Rita and said she would not be able to stay with him for a while, but he should not be too sad. She promised that she would come to his place soon. Rita awkwardly reacted, realizing she was still serious about that matter. Hilda smiled widely and said she finally understood her sister's feelings. She now realized that it was natural to live with the man one had fallen in love with. Rita looked shocked and wondered if she had truly fallen for him. Hilda shouted back that she would never joke about something like that. She had fallen in love with a man like him from the bottom of her heart. Claus suddenly interrupted and mockingly repeated her old words again about living as a warrior. Hilda flinched, then punched him in the face in annoyance. The elder patted Rita's shoulder and said that things had turned out this way, son-in-law. Rita responded with an awkward laugh. In his thoughts, he wondered if this was being forced on him, then immediately rejected the thought. Claus then told him it was time for them to go. Rita replied politely. The elves all bid farewell to their friends and wished them safe travels. Rita raised his voice and gave his farewell to everyone. The magic circle activated and teleported them back to the forest. Rita thought excitedly that after seeing a dragon and elves, even the guild and Millet-sen would surely be surprised. Afterward, at the Amulus Guild, Millet shouted in frustration, asking why he had disappeared without saying anything. Rita nervously thought that she was crying and truly angry. Millet cried out that she had been so worried. He had even taken Mina-chan with him for 2 whole days. Rita and Mina bowed guiltily and apologized together. Millet burst into tears and said she had been terrified that they might have gotten into some kind of accident. She had even started thinking they went somewhere else because they no longer liked the guild. Her mind had been spinning with all kinds of strange thoughts. Still crying, Millet grabbed Rita's hand and thanked him deeply for coming back safely. At that moment, Claus removed his robe and apologized, explaining that Rita had gone outside town in order to help them. Millet turned toward him with wide eyes and reacted in shock when she realized he was an elf. After some time, they explained everything that had happened. While writing it all down, Millet repeated the story in disbelief. After healing the elves in their village, he had defeated a black dragon. Rita simply answered yes. Millet then continued, saying that because rebuilding would cost a great deal, he wanted the guild to assess the value of the black dragon. Claus nodded and confirmed it. Suddenly, Millet remembered something. She said she thought Rita had an item box. Then she quickly told herself there was no way a dragon could fit inside one. She wondered what had gotten into her. Rita scratched his head and gave an awkward laugh. Millet chuckled nervously back at him. Claus then calmly said that he had indeed brought it. They would be relying on her to assess it. Millet flinched and shouted in shock, telling them not to take it out inside the building. She said no one in this remote guild could assess something like that. Claus remarked that this was troublesome. Rita then asked if they would need to go to the capital. Millet quickly cried out for them to wait. She said she would call someone from the capital who could assess it, along with someone who could transport it. Rita asked if that was really possible, then thanked her sincerely. Claus then asked how long it would take. Millet paused to think for a while, then said she believed 2 weeks should be enough. Claus nodded and said he understood. He then said he would return to the village. Before leaving, he added that their village had decided to use this chance to begin interacting with humans. They would be relying on her from now on as well. Millet immediately grabbed his hand and said she understood. Claus said that he would report everything to the higher-ups as well. They would be expecting her after 2 weeks. Afterward, they went outside the guild. Claus said that for now, he might buy some baked goods for Kate and Edith. Rita laughed and told him he was a good father. Claus replied that Rita was the same. He then turned serious and said that now, Rita had taken care of them greatly. He hoped they would meet again. Rita replied that he felt the same. Claus gently patted Mina's hair and said he would bring Kate next time so they could play together. Mina cheerfully agreed. Soon after, they waved goodbye and parted ways. Rita fell into deep thought. A father. He realized he would need to properly ask her about her feelings. Mina giggled and asked what was wrong. Rita then said they would also need to apologize to Riggs and Miran-chan. Mina replied that he was right. When they arrived at the inn, Miran greeted them with a loud cry, surprising both of them. Night soon deepened. Then a threatening voice echoed through the darkness, saying it would not allow her to be happy all by herself. Mina turned toward the voice. Her jaw dropped in shock. She saw Rita standing there with a dark expression. Beside him stood a girl in a robe, staring at Mina with blood-red tears flowing from her eyes. The girl drew her sword and held it to Rita's neck. Then, without warning, she slashed across it. Mina screamed for it to stop. She suddenly gasped for air as she awoke from the nightmare. Sitting upright in bed, she looked toward Rita, who was peacefully sleeping beside her. She whispered to herself that it had only been a dream. Then she took Rita's hand and began to cry silently. Tears fell as she softly murmured his name. Rita-chan. At the Amulus Guild, Rita asked if that was truly the case, and whether no one was looking for Mina. Millet replied that it was true. From the headquarters in the capital to the other branches, she had asked them all. She then bowed and apologized, saying she was sorry she could not be of much help. Rita quickly told her that was not true at all, and that he was very grateful to her. With their discussion finished, Rita stood up. He told Mina he was sorry for making her wait. It seemed there were no quests today, so they would take a stroll instead. Mina smiled and happily agreed. They left the guild and began walking through town. They stopped at a bakery and went inside. Mina looked around the shop in amazement. Rita tasted a cookie and remarked that it was delicious. Mina cheerfully agreed and said it was so crispy. Rita smiled as he looked at her and thought to himself that he was glad she seemed to be doing all right now. She had been feeling down ever since the night she cried 3 days earlier. It seemed she had suffered from a nightmare. Soon after, they headed somewhere else. Mina pointed excitedly at the fish and said they were shiny and beautiful. Rita agreed that she was right. In his thoughts, Rita realized once more that he did not want to leave the girl on her own. They needed to have a proper talk. Rita suddenly called to Mina and said there was something he wanted to discuss. Mina asked what it was. Rita told her that he was not married, and he had never raised a child before. If she would like it, then perhaps they could become a family as father and daughter. Mina turned toward him and asked if becoming a family like that was truly all right. Suddenly, a voice interrupted them and declared that it was obviously not all right. Rita quickly stepped in front of Mina and shielded her as he turned toward the voice. The mysterious figure called out to the old man and told him to look over there, staring at them with a dark expression. Rita narrowed his eyes and asked who she was. The figure pulled back her hood, revealing a mysterious girl beneath the robe. Mina looked at her with wide eyes and cried out in shock, recognizing her older sister. Rita reacted in surprise, asking if this was Mina's One-chan. The girl smiled and greeted Mina, saying it had been a long time. She said she had been looking for her. The girl smirked and said she was glad Mina was safe. Mina stared at her in shock and softly called her One-chan. However, the girl's expression changed as she mentioned Mina becoming a family with that old man. She angrily declared that she would never allow it. In one swift motion, she threw a dagger. Rita moved aside just in time and avoided it. Rita reacted in shock, asking what she was doing. The girl scoffed and remarked that although he was slow, he could still react to that much. Mina cried out again in confusion, calling for her sister. The girl sharply told Mina to be quiet. She then coldly declared that after killing that old man, Mina would be next. Mina froze in fear. Rita demanded to know what she was saying. The girl threw another dagger and shouted for him to shut up. Rita asked if she was not Mina's One-san. The girl answered that she was. Her name was Luna. She then jumped down from the roof. Luna declared that the one he had made a fake proposal to was her little sister. Rita thought to himself about the way she moved just now. Her posture alone told him she was dangerous. She was highly skilled. Rita quickly told Mina to hide behind the pillar of the bridge. Mina, still confused, quietly agreed. Rita then turned to Luna and asked why she had said she would kill her own sister. Luna coldly asked if he could stop calling her by name so casually. As another dagger flew toward him, Rita instantly cast a spell. Even so, the blade lightly struck his shoulder. Luna smirked and said he had been a little too late with the barrier. Mina cried out again, asking her sister why, and pleaded for her to stop. Luna's eyes darkened as she quietly repeated the word why. Suddenly, she lunged at Rita and shouted that this man must also be scum who wanted to use Mina. She attacked him with her dagger. Luna rapidly swung her blade, but Rita managed to dodge. He asked what she meant by using Mina. Luna continued attacking while Rita cast another spell to block her strikes. Luna smirked and asked if his magic had not grown stronger after meeting Mina. Rita fell silent as realization struck him. Luna leapt into the air and said that she knew it. She threw a rain of daggers toward him and accused him of using Mina's gifted skill. Rita activated his barrier again. He repeated the word gift in confusion. Then he ducked as the daggers suddenly changed direction. He thought it had been close. Luna asked if he knew it now. She revealed that Mina's skill was the power to amplify the strength of nearby allies. Rita finally understood. That was why he had been able to heal dozens of people. And that was also why he had been able to cut the wings of the black dragon. Luna furrowed her brows in confusion, wondering what this man was talking about. Mina cried out for her sister to stop already, insisting that he was not a bad person. Suddenly, a dagger flew toward Mina, but Rita's barrier blocked it. Luna angrily shouted that she had already said Mina would be next. Rita shouted back, asking what she was doing. He demanded to know how she could act like this toward her own sister when they were family. Luna replied that was exactly right. She then asked if he knew something. She revealed that she had been watching them these past few days. That was why she would save Mina from a filthy man like him, take her back, and kill her. Luna hurled another wave of daggers. Rita raised his barrier, but one slipped through and struck his shoulder. Mina cried out Rita's name in worry. Rita turned to her and told her he was fine. Luna then smiled and spoke gently to Mina, asking if they would go back together. If they returned together, she said they would surely be forgiven. Mina shook her head and said no. She did not want to go back there. She also told Luna that she was acting strangely. Rita healed the wound on his shoulder and said he did not fully understand everything, but Mina clearly did not want to go. After meeting Mina for the first time, he was now certain Luna was trying to take her somewhere terrible. She kept talking about bringing Mina there and killing her. Her words and actions were completely confused and broken. Luna shouted for him to shut up. She lunged at Rita and screamed that if only he were not there. If only. Gripping the dagger tightly, she attacked him again. Rita shouted that they should talk this out. Mina cried out to her sister not to hurt her dad. Rita activated his barrier. Suddenly, Luna froze in place. Rita looked at her in surprise. Luna gritted her teeth. The color of her eyes changed as tears began pouring down her face. She said it was not fair. In a voice filled with despair, she asked why. Tears continued streaming from her eyes. Then she suddenly collapsed to her knees and cried out in pain. Rita called out to her worriedly. Luna immediately jumped away from him and shouted for him not to come near her. She covered her head with her robe and looked at them with tears in her eyes. Then she leapt into the air and fled farther away. Rita quietly muttered about the eyes she had shown just now. Mina ran toward him and called out his name. She quickly asked if he was all right. Rita replied that he was fine. He then asked about Luna. Mina said that she was also all right. Mina suddenly called to Rita again and said she had been truly happy when he said he wanted her to become his family. Rita replied that he also wanted to be her family. Mina began trembling and said that Luna was also her family. She had been acting very strangely that day. Something was clearly wrong with her. Mina held Rita's hand and pleaded with him to save her. Rita embraced her and told her not to worry, because he would do something. Mina quietly answered that she understood. Afterward, back at their inn, Mina had fallen asleep. Rita sat alone in the corner while reading a book. He quietly muttered to himself that he would definitely do something. Mina recalled a memory from before she met Rita. At that time, she had been living together with her sister inside a certain underground organization. Life there had been extremely harsh. It seemed Mina possessed a skill called Gift, a power that amplified the strength of its target. Bound in chains, she had been forced every day to use that skill on many people, but it was not something she could activate by her own will. Because of that, the organization gradually lost interest in her. Since she could not use the skill when they wanted, her next role became nothing more than a hostage to control her sister. They later discovered that Mina's physical abilities were extraordinary, and so they raised her to become an assassin. As part of that role, she was made to eliminate those who tried to escape the organization, as well as anyone who stood against it. With One-ichan's strength, escaping the organization should have been easy, but her sister never ran away because Mina was there. If she had been alone, she could have escaped whenever she wished. But because of Mina, she remained trapped. Then one day, Mina noticed keys lying on the floor. The guards had become drunk and collapsed. She used the chance to unlock her chains and escaped. She believed that with her gone, her sister, who was an assassin, would finally be able to escape as well. In the present, Rita and Mina walked side by side. Rita looked around and asked if this place would do. He then suddenly turned and calmly called out, saying Luna-chan was there, and asking her to come out. Luna suddenly appeared before them. She looked surprised and asked if he had finally decided to hand Mina over quietly. Mina called to her sister with a worried voice. Rita replied that no, he had come there today to treat her. Luna looked at him with suspicion and said that in other words, he had come there to die. She smirked smugly and asked if he truly believed his barrier would not break even if she went all out. Rita answered that he too would be getting a little serious today. Rita cast a spell within his mind, calling upon the spirit of flames. A cluster of flames suddenly appeared in the air. Luna cried out in shock. Feeling slightly nervous, she wondered what it was. Then she quickly shouted that it was impressive, but before he could fire it, she only needed to kill him first. Luna hurled her daggers at Rita. Rita stared at her firmly. He activated his item box. The daggers flying toward them suddenly vanished in the air. Luna gasped in surprise. Rita quietly muttered that she probably would not like this. He then cast another spell in his mind, calling for the flames to burn down the enemy. After that, he shouted for her to bear with it. Fireballs launched toward Luna. Luna gritted her teeth as she dodged the rain of fireballs. The attacks continued chasing her as she kept evading them. She used her daggers to shield herself from the flames. Rita activated his item box again. The fireballs continued pressing Luna as she ran farther away to create distance. She shouted to herself that if ranged attacks would not work, then she would simply close the gap. In the next moment, Luna suddenly appeared behind them. Mina cried out for her sister. Rita calmly cast another spell, summoning a wind shield. A magic circle suddenly appeared beneath Luna. She furiously clicked her tongue and realized he had lured her in. A violent burst of wind exploded upward, sending Luna flying as she cried out in pain. Rita said that with this, he could catch her now. He cast another spell in his mind, calling for something to bind her. A chain suddenly appeared, and Rita shouted the spell's name. The chains wrapped around Luna's body. Rita caught Luna in his arms and said that was enough. Mina sighed in relief and softly called to her sister. Luna glared at Rita furiously and demanded to be released. She then turned to Mina and asked what she was trying to do, even after leaving her behind. Mina shouted back that she was wrong. Luna clenched her teeth and threatened that after taking Mina back, she would kill her. Rita smiled gently and told Luna-chan that she had worked hard enough. It was all right now. Luna stared at him in confusion and demanded to know what he meant. Rita then cast another spell to remove control. He touched Luna's face, and a magic circle appeared. Luna cried out loudly. At that moment, a memory flashed before her eyes. It was clearly the face of the leader of their rival organization. The men smiled wickedly and praised Luna for her work. They said she had done well, and that it was time for the next task. The man then raised the cane of domination and called upon its power. He ordered Luna Pairs to bring back her sister, Mina Pairs, who had escaped. If anyone stood in her way, she was to kill them. Luna reacted in panic, asking what was happening. Black smoke burst out from the cane. Luna's eyes slowly turned black. She cried out in pain. The man cursed angrily, blaming everything on the child who had run away. He continued using the cane of domination. Luna trembled in pain and quietly muttered Mina's name. Later, Luna stood at a high place, watching from above. She smirked and said that she had found Mina now. They should return home. But a voice suddenly rose within her mind, rejecting that thought. It said she would not take Mina back. Luna dropped to her knees and silently cried out in pain. She whispered Mina's name and insisted that she had to take her. Her eye color shifted. Tears flowed from Luna's eyes as she continued murmuring Mina's name. From above, she watched Mina smiling brightly. Another voice inside her thoughts said with relief that Mina was happy. Luna suddenly cried out as a violent headache struck her. She asked why Mina alone was allowed to be like this. Mina continued smiling sweetly as a hand gently patted her head. Watching that scene, Luna muttered that it was not fair. The voice in her mind became confused, asking what she even was. Luna fell to her knees again, repeating over and over that it was not fair. Inside her mind, Luna shouted for it to stop. Her emotions were spiraling out of control. She screamed for it to end, saying she was being swallowed whole. Still, she kept whispering that it was not fair. With growing frustration, Luna realized she could no longer control the domination. Her reason slowly faded away. In her thoughts, she desperately pleaded for someone to help her. Slowly, her eyes turned completely black. Tears streamed down her face. Luna muttered that she would kill Mina. Yet even as she said it, tears kept falling while she weakly begged for someone to save her. Rita immediately answered that he would save her right now. A bright light shone around them. Suddenly, the darkness in Luna's eyes began to crack, then shattered completely. Her eyes returned to normal. She stared ahead with wide eyes as tears ran down her cheeks. Mina worriedly called out to her sister. Luna suddenly jumped away from Rita's arms. Mina called to her again and tried to approach. Luna shouted for her not to come closer. Tears began flowing from her eyes once more as she cried out that she had done cruel things. Mina shook her head and cried that it was fine. She said she knew her sister well. Luna apologized. She admitted that when she saw Mina living happily there, she became jealous and thought about why only Mina could have that happiness. Then she had been consumed by rage. Mina moved closer and cried out her own apology, saying she was sorry for escaping alone. She pleaded with her sister. Luna told Mina it was not her fault and that she did not need to apologize. Then Luna suddenly turned toward Rita and called to him. Rita looked at her, waiting quietly. Luna asked him to please take care of Mina. She said she would go back and tell them that Mina had been killed. She would handle the rest somehow. Mina reached out to grab her and called to her in confusion, asking what she was talking about. Rita immediately shouted that she could not do that. Luna shouted back that if she did not, they would come searching for them. Rita firmly replied that he would deal with them as well. He said he would protect her. He asked her to stay together with him, her fists clenched tightly. Rita continued, saying that Mina had said she wanted to become his family. If that was true, then Luna was also his family. Luna gave a bitter smile and sighed, saying it sounded almost like a proposal. Rita held her and shouted that she could call it whatever she wanted. She had seen that Mina was happy, right? Then he would make Luna happy too. He asked her to become a family with him. Luna stared at him in speechless surprise. Then she cried deeply and agreed. She looked at him with a smile and said she would be in his care. Mina tightly hugged Luna and cried out for her sister again. Rita embraced both of them as Mina called to her once more. Luna sobbed and softly apologized for making her worry. The three of them quietly cried together in Rita's arms beneath the vast and silent sky. They returned to the inn. Mina happily ran in calling for her dad, giggling as she did. Miran looked surprised and remarked that even the way she called him had changed. Mina looked incredibly happy. Riggs then suddenly turned to Luna and asked who she was. Luna shyly introduced herself as Luna Dixon, Mina's real sister, and greeted him politely. She then noticed Rita staring at her and asked what it was. Rita explained that he was only wondering what she would call him. Luna paused, clearly finding it difficult to answer. She sank into thought for a moment. Then an idea suddenly came to her. Luna gave a small chuckle and suggested that she would call him Papa. Riggs laughed and repeated it, wondering if there was some deeper meaning behind it. Mirin excitedly reacted, thinking he had proposed to her. Luna calmly agreed and explained that since he had already proposed while having a daughter, then she should naturally call him Papa as well. Rita quickly waved both hands in denial, reminding them that she was still a minor. Luna stepped closer and lightly pointed out that she would become an adult next month. Then she cheerfully urged them to head to the guild, calling for Mina and Papa at the same time. Rita protested in confusion and asked Luna if she had not said that she wanted to make him her family. Luna looked back at him in surprise, realizing he had this kind of personality. Mina giggled beside them and said it looked fun. Riggs smiled as he watched the scene unfold. He remarked that things would probably become much noisier from now on. Everyone laughed together. Afterward, they arrived at the guild. Malay announced that everything was finished now. She then asked Mina if she was happy to have met her older sister. Mina cheerfully answered that she was. Luna then suddenly called out to Malay as well. Malay turned to her and asked what it was. Luna casually declared that they would visit again next month so Rita could make her his wife. Malay flinched in surprise and struggled to respond before finally managing a hesitant acceptance. Rita, equally shocked, immediately called out in confusion. Luna then reminded everyone that Papa had said he would make her happy and make her part of his family, and she had already accepted that promise. Malay smiled warmly and said she would be waiting for that time. Rita cried out once more in disbelief at Malay's response. 1 week later, after he had properly become family with Mina and Luna, the three of them went out for a walk through town. Tex suddenly called out to Rita as soon as he saw him. Elliot then asked if the three of them were heading out for work again today as well. Rita greeted both of them politely and explained that someone had been injured that morning, and he was only returning after helping there. Elliot responded that the weather was getting warmer, and because of that, the monsters were becoming more active. He then warned Rita to be careful too. Luna confidently stepped in and said there was nothing to worry about. Even if monsters appeared, she would deal with them herself. She then cheerfully turned to Rita and called him Papa, asking for agreement. Rita awkwardly gave a simple confirmation. Elliot let out a chuckle and said he would be counting on her. Rita quickly added that he still did not want them acting recklessly. Tex laughed and said it was fine since the two of them were overflowing with energy. Then Tex suddenly pulled Rita closer and quietly brought up another matter. He suggested they head to a nice pub for drinks. Rita admitted that he truly wanted to go, but if his daughters found out, it would be frightening. Luna then called for Papa and announced that they should return for lunch already. She added that both she and Mina were starving. Tex responded that he did not want Rita getting into trouble. Rita agreed and said it was more serious than that. He imagined Mina looking at him with disgust, refusing to let him come near, and his heart breaking apart from it. In that image, he was nothing more than a filthy father. Mina suddenly called for Dad, snapping him back to reality. Rita scratched his head, apologized, and said they should get going. He waved farewell to the two men. While walking back to the inn, Luna suddenly called out to Papa again. Rita turned toward her. She asked what Tex had meant by a nice pub. Rita nearly choked from surprise. He quickly explained that Tex had only been inviting him out for drinks. Luna then gave a quiet chuckle and leaned over to whisper something into Mina's ear. Mina immediately grabbed onto Rita and called him dirty. Rita turned pale in shock. Mina then looked toward Luna and asked if she had done well. Luna laughed warmly and praised Mina for doing a good job. Rita firmly said that he truly would not go there. Later, back at the inn, Mina and Mirin cleansed together while Luna helped Riggs with the cooking. Then a voice suddenly called from outside, asking if Rita Dixon lived there. Meanwhile, Rita was in his room studying magic when a loud knock suddenly broke his focus. Mina opened the door and excitedly called for Dad, saying there was a customer. Luna added that it was a girl. Rita looked curious and wondered who it could be. Mina suddenly realized she had forgotten to ask for the visitor's name. Luna then teasingly wondered if it might be Papa's former lover who had come back to reunite with him, adding that she would get serious if that were the case. Rita turned to her in shock, unable to understand what she meant by that. He went downstairs and saw a young woman standing at the entrance. The girl brightly reacted upon seeing him, amazed that it really was Rita. She was Aisha Orlo, one of his former party members. Slightly surprised, Rita repeated her name and questioned why she was there. Aisha replied that there was no special reason. Since Jill had kicked him out, she had also quit the Jet Black Wolves. Rita looked confused and asked how that could be, since she had only recently joined the Jet Black Wolves. Luna then remarked that she had heard Papa used to be an adventurer, but he had been expelled from his former party. She wondered why that happened. Aisha immediately said that was exactly what she wanted to know as well. She recalled protesting to the leader, only to be told that if she was dissatisfied, she could quit. Furious at that response, she had done exactly that and left. Luna commented that it made no sense for anyone to throw away a rare healer. She questioned what kind of people they were. Then another thought suddenly struck her. She wondered if perhaps he had laid hands on the girls in the party. Rita's jaw dropped in disbelief at the accusation. He quickly denied it and explained that both Nikto and Rosalie had liked Jill. Mina then asked what that meant for Aisha. Aisha awkwardly reacted to the question and began to answer, saying that at the time he already had. Before she could continue, Rita quickly covered her mouth and urgently stopped the conversation. He then asked again why she had come here in the first place. Aisha replied that after quitting, she had worked alone for a while. But in the end, it was not worth it. So when Aisha saw a migration flyer for Amulus, she decided to come. She proudly explained that she was now part of a vigilante group and worked as a gatekeeper at the Lord's mansion. She said she was glad she had come there. Rita reacted with mild surprise at hearing she was the Lord's gatekeeper. He remarked that if she was part of a vigilante group, then she must also be earning a stable income. Aisha agreed and said she wanted to send money back to the countryside where she, an orphan, had been raised. Then she suddenly remembered something else. She explained that she had learned about him through rumors, and they were incredible rumors at that. It was said that he had defeated a dragon in the elf village. Luna looked deeply shocked upon hearing that and questioned the part about an elf dragon. Mina proudly answered that Dad had truly worked hard. Aisha admitted that she had first thought it was simply another person with the same name. She then asked if the rumors were true. Rita gave a small chuckle and honestly said that even he was surprised himself. Both Luna and Aisha froze in disbelief. After a pause, Aisha calmly remarked that in only 3 weeks, there was now an enormous difference between him and Jill. Rita then asked if perhaps the Jet Black Wolves had failed to rise to B rank. Aisha replied that it was worse than that. Jill and Gilliam had become bandits and were now wanted criminals. Rita gasped in shock and immediately asked how that had happened. Aisha explained that before coming here, she had the chance to speak with Rosalie. She remembered asking if Rosalie had quit the Jet Black Wolves as well. Rosalie had answered that both she and Nikto had left. Rosalie explained that even after driving Rita out, Jill and Gilliam still refused to change their equipment. If they were badly injured, they might even die because of it. She added that the worst case was Jill. He was always absent-minded and lost in a daze. He kept insisting that even without someone like that, things would be fine. Rosalie said he repeated those words so often that it almost seemed like he was possessed. It was difficult to understand. Aisha had then asked if Rosalie had not been in love with Jill. Rosalie only smiled and admitted that she had been, but she had already given up on it. Aisha finished explaining that after everything happened, they could no longer pay their treatment fees. They borrowed money, ran away, and eventually became bandits. Rita was left speechless, stunned by everything he had just heard. He scratched his head, looking somewhat disheartened. He quietly reflected that when he had first joined the party, even though there had been rough moments, they had once been kind people who laughed often. Mina looked at him with concern and softly called for Dad. Luna gently patted his head and told him that it no longer concerned him now. Aisha agreed and said that was true. Then, setting that matter aside, she admitted she had been wanting to ask something for a while. She looked at the girls and remarked that they were both incredibly cute. With a teasing tone, Aisha wondered if he had perhaps stolen them. Rita immediately cried out in denial, unable to understand why she would think such a thing. Aisha laughed and said it had only been a joke. Luna then suddenly added that although he had not stolen them, he had already stolen her heart. Aisha burst into laughter while Rita quickly called out to Luna, trying to stop her. Aisha then introduced herself properly as Aisha Orlo, Rita's former party member. Mina introduced herself as Mina Dixon, his daughter. Luna followed after her, declaring that she was Mina's sister and Papa's wife, Luna Dixon. Aisha reacted by saying the situation sounded complicated. Rita quickly raised his voice and corrected it, insisting that she was his daughter as well, and that both of them were his daughters. Aisha then turned to the other girl and asked about her, noting that she was cute too. Miran introduced herself and eagerly said she wanted to hear stories about his adventures. Aisha understood and noted that she must be the inn-owner's daughter. Mina then excitedly asked if it would be stories about Dad, saying she wanted to hear them too. Aisha asked Rita if that was acceptable. Rita smiled and said he did not think his life as an adventurer was all that interesting. He admitted it felt embarrassing to talk about himself, so he asked her to do it instead. Luna immediately said she especially wanted to know about his relationships with women. Rita quickly asked Aisha to leave those parts out. She agreed at once. Aisha took a deep breath and proudly announced that she would now tell the story of how she had been saved thanks to Rita. Rita quietly grew uneasy, feeling anxious about where this was going. Aisha began by saying she would first explain how they had met. Then suddenly realization struck her and she loudly stopped herself, saying that was not it. She quickly turned to Rita and told him that the Lord had requested a healer named Rita. She added that she had already spoken with the guild, and that they would be leaving immediately in the carriage waiting outside. Rita cried out in complete shock. They entered the carriage. Rita, Mina, and Luna sat inside in silence. Rita suddenly asked what the Lord had to do with him, and why a carriage had even been sent for them. Eiyuu replied that she did not know, as she had only been told to bring him and nothing more. She added that she could guess the reason, but it was confidential. Mina curiously asked Eiyuu what kind of person the Lord was. Eiyuu said that he was a bit strange. Mina reacted with confusion at that answer. Eiyuu then explained that, among the nobles at least, it seemed he had abandoned all the land of his ancestors and built a town in that remote place near the border. Rita remarked that he was quite amazing. Eiyuu added that he also used to walk around the town with the vigilante group and even helped the dwarves build the walls and houses. Luna commented that he truly was strange. Eiyuu said that because of that, there was a chance they had already crossed paths with him somewhere in town. Mina suddenly exclaimed in amazement at the sight before them. Eiyuu confirmed that it was the mansion of the Lord. She then asked if she could have a moment first. The coachman gave a signal to Eiyuu, and the carriage continued on its way. A sudden voice asked what the matter was. Luna yawned and casually said that they were guests. Rita and Mina looked at her in confusion. Rita peeked through the window and quietly reacted in alarm. Armed men had suddenly appeared and were walking toward them. The men gathered in front of the carriage and blocked its path. A voice mockingly praised him for stopping before being told to do so. The man who appeared to be their leader boldly said that since he was so kind, he should allow them to kill the ones inside the carriage. The armed men behind him wore cruel smirks. Eiyuu asked if they understood whose carriage that was and where it was headed. The leader shouted that it did not matter to him, as he was only speaking to the healer inside the carriage. Another voice suddenly answered that if it was the healer in the carriage, then the answer was no. Luna declared it out loud. She looked down at the men below with a smug expression. Rita called Luna's name in shock. Eiyuu shouted at Luna and asked what she was doing, warning that it was dangerous. One of the men suddenly gasped in pain, causing Eiyuu to turn toward the sound. Luna had appeared behind the leader and struck him down with a single blow. He collapsed to the ground unconscious. Eiyuu watched in shock. Another man angrily rushed forward and raised his sword to attack Luna. In one swift motion, Luna struck his neck with her dagger and dropped him as well. A nervous man cried out in confusion at her strength. 3 more men charged at her with weapons, but Luna moved with great speed, appearing behind them and cutting them down with her dagger. The remaining men stared in shock as their companions fell. Luna turned toward them with a wicked grin. They flinched at once. She dashed straight toward them. Voices rose in panic, questioning what kind of child she was. Others shouted to surround her and attack together. Cries of pain soon echoed one after another as Luna took them down one by one. Eiyuu watched the fight in stunned silence. She then recalled hearing of a very strong girl who had been helping the adventurers and the vigilante group subjugate monsters, a girl with dark skin and silver blonde hair. She realized that it had been Luna all along. Eiyuu suddenly snapped back to herself and shouted for Luna not to kill them, as they needed to capture them alive. Luna assured her that they were only unconscious. After the fight, they tied up the fallen men. Luna jumped down in front of Rita and looked at him with eyes clearly asking for praise. Rita awkwardly responded and admitted that she was amazing, but warned her not to be reckless. He and Eiyuu patted her head. Luna happily giggled. Eiyuu stepped forward and said they could leave the rest to the vigilante group and that they should get moving. They climbed back into the carriage, leaving the tied-up men behind. They rode peacefully as the carriage slowly approached their destination. Rita peeked through the window and quietly remarked that this was the Lord's mansion. He found it amazing, large, and beautiful. Mina excitedly pointed out the scenery to Luna. Luna cheerfully noted that they could see many horses. A voice from nearby agreed with delight and asked if that was the bearded dwarf inn. Rita told Eiyuu that it seemed they were more interested in the town scenery than the mansion itself. Eiyuu lightly laughed and agreed. At last, they arrived at the Lord's mansion. An old man greeted them warmly and thanked Rita Dixon and the young ladies for coming. He introduced himself as the head butler, Meisel, and invited them inside, saying the Lord was waiting. They entered the mansion, and Meisel guided them to the Lord's room. As they stepped inside, the Lord thanked Rita Dixon for coming. He introduced himself as the Lord of Amulus, Tita Amulus Rodenvart. The woman beside him introduced herself as Gabriella Rodenvart. Rita then introduced himself, and Luna and Mina did the same. Lord Amulus said he had already heard of what happened, but they were truly sorry for allowing them to be placed in danger. He and his wife bowed their heads before them. Luna suddenly remarked that for nobles to bow to commoners was something most could never do, and she noted that they truly were strange. Slightly embarrassed, Rita quickly tried to stop Luna. He then asked them to raise their heads, saying he accepted their apology. Tita thanked him. Rita then asked why he had called for him in the first place. Tita smiled and told him there was no need to be so formal and that he could simply call him Tita, since everyone else did the same. Rita agreed and addressed him as Tita-sama. Tita accepted that, then bluntly stated his reason. He wanted Rita to heal his sister, Valerie. Rita asked if he could first examine her condition. Tita agreed, then called for Mysel. The head butler bowed and answered at once. Tita then led them upstairs. He gestured toward a door and indicated that it was Valerie's room. The butler then guided the young ladies elsewhere, saying they would be served tea and sweets. Gabriella apologized and explained that they did not wish to show Valerie's state to the girls. Luna plainly accepted that it could not be helped. Mina also agreed and wished Rita the best. After the girls had left, Rita asked what kind of condition Valerie-sama had. Tita explained that it had begun around a year ago. Gabriella added that on that day, at their villa near the lake, Valerie had been having a meal with the family when fire suddenly burst from her body. Tita continued, saying it had seemed like ordinary fire, yet she had remained bedridden for more than a year. Rita asked whether healers had already examined her. Tita replied that they had, and even a healer from the Healer Guild in the capital had been unable to heal her wounds. He then said that more recently he had heard of Rita, a healer from the Adventurer Guild. Tita knocked on the door and announced their entrance to Valerie. They stepped inside the room. Rita apologized for the intrusion as they approached the bedside. He stared at Valerie, who lay there unconscious. Gabriella gently pulled back the blanket and asked Valerie's pardon. She pulled back the covers, revealing Valerie's body covered in burn marks. Rita looked stunned at the sight. He stated that he would examine her. Tita Amulus Rodenvart immediately gave his approval and urged him to proceed. Rita moved to the bedside and politely asked Valerie's pardon. He introduced himself as Rita Dixon and stated that he had come to treat her. He carefully examined her body and thought to himself that it did not seem sore, yet the burn marks had become deeply darkened. He then prepared himself and silently cast a healing spell. In his thoughts, he wondered if they were scars. The burn mark he had healed suddenly vanished. He reacted in surprise that it had healed so easily with only that much effort. He then questioned why she had not been healed until now. Rita paused in surprise as the marks that had disappeared slowly began to return. He realized that the healed spot was being covered once again. Tita confirmed that this was exactly what happened. He explained that she would recover for a brief moment. Gabriella Rodenvard added that the wounds would then spread again. Rita thought through the situation. Valerie had suddenly burst into flames. Even while healing, the wound would not remain healed. This was not a normal injury. He began to suspect something artificial behind it. Rita activated another spell and decided he should test it. He then cast a detection spell. Rita cast a detection spell on Valerie. Tita Amulus Rodenvart called out to Rita and asked how he was able to use something like detect, wondering about such magic. Rita explained that it was commonly used by adventurers. He said it was beginner-level magic used to detect traps and hidden treasures. He continued that with this spell, anything reacting to magic would turn blue, and enchanted items would reveal a white aura. Rita suddenly stopped speaking. His eyes widened as he muttered that it was a black curse. He then shouted in alarm that Valerie was cursed. Tita reacted in disbelief, unable to accept it, and demanded to know why such a thing would happen. Gabriella Rodenvart softly called Valerie's name, filled with worry. Tita cursed in frustration and demanded to know what they should do if it truly was a curse. Gabriella called to him and said they would report it to the Healers Guild in the capital. Tita answered that they would, but questioned whether healers could even deal with curses. Rita suddenly asked Tita-sama to wait a moment. Tita turned toward him and apologized for the trouble, telling Rita-kun that he would reward him properly for this. Rita replied that it was not about that. He hesitated briefly, then admitted that he had only memorized the spell and had never used it before. He then asked for permission to use it on Valerie-sama. It was the spell Dispel Magic. Tita froze in shock and immediately asked if Rita truly could use it. If so, he begged him to do it at once. Rita firmly answered yes. He admitted that he did not know how much he could help, but before the capital could send any response, he would at least try to ease her suffering until then. Rita cast the spell in his mind, calling upon the spirit of light to repel evil forces and remove the curse. A soft light began to glow. A large magic circle appeared beneath Valerie's body. Within the darkness, a faint voice whispered that it was hot and dark. Valerie kept repeating that it was hot. Flames surrounded her. In her thoughts, she realized she could hear voices from outside. She wondered how long she had to remain trapped like that. She could neither see nor properly hear anything. It was unbearably hot. She pleaded for her older brother to save her. She begged for anyone to save her from the heat. Suddenly, her consciousness began to slowly crack. Eventually, it broke completely, allowing light to seep through. Tears flowed from Valerie's eyes as the light slowly consumed her. Valerie cried out in pain, saying it was hot and begging her older brother to save her. Tita Amulus Rodenvart called out to Valerie, realizing her consciousness had returned. Rita reassured Valerie that everything was all right and that the curse was being lifted little by little. Valerie opened her eyes and asked who he was. Rita introduced himself as Rita Dixon, a healer. Rita continued healing her while Tita and Gabriella Rodenvart watched anxiously, their concern clear on their faces. Valerie repeatedly called for her older brother in her thoughts. Another wave of pain struck, and she cried out once more. Tita softly whispered in amazement as he noticed the black scars covering her body. The dark marks on Valerie's skin slowly began to fade. Rita kept healing her while Valerie clung to him and cried out in pain. The black scar on her shoulder gradually disappeared. Gabriella wept in relief as she saw the marks vanishing one after another. Rita urged Valerie to endure a little longer, promising he would do all he could. Valerie weakly smiled and answered yes. She softly called Rita-sama's name before crying out again from pain. Rita thought to himself that this was difficult. It was consuming a huge amount of his mana, and he could no longer control it. Sweat poured from him as he realized the danger. It would not stop. It felt as if his mana was being completely drained away. The light surrounding them grew even brighter. Tita and Gabriella covered their eyes from the intense glow. Then all at once, the light vanished. Tita asked what that powerful light had been just now. The glow around Rita and Valerie fully faded. Rita weakly apologized to Valerie-sama. Valerie softly answered yes. Rita then whispered that he had reached his limit, before collapsing unconscious into her lap. Valerie cried out in surprise. Tita immediately called to Valerie and asked if she was all right. She answered yes and said it was all thanks to Rita-sama. Nikto then told him that he needed to learn how to control his mana. Rita simply answered yes. He cast a wind blade spell. Nikto praised him and said that was good. She then explained that it was just like alcohol. If he poured only small amounts, it would not go to waste. Nikto explained that if he poured everything in at once, it would overflow, be wasted, and the container would become empty in an instant. Rita smiled and agreed. Nikto then said it worked something like that. She cast a spell in her mind, calling upon the spirit of flames. Small flame balls began flying toward the beasts. Rita watched in surprise. Nikto explained that if he did not do it that way, then this was what happened. She cast another spell, again calling upon the spirit of flames. This time, large flame balls appeared and shot toward the enemy. Rita cried out in shock for her to wait. The flame balls exploded. Jill angrily shouted in frustration, demanding to know if they were trying to kill them as well. Gilliam remarked that wiping out the goblins in a single strike was impressive, then laughed. Nikto asked Rita if he understood now. Rita scratched his head and awkwardly replied that he did, and that he would try his best. Nikto told him that he surely could do it. Rita suddenly woke from the dream. He muttered that it had only been a dream. He reflected that he had failed to control his mana, ran out of it, and fainted. He realized he still could not do the thing he had been taught long ago. Tita Amulus Rodenvart suddenly called out, saying he was awake now. Rita flinched in surprise. He quickly turned toward him and apologized for borrowing the bed. Tita told him not to worry about it, as he was his sister's benefactor. Tita then explained that he had others use Detect on Valerie, and the curse had truly been lifted. Rita smiled in relief and said that was good to hear. He then asked about the girls. Tita smiled and answered that Mina and Luna had entered the bath with everyone. Outside the mansion, a voice told Valerie to watch her steps, reminding her that she had only just recovered from illness. Valerie politely answered with thanks to her older sister. Mina exclaimed in amazement at how large the bath was. Luna plainly agreed. Aisha complained in disbelief, wondering why even she had been brought there while she was still in the middle of work, saying it was too much for her. They then stepped into the water. The three of them were smiling while the other two looked far less pleased. Valerie laughed and mentioned that she had heard Aisha was also an adventurer, just like Rita. Slightly surprised, Aisha confirmed it. Meanwhile, Luna anxiously thought that setting aside Gabriella Rodenvart, even Valerie was asking about Papa. She immediately felt something bad coming. Valerie cheerfully remarked how nice it felt. Luna flatly agreed. Valerie then reacted to the coldness of the water and lightly giggled. Aisha suddenly asked why she had even been called there, wondering if there was something Valerie-sama wanted. Luna gasped in shock and screamed in her thoughts for her not to start talking. Valerie smiled and admitted that she wanted to ask all of them many things about Rita-san. Gabriella softly reacted in surprise at Valerie's openness. Valerie then confirmed that it had been love at first sight. Luna shouted in frustration within her thoughts, knowing it all along. She then insisted that Valerie-sama was a noble, and that it was not proper for her to fall in love with Papa, who was a commoner. Gabriella calmly replied that it was fine. She added that Tita Amulus Rodenvart had even considered granting Rita the right to marry her as a reward. Luna gasped in complete shock. She quickly protested that after being healed from a serious illness and then falling in love with the healer, many stories ended in regret later. Mina innocently pointed out that the same thing had happened to her too, asking Luna if that was not right. Luna nearly choked in surprise. She demanded to know whose side Mina was on. Mina simply smiled and answered that it was Dad's side. Valerie chuckled as she watched Luna trying to persuade her sister. She then asked them all to tell her what kind of person Rita truly was, so that she would not regret it later. Mina asked if it was about her dad, then said that he was kind to everyone. Aisha added that before, he had been kind but somewhat unreliable. However, during the time she had not seen him, he had become more manly. Luna shyly muttered that she did not know, and that perhaps he was king or something, though she truly did not know. Valerie happily declared that after hearing all of this, she wanted to become the mother of Luna-chan and Mina-chan. She then reached toward Luna and gave her a look that clearly felt like a declaration of war, asking them to get along. Luna gasped then grinned. She accepted Valerie's hand and boldly welcomed the challenge. Aisha quietly wondered how things had ended up like this. At the same time, inside the mansion, Rita remarked that thanks to that bath he felt refreshed. Tita replied that it was the hot spring they were proud of, after all. Rita then noticed something and quietly reacted. The room was empty and silent. He observed that it seemed the girls were still in the bath. Tita then suggested that in that case, they should go have a drink together. Rita agreed that it sounded good. Night came at the Lord's mansion. 2 girls returned and greeted their father and mother. Tita Amulis Rodenvart, Gabriella Rodenvart, and Valerie answered together, welcoming them back. The girls' eyes widened in surprise. They happily cried out at seeing Valerie awake and immediately asked if she was fine now. Valerie smiled and assured them that she was well. The head butler, Meisel, suddenly coughed and interrupted the excitement. He remarked that it was good to see how happy they both were, but reminded them to greet the guests first. The 2 little girls then stood nervously before the visitors. One smiled and introduced herself as Oro Amulis. The other introduced herself as Nero Amulis. Tita told Rita that they were his daughters. He explained that a school would be opening that spring, so he had been preparing them for the entrance exam. Rita reacted with admiration, saying it was amazing. He then turned to the girls and greeted them. Gabriella then announced that since greetings were finished, it was time for dinner. They soon gathered in the dining area. Valerie offered food to Rita and told him the meat was delicious. Rita hesitantly thanked her. Luna suddenly called out to Papa and reminded him not to eat only meat, insisting he also eat the vegetables. Rita awkwardly thanked Luna. Valerie then added that he would become thirsty after eating those vegetables and offered him wine as well. Rita stammered another thanks to Valerie-sama. Gabriella smiled as Tita watched the scene in confusion. Rita and Tita looked into each other's eyes, clearly sharing the same thought. Rita looked deeply puzzled, wondering what was happening. Tita appeared to be thinking the same. Mina quietly mumbled that they were really close. Oro and Nero agreed together. Valerie then mentioned that although they were in the middle of a meal, she had something she wanted to tell her older brother. Tita asked what it was. Valerie gave a sweet smile and stated that she wished to date Rita-sama with marriage in mind. She then asked if that would be acceptable. Rita flinched in shock. Stunned by what he had just heard, he struggled to speak. Luna suddenly slammed the table. In her thoughts, she furiously declared that Valerie had truly done it now, boldly saying such things at a time like this. She refused to let Valerie stand in her way. Valerie responded by giving her a wink. Luna immediately decided she would act as well. She covered her face with one hand and dramatically brought up that he had proposed to her before, then questioned whether Valerie-sama was still fine with that. Rita dropped his jaw in shock. He hurriedly reacted and told Luna that he had never meant it as a proposal. Luna looked back at him with annoyance. Valerie calmly replied that since she also had such a cute rival, she was only asking for permission. Luna gritted her teeth in frustration. Tita Amulis Rodenvart then said he did not mind the matter. He turned to Rita and asked what he himself thought. Rita awkwardly admitted that he did not really know much about Valerie-sama. He added that he was not a good match for her and that he was already an older man at 30 years old. Valerie reacted dramatically in surprise. She lamented that Rita-sama had rejected them. Luna immediately shouted for Valerie not to include her in that statement. Valerie quickly clarified that she had not meant it that way. Luna cheerfully declared that Papa already had her as his wife. Valerie sharply reminded her that she was his daughter. Tita then suggested that they begin as friends first, with marriage in mind later, asking Rita-kun about it. Rita scratched his head and awkwardly answered that he did not mind being friends. Luna objected at once, saying there was no need for that. Tita ignored the protest and asked Rita-kun to please take care of Valerie. Rita stammered his agreement to Rita-sama. Suddenly, an idea came to Valerie. She softly remarked that this was bad. Gabriella Rodenvart asked if something was wrong. Valerie replied that if Rita-sama became her friend, then her older brother would become lonely again. She said it teasingly. Tita dropped his jaw in surprise and loudly denied it. Afterward, their visit soon came to an end. Valerie warmly thanked Rita-kun. Nero Amulis and Oro Amulis both said they would see Mina Wani-chan later. Rita told Tita that they had been in his care as well. Luna then sat quietly inside the carriage. Rita smiled as he looked out the window. In her thoughts, Luna reflected on the curse. She reminded herself that dispel magic was rare even among healers, and only people such as priests could normally handle it. It consumed a huge amount of mana and usually took many days to cast, at least from what she had heard in the organization. Even if it had been because of Mina's gift, she still could not ignore it. It should not have been possible to do it in only half a day. Even the fireball from that time had been his true power. Mina suddenly interrupted Luna's thoughts and asked what was wrong. Luna turned to her and said she had only been thinking about how amazing Papa was. Mina smiled brightly and agreed that he truly was amazing. Luna then hugged her and said that Mina was amazing as well. She soon fell silent and smiled to herself, thinking that along with his kindness and warmth, even Valerie-sama would naturally fall for him. She stared into the distance and quietly admitted to herself that there was nothing she could do. 2 days later, at the inn, Valerie stood in front of the entrance and sweetly asked whether Rita-sama was there. Luna trembled with fury and demanded to know why Valerie-sama had come there. Tita Amulus Rodenvart awkwardly laughed and explained that he had only wanted Rita to heal him. Mina and Miran both reacted in surprise at seeing Tita-sama. After a while, Rita cast a healing spell on Tita's wounds. Rita then asked how this had happened. Slightly embarrassed, Tita chuckled and explained that it occurred while fighting the thugs who had attacked him. Rita then asked whether he had learned anything from that incident. Tita replied that regarding that matter. Suddenly, a loud noise interrupted them. A voice angrily shouted whether that was truly how they asked someone for help. Another voice yelled that they had heard there was a healer there. Yet another shouted for him to be brought out. Rita reacted in confusion at the mention of a healer. He then said he would go and take a look. Tita briefly answered in agreement. Rita headed downstairs and called out to Riggs, asking if something had happened. He mentioned hearing something about a healer. Suddenly, a cup flew straight toward him. Rita swiftly dodged it and reacted in surprise. The man then shouted in a demanding tone, asking if he was the healer and ordering him to come at once and heal him. Rita looked at the man with clear disdain and questioned what that attitude was about. He then asked who the man even was. Suddenly, another man angrily shouted that Rita should know their lord, Munza-sama. He introduced him as Muna LG, the lord of the Munza trading company in that town. Riggs quietly muttered in annoyance that he was nothing more than a corrupt merchant. Munza shouted at Rita to hurry, saying it hurt and burned. He even offered a platinum coin as payment. Rita calmly replied that they could discuss money later and first asked to see the wounds. Munza groaned in pain as he slowly removed his clothes. When he finally took them all off, black marks covering nearly his entire body were revealed. Rita froze in shock. In his thoughts, he realized this was not just an injury, but burn marks. Munza shouted again for him to hurry. He complained that he had requested 2 healers from the Healers Guild before coming there. He cursed the town as being full of scum, saying they could not heal it at all, and demanded to know if Rita would be the same. Rita calmly asked whether the injury had happened 2 days ago in the evening. One of the men confirmed that it had, then demanded again that he quickly heal his master. Rita fell silent. The man angrily asked what he was doing. Rita recalled what he had read in the book about using Dispel. If the curse was lifted successfully, it would return to the caster. Rita then addressed Munza-san and explained that when Dispel succeeded, the curse seemed to go back to whoever had cast it. One of the men angrily called out to the healer and accused him of mocking them. A sudden voice interrupted, saying that it truly had been him after all. Valerie came down the stairs and called Munza's attention. She stared directly at him. Munza shouted in shock at seeing Valerie, believing she should have died with the curse. Another voice then interrupted. Tita Amulus Rodenvart said that even he had not known Valerie was cursed until the day before yesterday. Muna quickly covered his mouth in panic. Tita darkly remarked that there was no need for him to hide anymore. He explained that when his carriage had been attacked a few days earlier, the captured thugs had mentioned his name during questioning. Valerie coldly observed that he could no longer talk his way out of it now. Munza gritted his teeth. He silently watched them and thought to himself that before him stood the head of the house and 3 brats, with 2 of them from the Amulus family. He wickedly chuckled. Munza then shouted at Tita Amulus Rodenvart, declaring that he would regret coming into town without any guards. He immediately ordered his men to kill everyone except the healer. Armed men burst into the room and charged straight at them. Rita remained calm and cast a spell in his mind, commanding them to be bound. He used chainbind. In an instant, chains appeared and tightly wrapped around the enemies, completely immobilizing them. Luna darted forward with swift precision and kicked Munza directly in the face, sending him flying into the wall with a heavy crash. He cried out from the impact. Luna remarked that those men were truly lucky, as she did not want to spill blood inside the inn. Munza gasped nervously. He turned toward his men, his voice trembling as he demanded to know what they were doing, but his men only staggered unsteadily before collapsing unconscious onto the floor. Valerie stepped forward and fixed a cold gaze on Munza. She demanded to know why he had cursed her. Munza swallowed hard, too stunned to answer. Valerie moved closer beside Luna, gripped her dagger, and lightly pressed it against Munza's neck. She coldly ordered him to speak. A thin line of blood trickled from his neck as sweat poured down his face. At last, Munza answered with a shaking voice. He admitted that it was because the school Valerie-sama had proposed was interfering with their trade. Luna and Valerie both reacted in disbelief. Valerie calmly accepted the answer, then struck him hard in the face. Munza collapsed to the floor unconscious. Rita suddenly called out in surprise at the arrival of Tex's. Tex strode into the room, grabbed Munza by the neck, and smiled as he remarked that it seemed he had not been needed as a guard after all. Tita laughed and agreed that it seemed so. Tex then stated that he would lock them up. Tita replied that he should, adding that he had many things to ask Munza as well. After a while, outside the inn, Tita turned to Rita and apologized for causing trouble. Valerie apologized to Riggs for everything that had happened. Tex waved at Rita and said they would drink again tomorrow. He then gave his farewell. Rita waved back and agreed, telling Tex he would see him later. Rita let out a deep sigh. He remarked that one case had been solved. He then wondered how Munza had managed to obtain tools capable of cursing others. After thinking for a moment, he decided to leave that matter to Tita Amulis Rodenvard. Rita then patted the heads of Mina and Luna. He suggested that they head to the guild and look for some quests. Mina cheerfully agreed. Together, the three of them walked toward the guild. Meanwhile, in the capital, a woman sat at her desk. Amanda Rowe reflected on how Rita Dixon was not a member of the Healer Guild, but instead belonged to the Adventurer Guild, while providing treatment at low cost. She worried that the Adventurer Guild had likely found his weakness and was making him overwork himself. She then declared that Rita Dixon should wait for her, because Amanda Rowe would surely save him. But when she glanced at the towering stack of paperwork on her desk, she slumped back into her seat. She admitted that first, she would have to deal with those piles of documents. Rita arrived at the vast mountain together with Mina and Luna. Waiting there was Eric, and it had already been around 3 weeks since they last met. The reunion was warm and simple. Eric also checked on Mina, who looked just as cheerful as ever. Mina then wondered why Eric was at a place like this. The answer was practical and very fitting. The transport of the Black Dragon would be handled by Eric's corporation. Rita immediately understood. If something this huge needed to be moved, it would take serious people and serious money. Nearby, Dick waved at them, but the calm greeting did not last long. A stern voice cut through the air. It was Rang, reminding everyone that it was time to begin. Rita stepped forward and silently activated his magic. In an instant, the lifeless black dragon appeared on the ground. Its enormous body covered the area like a fallen fortress. Luna froze in shock. Even veterans around them could not hide their reactions. Tex noted that it had been around 10 years since he had seen a dragon this large. Gabriella stared in surprise, while Tita quietly admired the sheer size of it. Then the kingdom's A-class storage clerk stepped forward. With one clean spell, the massive dragon vanished from sight. Just like that, a monster large enough to shake armies was packed away like cargo. Efficient people were terrifying in their own way. Rita calmly left the rest in their hands. Claus and Rang began discussing payment. Rang admitted he originally planned to pay only after an assessment, but Claus had another idea. Selling the dragon through auction could raise the price much higher. Business was business, even after slaying legends. Rang seemed relieved that Claus agreed. However, the serious mood did not survive for long. Valerie suddenly rushed in and hugged Rita tightly, proudly celebrating the man who defeated the dragon. Luna reacted at once and ran over to join her, wrapping herself around him as well. The two girls began challenging each other while holding on even tighter. Rita, now trapped in public view, could only panic as everyone watched the scene unfold. Mina and Valerie then looked at each other, both smiling with the same dangerous idea. Instead of stopping, they became even more united. Rita turned bright red and realized something unexpected. These two somehow got along far too well when it came to troubling him. Still, part of him knew that was better than them fighting. At that perfect moment, Eric cleared his throat and asked for a moment of Rita's time. Rita accepted immediately, likely seeing it as a rescue rope from heaven itself. Mina gently reminded the others to let go before their father became even more troubled. Finally free, Rita scratched his head in embarrassment and turned to Eric. But then, Eric revealed that there was something important he needed to tell him. What Rita doesn't know yet is that this conversation may be far more serious than the chaos from moments ago. Eric then revealed that someone had traveled with their convoy from the capital. That person had business with Rita. More importantly, they appeared to be from the Healer Guild. The moment Rita heard that, a small sense of unease appeared on his face. Mina quickly asked what the Healer Guild was. Valerie explained that it was an organization that gathered healers together. A respectable group on the surface, but not exactly simple. Then Millet jumped in with her own sharp guess. In her eyes, they likely came for one reason only: to pull Rita out of the Adventurer Guild, bring him into their ranks, and charge very expensive fees through his talent. That idea immediately worried Mina. She looked at Rita, wondering if he would stop being an adventurer. Rita rejected the thought at once. He had no intention of leaving. Hearing that, Millet confidently declared that if anyone from the Healer Guild caused trouble, they could simply be chased away. Rita could only laugh awkwardly at her fearless support. However, Eric soon shifted the topic. This convoy, he explained, was unusually large and heavily prepared. With so many incidents happening lately, they needed extra security. Since they were transporting valuable goods, they had even borrowed people from the Commerce Guild in the capital. Rita understood right away. Times were unstable, and valuable cargo always attracted danger. Eric then added that he had another business meeting in the area, so he would not be returning to the capital yet. If Rita needed anything, he only had to ask. Rita thanked him sincerely. Soon after, the group began walking back toward the town. Along the way, Claus casually confirmed that Luna was Mina's sister. Rita gave a short answer, then asked what Claus planned to do while waiting for the dragon auction results. Claus revealed that he would be staying in Amulus for now. That alone surprised Rita, but what came next surprised him even more. In a few days, Edith and Kate would also arrive. Then Claus quietly added one more name: Hildegarda. Rita's eyes widened at once. Claus remembered Luna and Valerie, then looked at Rita with clear amusement. He was already looking forward to what would happen next. After offering Rita some cheerful luck, Claus walked away. Rita waved back, but inside, the danger bells were ringing loudly. He had once imagined seeing Hildegarda again someday far in the future. Maybe 10 years later, maybe 20. Not now. Definitely not now. Handling Luna and Valerie was already enough trouble. But then Luna suddenly noticed Claus had already left. Rita froze for a moment, and that was when the real fear hit him. If Luna and Hildegarda met each other, nothing good would come from it. Rita kept walking toward town, burdened by a future disaster that seemed to be getting closer with every step. Mina looked at Rita with clear suspicion. He was sweating far too much for someone who claimed everything was fine. She asked what was wrong, but Rita quickly brushed it aside. He took a deep breath, steadied himself, and forced a calm face. Then he decided to stop thinking about the coming disaster altogether. For now, denial was his strongest defense. Meanwhile, at Nevin Clinic, the mood was far less peaceful. A sharp voice echoed through the building after learning the truth behind their falling business. The reason was one man: Rita. The local healer Nexon Crow stood among rows of empty beds while the visitor questioned what had happened to the town's other healer, Yuri Temperance. Yuri explained that she had grown bored and barely used healing magic anymore. She was unusual in her own way, content simply being able to heal when she wished. However, Yuri soon revealed the real problem. He presented the pricing list released by the Adventurer Guild. The visitors stared in disbelief. The healing fees were shockingly low. 5 silver coins, nearly the same cost as potions. Silence followed for a moment. Then determination replaced shock. The woman, Amanda Rowe, made up her mind. She would force the guild to change those prices. Better yet, she would personally open Rita Dixon's eyes and bring him into the glorious Healer Guild. The next day, inside the Adventurer Guild meeting room, town officials were already discussing new plans. Millet explained that with the Munza Corporation now gone, their vacant area could be turned into a medical center. Tex immediately asked the practical question: the budget. Before concerns could grow, Eric announced that the Merchant Guild would cover the costs. Miso added that funds had also come from Amulus itself. Suddenly, the project looked ready to move forward without trouble. But then, right on cue, trouble kicked open the door. Amanda burst into the meeting room and loudly declared that there was, in fact, a very big problem. She had heard a meeting was taking place and immediately demanded to know where Rita Dixon was. Tex calmly informed her that Rita was not there. Millet then questioned who she was and reminded her that only town officials were allowed inside during an active meeting. Amanda proudly introduced herself as a representative of the Healer Guild. Rang then asked what business such a guild had here. Amanda paused, gathered herself, and declared that she had come on behalf of her guild. What she doesn't know yet is that walking into this room was the easy part. Amanda firmly declared that she opposed the construction of a clinic for what she called a rogue healer. Tex immediately questioned her stance, even if the town's lord had already approved it. Amanda did not back down. In her eyes, the town already had 2 healers from the Healer Guild, and any new clinic was an insult to them. She then pushed the argument further. According to her, the town was taking advantage of Rita Dixon by charging such low healing fees. That statement instantly drew a reaction from Millet. She reminded Amanda that Rita was family to her and a benefactor to the town. Suggesting they were using him was, to her, nothing more than a bad joke. Amanda fired back by pointing at the pricing itself. Healing fees equal to potion prices could only mean exploitation. However, Malay calmly explained the truth. Rita was an adventurer. His healing fees were covered through quests, and he himself was satisfied with the arrangement. Amanda responded with smug confidence, claiming that Rita simply did not understand the true value of healers from the guild. That was the wrong thing to say. Malay's patience vanished. She sharply questioned what exactly people needed to know about an organization famous for charging huge fees in the name of donations. Amanda recoiled, then exploded in anger. She even threatened that, if she wished, she could stop Rita from calling himself a healer. But Malay answered with something much deeper. Rita did not heal people because of a title. He healed people because he was Rita. That was who he had always been. The room fell tense as the two women glared at each other with equal fire. Then Rang finally stepped in and ordered Malay to calm down. After she apologized, Rang turned his attention to Amanda. With complete calm, he reminded her that this was an official meeting inside the town's guild branch. Since the Healer Guild had no branch in Amulus, it had no authority there and no say in the matter. Amanda trembled with fury. Rang did not move an inch. If she still objected, she could take her complaint directly to the town lord, or to Rita himself. That answer only fueled her anger. Amanda stormed out and slammed the door behind her. The moment she left, Malay quietly stuck out her tongue in victory. A small gesture, but a satisfying one. Meanwhile, back at the inn, Rita was asking Luna about the name of the organization connected to her. She told him it was Crimson Topaz. When Luna asked why he cared, Rita admitted that after thinking it over he at least wanted to know the name so he could stay careful. Luna's eyes widened. She realized he was worrying about her and Mina. Touched by that concern, she playfully asked if she could thank him with a kiss, even suggesting one on the lips. Rita quickly dismissed the teasing, while Luna insisted she was serious. But then, before the moment could go any further, a loud voice thundered from outside. Someone was calling for Rita Dixon. Rita nervously peeked outside, only to find Amanda standing there boldly, waiting for him. What he doesn't know yet is that the meeting room argument was only the warm-up. At the inn, Amanda chose to be direct. She openly declared that Rita Dixon had left the Adventurer Guild and joined their Healer Guild. Rita simply smiled, however he calmly refused. Amanda reacted in disbelief, questioning the reason. She insisted that the Adventurer Guild, no, even the entire town, had been taking advantage of him for cheap labor, making use of him without fairness. Nearby, Mirren wondered if the two were arguing, but then Riggs dismissed that thought. Rita scratched his head, appearing slightly troubled. He admitted that from their point of view, it might look that way. However, at the rates they were offering, only nobles and wealthy merchants could afford proper treatment. What he wanted instead was simple. He intended to use his healing for the people and adventurers living in that town. With that, Rita made it clear they were done talking. He indicated she no longer needed to come. Amanda, still processing his words, reacted in confusion and frustration, insisting everything she said was for his sake. But then, what she doesn't know yet is that Luna had already appeared behind her. In an instant, Luna struck the back of her neck. Amanda collapsed to the floor, losing consciousness. Luna showed clear irritation, as if her patience had been wasted. Rita froze in surprise at her sudden appearance. Without hesitation, Luna grabbed Amanda by the collar and dragged her outside. Tex flinched the moment he saw Luna, realizing he had arrived too late despite leaving his meeting early. Luna looked at him coldly, confirming Amanda was still alive. Then she told him he came at the right time and instructed him to throw her somewhere. Tex accepted without resistance. Meanwhile, Mina and Mirren stood still, completely stunned as everything unfolded so quickly. However, the situation didn't end there. A voice suddenly broke the tension, shouting in disbelief. People turned toward it, only to see Amanda again, now awake and furious. She declared everything unacceptable. Instead of listening, she claimed they resorted to violence, calling him nothing more than a barbaric adventurer. She wiped her tears, then drank her beer in one go and slammed the mug onto the table. Her decision was immediate. If that was how he chose to act, then she would forbid him from using the name of a healer. With that resolve, she decided to return to the capital as soon as possible and begin her preparations. The next carriage would depart the day after tomorrow. Soon after, night fell. Tita let out a light laugh, noting that Rita had gone through quite a lot. Rita responded with an awkward laugh, asking for a bit of leniency. However, Tita pointed out that people often follow their own sense of justice, and that tends to create problems. Whether they charge a large amount in just a few days, or a smaller amount over time, he didn't think it made much difference in the overall income. Valerie then added that even so, the healers in that town had already made their services far cheaper compared to those in the capital. Luna quietly muttered that no matter which guild Rita chooses, she only needs to support him as his wife. But then, Valerie quickly corrected that to daughter instead. Luna gave a forced laugh and adjusted herself, saying she supports him as a friend as well. Valerie returned the same kind of polite but fake laughter. Mina and Mirin watched the exchange with curious eyes. Mirin observed that they seemed to be getting along, while Mina agreed with a cheerful nod. But then Tita shifted the topic. He set everything else aside and brought up Munza. Rita responded briefly, acknowledging him. Tita explained that he had found the source of the curse Munza had used. It appeared to have been purchased from an organization known as Crimson Topaz. At that moment, both Luna and Rita froze in place. Valerie noticed Luna's hands tightening into fists and questioned if they knew something. Rita and Luna exchanged looks. Luna then let out a deep breath, and what he doesn't know yet is that she had already decided to reveal everything. She began explaining the full situation. After hearing it all, Tita quietly acknowledged the information. He then stated that for now, they would pass it to the Adventurer Guild and escalate it as a matter for the kingdom. He sought their agreement. Rita accepted the plan, then looked toward Luna for confirmation. Luna gave a short approval and added that the organization likely had many hideouts. She mentioned that she could point out all the places she had been to. Tita responded with appreciation. Soon after, their discussion came to an end. Tita expressed his thanks to Riggs for the meal, and Riggs welcomed them anytime, making it clear they were always free to return. He handled both cooking and drinks with ease. Tita acknowledged it and agreed to proceed that way. However, Valerie drifted into deep thought. Then suddenly she called Mina and Luna over, asking them to come closer. Luna questioned what she wanted, but then Valerie pulled both of them into a tight embrace and laughed. Luna reacted in surprise as Valerie continued hugging them tightly. Mina and Luna struggled for air before finally breaking free from her grip. Luna, still confused, asked what it was this time. Valerie only smiled and stepped closer. Then she leaned in and whispered something reassuring, making it clear that those responsible would definitely pay. At that moment, Luna's eyes widened. Valerie looked at her with mixed emotions, but then softened her expression into a gentle smile, seeking her agreement. Luna responded with a small smile of her own. But then, without warning, Luna made a bold announcement, allowing Valerie a special exception to hug her papa just this once. Rita turned toward them, caught off guard. Valerie reacted with excitement and immediately rushed toward him. She leapt forward without hesitation. Rita was startled by the sudden movement, unable to react in time. But then Luna called Mina and Mirin to join in. They ran toward Rita as well and wrapped their arms around him in a cheerful group embrace. Meanwhile, in the forest, the mood was quieter. Edith apologized for causing a detour. However, Hilda brushed it off, saying it was fine. She then confirmed that the herbs they were searching for only grew in that area. Inside the wagon, Kate slept peacefully. Hilda let out a soft chuckle, noting how deeply asleep he was. She reflected that children were truly adorable. Edith responded softly, acknowledging her words. But then, Hilda casually mentioned her wish to have a child with Rita someday. Edith reacted to that remark, visibly surprised. Hilda noticed and questioned her expression with slight irritation. Edith quickly denied any strange thoughts. However, Hilda pointed out that she looked just like Kate, suggesting that others might think it was strange for someone who looked like a child to want one. Edith responded with a small laugh, denying that idea. But Hilda only grew more irritated. Then suddenly, her attention shifted. She noticed something in the distance. A wagon. Hilda told Edith to wait and made sure Kate wouldn't be disturbed. She carefully observed the area, noting that it didn't seem like the presence of a person or a monster. But then, as she got closer, the situation became clear. The wagon was overturned. She stopped and took it in. The sight was unsettling. Something was clearly wrong. She sensed no presence at all. However, she continued to inspect the area around the wagon. As she looked closer, dead bodies lay scattered across the ground. The coachman and his guards were among them. But then, something felt off. It didn't seem like the work of monsters. She moved toward the wagon and looked inside. A pair of bodies lay there, holding onto each other even in death. The sight made her consider another possibility. Bandits. But then, something unexpected happened. A piece of paper drifted down and landed near her boots. Hilda noticed it immediately. She bent down, picked it up, and carefully examined what was written on it. At the capital, inside the Adventurer Guild, someone called out to Rita. A woman checked on him, asking if he had found anything. Rita scratched his head, however he admitted he couldn't find any party looking for a rearguard. But then, a man suddenly stepped in and asked if he was the one searching for a party. Rita turned toward him and confirmed it. The man observed his outfit and assumed he was a rearguard. Rita explained that he could use an item box about the size of a backpack, along with some fire magic. The man took a closer look, clearly interested. He introduced himself as Jill and mentioned he was forming a party called Jet Blackwolves. He offered Rita a place in the group. Rita reacted with surprise but quickly accepted, expressing his gratitude and introducing himself in return. Another man stepped forward and introduced himself as Gilliam, hoping they would get along. Beside him, a girl introduced herself as Nikto. However, the moment settled only briefly before a woman stepped in again, pointing out that this was good for Rita. Jill looked at her with confusion and questioned her identity, noting she didn't seem like an adventurer. The woman introduced herself as Rinser. Without hesitation, she grabbed Rita's arm and declared that he would now be working at a bar called Dancing Dragon Princess. She then asked the group to take care of him. Later, in the forest, the group gathered the items they had collected. Rita activated his item box and began storing everything inside. One by one, the items disappeared into it. After finishing, he closed the box and confirmed that everything had been collected. But then he noticed something off. Gilliam was suddenly gasping in pain. Nikto wondered if he had twisted his leg. Rita quickly approached them and asked to take a look. He took a deep breath, then silently cast a healing spell in his mind. The effect was immediate. Gilliam reacted in surprise. Nikto also looked shocked, realizing that Rita could now use healing magic. Rita calmly confirmed it, noting that he had only learned it recently. Gilliam reacted with admiration, noting how rare it was to find someone who could use healing magic. However, Rita downplayed it, explaining that he couldn't even heal small scratches with it. He let out a light laugh. Gilliam responded casually, patting him, but pointed out that even stopping pain was already useful. Jill followed up with a chuckle, comparing it to pain-killing herbs. He added that someday, Rita might be able to heal even cuts. But then, Jill's tone shifted. He quickly warned him not to tell anyone about his healing ability. Rita looked at him in confusion. Jill grinned and explained that if the Healer Guild found out, they might force him to quit being an adventurer. Rita scratched his head, slowly understanding. Jill added that it would only cause trouble. The scene shifted. Mina tried to wake Rita up, calling out to him as morning had already come. However, still half asleep, Rita mumbled about it being troublesome. Mina complained that she was the one having trouble. Rita slowly opened his eyes and yawned, mentioning that he had a nostalgic dream. Mina sighed, pointing out that he had overslept. Then she pouted, thinking he had probably stayed up late drinking again. Rita gave a small chuckle and apologized, saying he was awake now. Mina smiled in response. She quickly ran outside and called out, announcing that he was finally awake. Meanwhile, Rita gathered himself and thought about heading to the guilds to check available quests. After that, at the Emulous Guild, both Rita and Mina noticed familiar faces upon entering. Rita called out to Edith and Kate. The two turned toward them. But then, Kate suddenly rushed over to Mina with excitement. Edith followed with a warm smile, acknowledging their reunion. Luna, however, grew slightly uneasy and asked who they were. Rita explained that they were Claus's family. Edith then introduced herself properly as Claus's wife. She pulled Kate closer, presenting him as her son. Luna responded with a smile and introduced herself as Mina's sister, then paused before clearly stating that she was Rita Dixon's wife. The atmosphere shifted slightly. But then, what they didn't expect was someone appearing behind them. Hilda stepped in and reacted to what she heard, repeating the word with interest. She noted the timing, calling it quite the coincidence. Rita flinched in surprise. Sweat ran down as he slowly turned toward her. Hilda introduced herself as Hildegarda Edera, making it clear she was also his wife. Mina greeted her happily, recognizing her as another older sister. However, Luna reacted sharply, questioning what this small elf girl was claiming. Rita remained frozen, unable to respond. Hilda, with a smug look, reacted to being called a little girl and pointed out that she was even older than Edith nearby. Luna chose to ignore that. Instead, she suddenly raised her voice and turned to Rita, asking for permission to knock her out. Hilda only grinned, treating it like a childish act to indulge in. Luna reacted with anger at being called a child. But then, in an instant, she moved behind Hilda and declared herself an adult. Without even turning around, Hilda caught her arm. Luna flinched at the speed. Hilda showed mild approval, then lifted Luna and attempted to throw her. However, Luna slipped free and vanished from her grasp. In the next moment, she reappeared in front of Hilda, returning the same confident expression. Hilda responded with another smirk. Their eyes locked. Then, without hesitation, both of them moved at the same time. They rushed toward each other, each determined that the winner would claim the title of wife. Around them, people began to gather, drawn in by the sudden chaos. Kate stood nearby, watching nervously as the two circled each other. From the crowd, someone shouted encouragement, but it only triggered both of them. They immediately snapped back, denying the insult. Hilda remained amused and hinted at getting more serious. Luna responded with equal determination. But then, the situation escalated further. Millet suddenly appeared, shouting and demanding to know what was happening. She warned them not to cause trouble inside the guild. However, before she could finish, a boot flew through the air and struck her. Even then, she tried to maintain order, asking them not to throw things. Meanwhile, Rita, completely overwhelmed, finally shouted for both of them to stop. But just as the chaos reached its peak, another voice joined in, adding even more tension to the scene. Valerie stepped in calmly and told them to let it be. She assured that they would have a good time there, addressing Rita with ease. Rita's eyes widened in shock, caught off guard by her sudden appearance. However, Valerie explained that she had heard about merchant groups being attacked near the town and had come on behalf of her older brother. Rita reacted immediately, realizing how serious that situation was. But then, the chaos continued. In the middle of the confrontation, Hilda demanded to know who that woman was. Luna also reacted, confused by Valerie's presence. Valerie, however, remained composed. She looked at Rita for a long moment, then slowly formed a smirk. She turned toward Hilda and introduced herself, mentioning that she had heard about her from Claus. Without hesitation, she declared herself as Rita's wife. Rita stood there in disbelief. Hilda was equally stunned. Luna quickly turned to Mina, urging her to say something. Hilda followed up, insisting that Mina clarify who Rita's wife truly was. However, Valerie remained confident. She casually mentioned that she believed she could become a good mother for Mina, letting out a small laugh. Edith watched the situation unfold with quiet amusement. Valerie then turned her attention fully to Mina, calling out to her gently. Mina paused, thinking carefully. Meanwhile, Rita stood frozen, overwhelmed and silently hoping that nothing would make things worse. After a few moments, Mina finally looked up. She recalled how all of them had been saved by her father and how much they cared about him. Then she accepted the situation in her own way. With multiple wives around, she expressed happiness at having so many mothers, letting out a soft giggle. However, far from the noise and confusion, something else was happening. In another place, a group of mysterious men quietly surrounded a group of children. One of the men counted them, noting 5 people including women and children. Amanda sat among the captives, tense and silent. Another voice commented that they might still be worth some money. Then one of the men showed a picture and asked if anyone had seen the children in it. Amanda looked closely at the image. She recognized them and quietly realized they were the ones who had been with Rita Dixon. Her reaction did not go unnoticed. Another man immediately caught what she said and pressed her for details. With no way out, Amanda revealed everything she knew. The man who seemed to be their leader listened carefully. He confirmed that Rita and the 2 children were currently in Amulus. But then, without hesitation, he gave orders. He called out to Gilliam and instructed him to spread the message. Once the adventurers left to search for the attacked merchant groups, they would move forward with their plan to attack Amulus. After an hour, they were to regroup and wait outside the town. Gilliam acknowledged the command and quickly left the room. Amanda, shaken but desperate, called out to the leader. He turned back, irritated. Trembling, she tried to bargain. She reminded him that she had already told them everything she knew and pleaded for their release, insisting that doing so would benefit the Healer Guild. However, her words had the opposite effect. Without warning, the leader struck her, sending her to the ground. Pain spread through her body as she struggled to understand his reaction. He looked down at her with clear disdain, mocking the idea of helping the Healer Guild. Then he revealed that everyone there held grudges against that very group. Amanda froze in disbelief. But then, the leader turned away. As he walked out, he ordered the others to deal with her. He left the room without another glance. The remaining men slowly surrounded Amanda. Their expressions twisted, filled with cruel intent. Fear took over as her body trembled. Tears streamed down her face as she quietly begged for help. But then, her voice broke into a scream that echoed throughout the building. Outside, the leader listened and let out a low, satisfied chuckle. Everything was falling into place. The town they had already plans to attack now held exactly what they were looking for. Slowly, he removed his hood, revealing his identity. It was Jill. He fixed his gaze forward, thinking only of what was to come. He intended to burn the town and witness Rita's reaction himself. The anticipation lingered, as he waited for that moment to arrive. Outside of Amulus, Jill observed the situation and noted that the adventurers had already gone out on patrol. He then turned to his men and addressed them, declaring that the Black Wolves would now begin their strategy. He explained that after discovering the carriage, the adventurers would likely head toward the abandoned village in the south. The men reacted with excitement, their energy rising. One of them pointed out that the adventurers would surely follow the trails they had set up. Jill confirmed it, reinforcing that this meant the adventurers would not return to Amulus until the following morning. With that window secured, Jill laid out the next step. With only 150 of them, they would attack and burn down the town of Amulus. After that, they would offer their services to neighboring countries. Their goal was clear. They would become mercenaries instead of bandits. And eventually, they would rise to become knights. Jill pushed them forward, urging them to leave behind their current miserable lives. Gilliam raised his voice, rallying the group to show the strength of the Black Wolves. Jill followed with a final command, signaling them to move out. The group responded as one and began their march. Meanwhile, at the Adventurer Guild's healing center, the atmosphere was calm. A man expressed his gratitude to Rita, relieved that he would be able to work again the next day. Rita responded with a simple smile, encouraging him to do his best. He waved them off as they left, and the girl returned the gesture cheerfully. Rita then decided to end the day's work. But then, Malay approached him and acknowledged his efforts. She noticed something missing and wondered why Mina and the others were not with him. Rita explained that they were helping out at the inn and also showing Hilda around the town. Malay let out an awkward laugh, noting that someone clearly wanted them all to get along. Rita felt embarrassed and couldn't respond right away. He scratched his head, quietly agreeing and expressing his apology. However, Malay quickly reassured him that it was not a problem. Rita noted that the search squad would return the next day, and he might become busy. However, he reminded himself to sleep early and prepare. But then, a girl suddenly called out to him, asking if he was Rita Dixon. Rita turned toward her and confirmed it, then asked for her identity. The girl introduced herself as Yuri Temperance, a healer from the town. Rita looked slightly confused and asked if she had business with him. Yuri confirmed that she did. She had heard that he was the one who healed Valerie. She wanted to know if that was true. Rita admitted that it was. Yuri fell silent for a moment. However, she then revealed that she had also tried to heal Valerie, but failed. That led her to ask how he managed to do it. Rita hesitated slightly, but then explained that it involves detection and dispelling. Yuri reacted quietly, finding it impressive. She assumed it was because he was an adventurer, even his healing abilities seemed different. Rita simply looked at her without responding. Yuri met his gaze. But then, she suddenly brought up another matter. She had a request. Rita asked what it was, though he already felt uneasy. He wondered if this was related to the Healer Guild, thinking it might become troublesome. However, Yuri made her request clear. She wanted him to take her in as his disciple. Rita was visibly surprised. Yuri then explained her situation. Recently, no patients had come to her, and she was struggling because she couldn't properly use her healing magic. Rita questioned that, finding it unusual. Yuri added that she had heard the guild was planning to open a clinic. Rita acknowledged that it seemed likely. Yuri then reasoned that if she worked together with him, she might regain her ability to use healing magic. She expressed that she truly liked magic, especially healing, and found joy in restoring others. Rita quietly thought that her behavior felt a bit unusual. However, Yuri continued. She revealed that this was why she wanted to transfer to the Adventurer Guild and become his disciple. She asked him to take care of her, even addressing him as master. Rita reacted in shock at being called that. However, he forced an awkward smile and explained that his hands were already full. He made it clear that he had no plans to take any disciples. Yuri fell silent. She began thinking of another approach. After a moment, she looked at Rita again and offered something extreme, saying she would even give her body if that was what it took to become his disciple. That only made things worse. Rita nearly choked in shock and immediately tried to stop her, rejecting the idea outright. But then he quickly suggested another option. Instead of being a disciple, they could simply work together as employees. Yuri accepted the idea right away and decided she would visit the Adventurer Guild. However, Rita stopped her again, feeling uneasy. He decided to go with her, just to be safe. As they walked, Rita reminded her that since they would only be co-workers, she should stop calling him master. Yuri gave a short acknowledgement. Rita smiled awkwardly, thinking she had finally understood. But then, what he doesn't know yet is that she still hadn't fully let go of the idea. Yuri expressed her intent to work hard until she could be recognized as his disciple. Rita realized she still didn't get it. However, before he could respond further, something suddenly caught his attention. A loud sound echoed, and two bright flares shot into the sky before exploding. Rita looked up in surprise, trying to understand what was happening. Yuri quickly recognized it as an emergency signal. She pointed out that the flares were coming from both the east and the south. Rita grew anxious, unsure of what was going on. Meanwhile, at the market, Hilda casually wondered if it was some kind of festival. But then, the same bright flares rose into the sky. Mina quietly recognized them as signal flares. Luna fell silent as the realization sank in. An old woman nearby shouted that those were emergency signals. A man quickly urged everyone to take shelter indoors. The situation shifted instantly as people began to react. The old woman then offered the girls a place to stay if their home was too far. However, Luna politely refused and decided they would return home instead. Mina, however, grew worried, remembering that Miran was alone at the house. They had no choice but to return quickly. Hilda gave a polite smile and thanked the old woman for her concern. The old woman called out after them, urging them to stay safe. However, as they made their way back toward the inn, the town felt unnaturally quiet. Mina looked around with unease, trying to understand what was happening. Luna, listening carefully, picked up on the sound of multiple blades clashing and suspected bandits. But then Hilda reacted differently. She seemed curious, even slightly excited, wondering if human towns were always attacked like this. Luna immediately rejected that idea. They continued down the empty road. However, Hilda suddenly paused as her ears twitched. She sensed danger ahead and concluded that the path was unsafe. Luna, sounding almost bored, confirmed that a group of bandits was approaching from the left. Mina grew worried, realizing that avoiding that route would prevent them from reaching home. Hilda quickly decided there was no other choice. Luna agreed. But then, before they could adjust their path, a group of armed men appeared right in front of them. One of the men looked at them with a smirk. The group quickly judged them as easy targets. Their expressions shifted, seeing value in them. Another man suggested taking them since they had no way to escape. Luna stepped forward without hesitation and calmly told them to move aside, mentioning that they needed to get home. However, the man only responded with a mocking expression, implying she would not be returning home at all. Hilda remained composed and told them to step aside, hinting that she might spare them if they did. Mina, caught in the tension, called out nervously to both of them. The bandits only laughed at the situation. One of them mocked Hilda's confidence as she approached. Another man moved closer to Luna, sneering as he observed her. He pointed out that despite her stance, she was actually trembling. The man reached out, intending to check her. However, before he could finish, Luna's dagger flashed. She moved without hesitation and cut him off. Blood splattered across the wall as his severed arm dropped to the ground. The man screamed and collapsed in pain. Luna stepped on his head, her expression cold, making it clear she had already warned him to move. At the same time, Hilda quietly cast a spell in her mind. The seeds resting in her palms suddenly came to life. They grew rapidly, transforming into arrows. The armed men froze in shock as the seeds shifted shape, forming a bow and arrows. Hilda did not hesitate. She released 2 arrows with perfect precision. Both struck cleanly through the heads of 2 men. The last remaining bandit panicked. Hilda reminded him that she had also told them to step aside. He turned and tried to flee, shaken by what he had just seen. But then, an arrow pierced through his skull. Almost at the same time, a dagger cut across his throat. The 2 attacks landed seamlessly. Both Luna and Hilda reacted at once, expressing their annoyance in sync. With the threat gone, they turned to Mina and urged her forward. Mina responded immediately. The 3 of them began running toward the inn. As they moved, Mina worried about whether her father was safe. However, Hilda reassured her that he would be fine. They quickly changed direction. Then, someone spotted the inn ahead. But before they could reach it, another situation appeared. A girl ran into view, desperately fleeing while shouting for help, as bandits chased closely behind her. Luna's expression sharpened. At the same time, on Hilda's side, a man was also being pursued. Without wasting a moment, the 2 split their roles. Luna took one direction while Hilda moved to the other. Hilda instructed Mina to head to the inn ahead of them. Mina agreed without hesitation and told them to be careful. Luna gave a confident smile, signaling they would handle it quickly. She charged straight into the group of bandits. Meanwhile, Hilda stayed at a distance, firing arrows one after another. Even as she attacked, she remarked on how troublesome the situation was. Then she noticed yet another presence, suggesting there might be more enemies in the alley. Mina continued running toward the inn. She reached the door and pushed it open. Her voice called out urgently as she stepped inside, hoping everything was fine. But then she froze. Mirin was on the floor, tied up. Around her, armed men sat waiting. Slowly, they turned their attention toward Mina. Mirin sobbed as she saw her. Mina's eyes widened in shock. From among them, a man stepped forward. He recognized the opportunity. Mina turned toward him, fear filling her expression. He only smirked as he let a piece of paper fall from his hand, drifting down to the ground. Luna and Hilda rushed into the inn. However, the moment they stepped inside, they froze. Jill stood there with a smirk, as if he had been waiting. Behind him, 2 men held Mina and Mirin firmly, blades pressed against their throats. Luna and Hilda reacted instantly, but then Jill stopped them. He made it clear that any movement would cost a life. He added that even resisting magic would lead to the same result. Then, without hesitation, he gave an order. A woman stepped forward and silently cast a spell in her mind. The magic took shape at once. A cloud began to form around Luna and Hilda. They gasped as it surrounded them. Their strength faded quickly. Hilda struggled as her consciousness began to slip. Luna followed, her awareness fading just as fast. One by one, they collapsed to the ground. Jill let out a low, satisfied chuckle. Everything was proceeding as planned. He declared that they would take the captives and leave Amulus first. His men responded together, ready to move. Meanwhile, outside the inn, tension spread across the town. Aisha looked around with concern. Sensing that something was wrong, Elliot quickly explained the situation. Bandits had appeared from the east and the south, where the walls were still incomplete, and also near the main gate. Tex reacted with concern. Then Elliot pointed ahead. The bandits had already gathered near the main gate. Gilliam stepped forward and addressed his men. He ordered them to spread out, loot, and burn everything down. However, Elliot tried to intervene, stepping in to stop them. Gilliam turned toward him, questioning their intentions. Tex clarified that they were not adventurers, but vigilantes protecting the town. Gilliam dismissed it without concern. To him, it made no difference. His decision was simple. They would eliminate them all. Aisha, shocked, recognized him. She could not understand why he was doing this. Gilliam met her gaze calmly. He showed no hesitation. Aisha struggled to accept it. Even as a bandit, following Jill to this extent made no sense to her. But then, Gilliam made his stance clear. He did not need a reason. Following Jill was enough for him. Aisha stood stunned. However, Gilliam raised his voice again, turning back to his men. He declared that in such a short time, Jill had gathered bandits from all over using his ability. Together, they would burn the town and prove their strength. They were the Black Wolves. With that, Gilliam gave the final order. His men moved at once, ready to carry out the attack as the confrontation began. The men moved at once, following Gilliam's command. Tex quickly called out to Aisha, Elliot, and the others, telling them to go after the bandits. However, he made it clear that he would handle the situation there by himself. Aisha hesitated, unable to accept it easily. She knew Gilliam had once been a C-rank adventurer. But then Elliot stepped in and urged her to move, trusting Tex to handle it. Aisha nodded and agreed. Before leaving, she called out one last time, looking back at Gilliam with mixed emotions. Then she ran off with the others, chasing after the scattered bandits, leaving only Tex behind. Gilliam watched him and questioned whether he truly believed he could handle everything alone. Tex, however, remained relaxed. He recognized the name Black Wolves and casually pointed out their matching black clothing. He picked up a shovel, gripping it with ease. To him, their unity meant nothing. He dismissed it with a grin, ready to face them head-on. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild, urgency spread quickly. Someone raised the alarm about bandits. Rita looked up, surprised to hear that it was happening inside the town. Millet admitted she didn't fully understand the situation, but it was clear there were many enemies. Signal flares were rising all across the town. Yuri turned to Rita, asking what he would do. Rita made his decision immediately. He was worried about his family and planned to return to the inn. Yuri accepted it without hesitation and decided she would stay behind to treat the injured. However, Millet quickly tried to stop her, pointing out that they wouldn't be able to cover the usual treatment costs like the Healer Guild. Yuri dismissed that concern. She chose to treat it like a quest, following the same approach as Rita. She then turned to him, seeking confirmation. Rita gave an awkward smile, while Millet looked confused at the situation. Rita acknowledged Yuri and entrusted her with the place. Yuri accepted the responsibility without delay. Millet reminded him to stay safe. Rita immediately left the guild. As he moved, he tried to reassure himself. Luna and Hilda were with him, so they should be fine. However, he still needed to hurry. But then, something caught his attention. A man suddenly ran past, screaming for help, with bandits chasing closely behind him. Rita realized the bandits had already reached that area as well. He reacted immediately, calling out for the man to duck. Without hesitation, he cast a spell in his mind, calling upon the spirit of the wind. The man dropped to the ground just in time. But then, Rita continued the spell, shaping it into an invisible blade. A sharp wind attack surged forward. The wind blade sliced through the bandits cleanly. Blood scattered as they cried out and fell. The man on the ground trembled as he tried to get back up. Rita let out a quiet breath, relieved that he had controlled the attack carefully enough to avoid damaging the surrounding buildings. He then checked on the man, making sure he wasn't injured. The man expressed clear relief after being saved. But then he recognized Rita. That caught Rita off guard. He questioned how the man knew him. The man introduced himself as Nexon Crow, a healer from the same town, and confirmed that he was aware of Rita. Nexon mentioned that he had many things he wanted to ask and talk about. However, Rita decided to postpone that. He explained that he needed to return to his inn and advised Nexon to evacuate as well. But then, Nexon quickly moved toward him, clearly distressed at the idea of being left behind. He feared that if the bandits found him again, he wouldn't survive. Rita looked ahead, visibly tired from everything happening at once. After a brief pause, he agreed to take Nexon along, explaining that he was heading to the inn because he was worried about his family. Nexon accepted with relief. Meanwhile, at the main gate, the situation grew tense. Tex stepped forward and calmly gave the bandits their options. He offered them a choice between surrendering, fighting, or running, all leading to the same outcome. Gilliam noticed something and pointed out that there was another opponent as well. He charged forward, declaring his attack. With his broadsword raised, he struck at Tex, questioning whether someone could stand against him using only a shovel. However, Tex did not flinch. He blocked the strike effortlessly using the shovel. The impact stopped cold. Gilliam was visibly shocked. Tex corrected him without hesitation. Then he moved. His counterattack came instantly. The shovel swung forward with speed, striking like lightning. Gilliam clenched his teeth, but he couldn't react in time. In a single motion, Tex swung his shovel and took his head clean off. Blood splashed across the scene. One of the remaining bandits froze in shock at what just happened. But then, two more rushed in from behind, trying to strike. Tex moved once. Both fell instantly. Blood scattered again. Tex remained calm, treating it as nothing unusual. One of the surviving men trembled as realization set in. He recognized him. The A-rank adventurer known as Tex, feared as a demon. The man couldn't understand why someone like him was in such a remote place. Tex showed slight interest at being recognized. However, the man had already given up. He turned and tried to run, convinced he had no chance of winning. But then, Tex corrected that thought in his own way. With a smooth motion, he threw the shovel like a spear. It struck the man's neck and dropped him instantly. Tex then turned to the last remaining bandit. He gave him a moment. The man chose to surrender, dropping his weapon. With that, the confrontation ended. Tex relaxed and casually moved on. Elsewhere, Nexon asked how far they still had to go. Rita pointed ahead, explaining that the bearded dwarves' inn was just around the corner. However, as they moved, a sudden noise made them stop. At that moment, Riggs burst out from the inn. He looked around outside, clearly alarmed. Nexon noticed something felt off. Rita quietly agreed. Riggs turned and spotted Rita. He rushed toward him in a panic. The situation was already worse than expected. Mirren, who had been left to watch the house, was gone. He pointed back at the inn, making it clear that no one was inside. Rita froze for a moment, unable to process it. Then they all rushed inside. The scene was in complete disarray. Nexon could only mutter at how terrible it looked. Rita scanned the room, but then something caught his eye. A piece of paper lay on the floor. He walked over and picked it up. His gaze fixed on it. It was a poster. It showed the faces of Mina and Luna. Clutching the paper tightly, Rita rushed out and called out for Mina and Luna. Nexon immediately followed after him, trying to understand where he was heading. However, Rita made it clear without hesitation. He was going to search for his daughters. Riggs quickly stepped forward, insisting on coming along. But then, Nexon tried to stop them. He warned that running around blindly would only lead them straight into danger. Rita, however, was already set on his path. He made it clear that he had unfinished business with those bandits. But then, a calm voice cut through the rising tension. The voice supported Nexon's point, urging caution. Rita turned in surprise and recognized Valerie. Her sudden presence only added to the urgency. He questioned why she was there, knowing how dangerous the situation had become. Valerie explained what she had seen. Bandits had taken 4 girls on horseback and were heading out of the town. The moment he heard that, Rita's worry deepened. He needed to know where they had gone. The urgency pushed him forward, determined to chase them immediately. However, Nexon stepped in again, urging him to calm down. Going alone would not change anything. But before the situation could escalate further, another voice joined in. Tex supported the same reasoning. Then Claus added that acting alone would only lead to failure. Rita paused, realizing who had just arrived. Tex and Claus stood there, reinforcing the same point. Valerie then shifted the focus. She turned to Nexon and Riggs and made a request. While they went out to rescue the hostages, she asked them to stay behind, bring the injured to the inn, and treat them. She assured them that all costs would be covered by the Amulet's family. Nexon refused the offer of payment. As someone who lived in the town, he could not think about money in a situation like this. Rita reacted with appreciation. But then, Nexon added a condition. If the guild elders discovered that he had been providing treatment at lower costs, they might revoke his healer's license. If that happened, he would rely on Rita and the Adventurer Guild to support him. Rita accepted without hesitation, trusting him completely. Tex then concluded the discussion, making it clear that everything was decided. Claus gave a short nod and moved to depart. Valerie followed, urging them to start moving. However, Rita immediately turned to her and tried to stop her, worried about the danger. But then, Valerie simply gave a small, confident gesture, implying that without her, they would not be able to track their target. Rita paused, confused by what she meant. However, Valerie raised her hand and silently activated a magic item. The effect appeared instantly. An image formed in front of them, showing the bandits riding a wagon while carrying the captured girls. Through that vision, it became clear. Valerie was tracking them using the item. A crow flew high above, following the bandits' path from the sky. She confirmed that she had already received permission from her brother to use it. With everything prepared, she pushed them to move quickly and pursue. Without hesitation, they mounted their horses and set off at once. As they rode, Claus pointed out that if the number of bandits at the hideout turned out to be large, they could adjust their plan when they arrived. Fortunately, the magic item would allow them to confirm that in advance. Tex then added his own judgment. Based on the number of bandits already attacking the town, he doubted there were many left at the hideout. He and Claus would take care of them. That left Rita with a clear role. He would focus on healing anyone who was injured. Rita accepted firmly. However, as they rode forward, concern still lingered in his mind. He could only hope that everyone would remain safe. At the forest, 2 men stood guard at the cave entrance. However, from behind the tall trees, Rita observed the scene carefully. He confirmed that this was the bandits' hideout. Valerie, on the other hand, seemed unusually excited by the situation. Rita found it strange and wondered if she felt no fear. Tex responded calmly, noting that such a reaction was not surprising. Claus added that Luna and Hildegarda were likely already inside the hideout. Tex followed up with his own conclusion. They had probably allowed themselves to be captured on purpose, using it as a way to be taken directly to the hideout. With that understanding, Rita made his decision. They would move in now. He resolved that the bandits would pay for what they had done to the town and to their family. Meanwhile, inside the cave, the 4 girls lay unconscious in a cell. 2 men stood nearby, confident that their capture was enough for profit. They prepared to report to their leader. But then, something changed. Luna appeared behind them without a sound. Her presence went unnoticed until it was too late. In an instant, she struck. Both men were eliminated before they could react. She then turned back toward the cell. Mina slowly regained consciousness, rubbing her eyes. Hilda noticed immediately and acknowledged that she was awake. She gently patted Mirren's head, reassuring her as she murmured weakly. Hilda remained calm, introducing herself softly to ease the tension. Nearby, another captive tried to speak. However, Hilda quickly signaled for silence. She made it clear that noise would only make things worse. They needed to get out quietly. But then, Luna suddenly interrupted, telling her to wait. Hilda continued working on the lock with confidence, believing it would be simple to open. However, a loud metallic sound echoed unexpectedly. Luna pointed out that her method was far noisier. She had already found the key and could open it directly. At the same time, a man rushed into another part of the cave. He hurried to report the situation. Jill reacted with irritation, demanding to know what was happening. The man revealed that intruders had entered. There were 3 men and 1 woman. Jill questioned the situation, dismissing it at first. With their numbers, it should not have been a problem. However, the man struggled to explain. Their forces had already been wiped out before they could respond. But then, a voice cut through the tension. Tex stepped forward, calmly identifying the leader of the Black Wolves. Jill immediately reacted and ordered his men to attack. Before they could act, Claus moved. He cast a binding spell. Roots burst from the ground and wrapped around the bandits instantly, restraining them where they stood. In seconds, the room was controlled. Only Jill remained free, left in visible shock at what had just happened. Rita told the group to slow down, reminding them that Valerie was with them as well. However, he suddenly stopped when he saw someone familiar standing ahead. It was Jill. The sight caught him off guard. Jill reacted sharply, clearly irritated at being called out. But then, Rita stepped forward without hesitation. He confronted him directly, demanding to know if he had really attacked Amulus. Jill confirmed it without regret, showing no concern for what he had done. Rita's expression hardened. He then told Tex and Claus not to interfere. This was something he would handle himself. Jill immediately rushed forward, seeing it as a challenge. But before his blade could land, Rita cast a barrier. The strike was stopped instantly. Jill showed visible surprise at the defense. However, Rita pressed on. He questioned why Jill would go so far as to attack the town. Jill responded with anger, shifting the blame back onto Rita. He claimed that everything had happened because of him. Rita paused, confused by the accusation. Jill pushed further, bringing up the moment he was suddenly removed from the party. Rita responded calmly, pointing out that if that had happened, there must have been a reason behind it. Valerie watched the exchange with concern, calling out to Rita. However, Tex reassured her that he would be fine. Luna, observing closely, added her own assessment. Even without going all out, Rita's ability was clear. Hilda supported that view, recalling that he had even faced a dragon before. Compared to that, bandits were not a real threat. Meanwhile, Mina shifted her focus and informed Tex that the people who had been captured there had already been rescued. The situation inside the cave was secured. Back at the confrontation, Jill continued his attack. Rita maintained his barrier, blocking every strike. Jill's anger only grew. He insisted that there had been a reason. To him, Rita had been the one who betrayed them. Rita questioned the claim, unable to understand what he meant. But then Jill revealed it. It had been discovered that Rita could use healing magic. A noble from the capital had tried to recruit him with better treatment. In Jill's eyes, that meant being used as a stepping stone while leaving the rest behind. That belief had taken root deeply. Jill made it clear that he could not forgive that. To him, that was the reason for everything. He once held a clear dream. Someday, he wanted to rise from being an adventurer to becoming a hero, or even a noble with land of his own. However, despite his short temper, he was still seen as a good young man. And because of that, there were people around him who were willing to help him reach that goal. At one point, the group celebrated completing their first B-class quest. The moment brought them together. Jill was especially fond of his party. Among adventurers, his group stood out. It had an unusually high number of women, and they were also attractive. Because of that, other adventurers often approached them. One night, a drunk man stepped in and began bothering the girls, trying to pull them away from the party. The atmosphere quickly turned uncomfortable. But then Jill reacted instantly. He struck the man without hesitation, making it clear that no one should touch his party members. Back then, his short temper often led to fights. Another drunk man reacted, and the situation escalated further. Jill answered back without backing down. However, among the guild, this behavior caused problems. His reputation began to suffer. Syra showed frustration toward his repeated actions, warning that things could not continue like that. Rita, however, tried to ease the tension. He pointed out that others had started the trouble in the first place. Still, even with his flaws, Jill's actions always came from protecting his party. After completing another quest, the group gathered again. Aisha acknowledged their work, while Rita treated it as routine. Jill, however, showed a hint of guilt toward Rita. Rosalie commented that if Jill went out again, he might cause more trouble. Nikto added that things had always been chaotic whenever Rita wasn't around. At the same time, Rosalie and Nikto showed clear interest in Rita. Gilliam then suggested going out for drinks, offering to treat them. Rita agreed without much thought. Aisha added a light remark, telling Jill not to cause trouble this time. Jill brushed it off as usual. Despite everything, Rita, Gilliam, and even Aisha still trusted him. But then, something unexpected happened. A strange old man approached Jill. The man greeted him casually. Jill immediately recognized him as an informant. He questioned why he had come, since he hadn't asked for any information. However, the old man clarified that he had simply heard something. The topic shifted quickly. It was about Rita. A noble from the capital had apparently taken interest in him and was trying to lure him away. The old man spoke of a noble from the capital. However, Jill immediately dismissed it as a misunderstanding. But then the old man pressed further. He brought up the fact that Rita could use healing magic. That detail changed everything. Jill's eyes widened as the realization settled in. The old man continued, explaining that the noble had taken interest after learning that. To him, it would only bring trouble. Even after picking up someone like Rita, things could turn against him. If Rita accepted that offer, the party would never rise together. Those words began to sink deep. However, Jill struggled to reject them. His temper made it worse. The informant's words echoed in his mind. The idea of being repaid with betrayal, being used as nothing more than a stepping stone, being laughed at for the rest of his life. That thought stayed with him. Jealousy began to grow. Rita was being chosen, offered better treatment by a noble. Jill could not accept it. The frustration built up until it burst. He questioned why it had to be Rita and not him. To him, it felt like he would eventually be discarded. He refused to accept that outcome. The thought alone pushed him further. If that was going to happen, then he would stop it himself. That decision twisted into something darker. To prevent Rita from being taken away, he decided to cut him off completely. From the party. From everything. He convinced himself that he would not be treated as a stepping stone. He would not allow Rita to rise alone. Back in the present, Rita reacted to the truth. The idea that the town was attacked because of something like that made no sense to him. However, Jill dismissed his reaction and pushed back harder. To him, Rita was not as valuable as he seemed to think. Jill then revealed more. After destroying Amulus, he planned to use that power to rise higher. The attack itself had a reason beyond Rita. He had crossed paths with the group while searching for targets connected to Crimson Topaz. In that moment, Rita had simply been an extra benefit. To Jill, the conclusion was clear. He would be the one to rise. Rita would be the one left behind. Rita listened, then accepted it in his own way. If that was how Jill saw it, then so be it. Jill's frustration built up rapidly. He couldn't understand why none of his attacks were landing. Something felt wrong, and the more he tried, the worse it became. He pushed himself, believing he should be stronger, that he should be better. However, when he struck again, his blade failed him. Rita's defense deflected it completely, sending the sword flying out of his grasp. The impact broke his rhythm. Jill staggered, unable to process what was happening. The question lingered in his mind, repeating over and over. But then Rita stepped forward. He made his stance clear. Even if he was seen as worthless, he still had something that mattered. His family, his friends, his daughters. And because of that, he would not let this go. The moment demanded an answer. Without hesitation, Rita moved in and struck. With a powerful uppercut, Rita struck Jill's jaw and sent him crashing to the ground. He stood over him, breathing steady, however a single tear formed in his eye. His expression held mixed emotions that he could not fully hide. Jill struggled on the ground, gasping as he tried to push himself up. But then, before he could rise, vines burst out and wrapped tightly around his body. They pinned him in place, stopping any movement. The sudden restraint forced frustration out of him. Hilda turned toward Rita, checking if that was enough. Rita gave a short answer and apologized quietly. At that moment, Mina ran toward him with relief. Rita embraced her, clearly relieved that she was safe. He then turned to Mirin and gently patted her head, acknowledging her effort as well. However, Jill let out a strained laugh from where he was bound. He convinced himself that it was not over yet. Clenching his fists, he muttered under his breath. Then he raised his voice again, declaring that his men would soon return after attacking the town. A dark confidence returned to him as he insisted that everyone there would be finished. But then, Tech stepped in. He brought up the order Jill had given, pointing out the plan to burn the town. At that moment, a small bottle slipped and rolled across the ground. It stopped near Jill. He stared at it, his teeth clenched. Luna made a remark about it, treating it as nothing more than a cheap tool. Tex continued calmly. He asked whether Jill had actually looked back at the town while returning. The question caught him off guard. Tex then pointed out something important. There was only smoke. No signs of real destruction. Jill froze. The thought unsettled him. Tex added that the town was not defenseless. There was a vigilante group protecting it. He dismissed the idea that 150 men would be enough. With that number alone, the town would not fall. Jill's anger surged again. He could not accept it. He insisted that it was impossible, especially without the adventurers present. His frustration turned into shouting as he tried to deny it. He then called out to his men, demanding they stand and fight. However, a step echoed forward. It was already too late. His men were lying on the ground, completely defeated. The situation had already been decided. Rita looked at him and questioned why he had never talked things through. If he had, none of this would have happened. But Jill rejected that idea instantly. He believed no one would ever refuse a noble's offer. In his mind, Rita would have accepted it as well. Rita tried to respond, but Jill cut him off. He pointed out Valerie, using her presence as proof. To him it was clear. Rita had already aligned himself with nobles. Jill's voice carried desperation as he blamed everything on that belief. He insisted that it was the reason he became a bandit, and the reason he was now in this state. In the end, he demanded one thing: an apology, along with his release. Rita fell silent. The weight of everything settled in. After a moment, he finally lowered his voice and admitted it. He apologized. Jill reacted to that with a faint smirk. Rita admitted that he no longer understood what Jill was thinking. However, that only made things worse. Jill's expression twisted with anger as his frustration peaked. But then, before anything could escalate further, Hilda stepped in without hesitation. She acted quickly and silenced him. With a single strike, she knocked him out completely. She remained firm, deciding it was better for him to stay that way. To her, he had simply become too loud and troublesome. Rita scratched his head and thanked her. Hilda responded with a small, casual laugh. Meanwhile, Valerie shifted her attention to Luna, noticing something was off. Luna reacted with a slight flush, admitting that the situation reminded her of something unpleasant. Mina responded with a light laugh, easing the mood slightly. Tex then stepped in, bringing the focus back to the situation. He confirmed whether everyone who had been captured was accounted for. However, one of the hostages hesitated before answering. There was still one more person. A woman had been taken elsewhere, and her screams had been particularly loud. She was identified as someone from the Healer Guild. Tex reacted immediately, realizing who it could be. The name Amanda came to mind. With that, he confirmed that no one else appeared injured and decided it was time to move. He called for Claus and Rita to follow. Before leaving, Rita instructed Mina and Luna to find something to wear. Mina acknowledged it right away. Claus also gave a firm reminder to Hilda to stay alert. Hilda responded with mild annoyance, brushing it off. Valerie then insisted on joining them. The group moved out together, checking each door one by one as they searched deeper into the hideout. As they went, Rita noticed something strange. Amanda had not reacted at all during the earlier commotion. Tex shared the same concern. Something felt wrong. Claus then pointed ahead, identifying the last remaining place to check. Without delay, they entered. Inside, the silence felt heavy. Tex called out, trying to confirm her presence. But then, something caught their attention. A pair of feet lay motionless on the ground. Claws froze at the sight, shock clearly visible. Valerie whispered under her breath, unable to hide the horror of what she saw. The scene was brutal. Rita's eyes widened as he rushed forward. Amanda lay there, unconscious, her body covered in wounds. He moved immediately, ready to use healing magic. However, Claws stopped him. The situation was beyond simple healing. Valerie quietly noted that it was already a miracle she was still alive. Tex then reached for his weapon. Rita reacted at once, questioning his intent. Tex remained steady. To him, the situation had already crossed a line. Rita immediately stopped Tex and moved closer to Amanda. However, instead of hesitating, he chose another approach. If regular healing would not work, then he would push further. He placed his hands near her chest. A glow began to form, and a magic circle appeared above them. In his mind, he cast a stronger spell. The light intensified at once. He focused on directing the flow of healing magic from the heart, spreading it throughout her entire body in a single surge. The brightness grew stronger, filling the space around them. Tex reacted with shock at what he was witnessing. Valerie, however, remembered something Mina had once mentioned. Rita had been studying grimoires every night before sleeping. That memory gave context to what was happening now. Even so, it still felt unusual. Memorizing a spell was one thing, but actually using it was another. Claus considered it briefly and concluded it might simply be talent. But then, the result became clear. The wounds began to close. The damaged skin slowly returned to normal. Tex could only acknowledge it. Rita had done it. He had saved her. Soon after, Amanda's body reacted. Her chest rose as she gasped for air. Rita quickly checked her condition and confirmed that her breathing had stabilized. He called out to her, trying to bring her back fully. Her eyes slowly opened. Valerie felt relief seeing her regain consciousness. Rita reassured her and prepared to continue healing the remaining wounds. However, Amanda's reaction was not what they expected. She stared at her trembling hand, trying to process her state. Then suddenly, her expression shifted. Anger surged through her. She struck Rita's hand away, rejecting what had just been done. Rita froze, caught off guard. Amanda's voice shook as she questioned why she had been saved. Tears formed as her thoughts poured out. To her, death would have been easier. Even if her wounds were healed, the cost of such treatment would be impossible to bear. That future would only lead to something worse. Rita tried to calm her, but she could not accept it. The situation to her felt like another kind of suffering. She questioned again why he had chosen to heal her. But then, Valerie stepped in. She moved behind Amanda and gently held her, stopping her from spiraling further. Her voice softened as she guided her to focus on something else. She encouraged her to look at the person who had saved her. Amanda slowly lifted her gaze. Tears blurred her vision at first. But then recognition settled in. Her expression softened, shifting away from anger. Rita stood there, calm and steady. He reassured her without hesitation. He had come to save her, acting on the request of the Adventurer Guild. Rita removed his robe without hesitation. He stepped closer and gently covered Amanda's exposed body, making sure she was no longer vulnerable. However, his actions were calm and steady, easing the tension around her. He made it clear that she no longer had to fear anything, and that there was no need for her to fall into something like slavery. Amanda's emotions broke all at once. She closed her eyes as tears streamed down her face. Her body trembled as her sobs grew louder. She wrapped her arms around herself, unable to hold it in any longer. But then she clutched onto Rita's robe tightly, as if anchoring herself to that moment. Rita responded by pulling her into a gentle embrace. Valerie stood beside them, softly patting Amanda's head, allowing her to release everything she had been holding back. Meanwhile, Claus and Tex turned toward the direction of approaching footsteps. They noticed others entering and signaled calmly, indicating that the situation was under control. Hilda let out a quiet breath of relief. Luna explained that they had only come to check on the loud scream. Mina added that everything seemed to be fine now. Mirin quietly expressed her own relief in her own way. After that, things moved quickly. Tex went to contact the adventurers. Claus returned to Amulus. Jill was taken into custody along with the remaining bandits. The rescued captives were escorted back to the town. At last, the incident came to an end. However, time passed, and the scene shifted. A desperate voice echoed through a cold prison in the capital. Jill was alone, shouting and demanding to be released. He insisted that he had been framed, that he had done nothing wrong. Footsteps echoed through the stone corridor. A guard approached and unlocked the cell. Without emotion, he signaled for Jill to come out, calling him forward. Jill's body trembled as fear began to take hold. His voice shook as he struggled to accept what was happening. He still believed he could rise again, that this was not the end. But then, as the guards dragged him along, his thoughts twisted. He tried to shift the blame, clinging to the idea that Rita would come for him. He imagined a scenario where everything would be reversed, where responsibility would fall elsewhere. However, no one responded. The guards remained silent as they stopped in front of a large door. It slowly creaked open. What lay beyond it was enough to break him. His former comrades hung lifelessly, their bodies still, while crows gathered nearby, waiting. Jill's fear overwhelmed him. Panic took control as he realized what awaited him. He refused to accept that this would be the last thing he would see. Desperation took over. Tears streamed down his face as he cried out, hoping for someone to save him. 1 week after the attack on Amulus, the town had returned to its usual way of life, and Rita's daily routine had done the same. Hilda loudly called out to Luna, insisting that it was her turn to sleep on Rita's right side that night. Luna only gave a playful smile, pretending not to know what Hilda was talking about and acting as though it was not a problem. Caught in the middle of their usual argument, Rita quietly closed his eyes, already accepting that this had become part of his everyday life. Luna continued teasing Hilda, reminding everyone that Hilda always ended up falling off the bed and sleeping alone on the floor anyway. Even so, Hilda firmly believed it was her responsibility as Rita's wife to stay beside him until he fell asleep. Watching the two argue once again, Mina let out a tired sigh and calmly decided that she would simply sleep next to her dad that night instead. The moment those words left her, Luna and Hilda immediately turned toward her and rejected the idea together. Luna refused without hesitation, while Hilda added her own firm objection. Together, they declared that this was a battle between wives. With a weary expression, Rita quietly scratched his head as he listened to their endless bickering. Having already given up on trying to stop them, he accepted that since all of them were living together in a single room, arguments over sleeping spots were unavoidable. Trying to change the subject, he suggested that instead of wearing his shirts every night, they should buy their own nightwear. Mina quickly refused the idea. She pouted, explaining that wearing his shirt made her feel calm and helped her sleep comfortably. Luna immediately agreed, saying that being wrapped in his scent from head to toe made her happy. Hilda smiled as well, admitting that it made her chest feel warm and filled her with happiness. Hearing all of that, Rita's face turned bright red, leaving him completely speechless. Hilda eventually declared that she would leave the sides of the bed to everyone else because she would simply sleep on top of Rita instead. Mina looked at her in confusion, unable to understand what she meant. The light filling the room disappeared as Hilda reached over and switched it off, leaving everything in darkness. She happily pulled back the blanket before climbing directly onto Rita. Then she looked toward Luna with a smug smile. Luna casually reminded her not to fall over again. Meanwhile, Rita stared in surprise, wondering if she truly intended to sleep like that. Hilda simply confirmed it without hesitation. Rita admitted that it would be incredibly difficult for him to sleep in that position. Not long afterward, silence settled over the room as everyone gradually drifted to sleep. Luna rested peacefully beside Rita with a gentle smile, while Hilda comfortably slept on top of him. As Rita lay there, his thoughts drifted toward Luna, Hilda, and Valorizuma. He truly believed that their feelings for him were genuine. A mixture of emotions crossed his face as he quietly reflected on whether he could finally make up his mind and give them an answer. His thoughts soon came to a halt before a deep sigh escaped him. He realized that he still had not moved on from Rinser. The way she had ended their relationship had hurt him deeply. His memories slowly returned to the day they first met inside a carriage while traveling to the capital. Back then, both of them had left the countryside with the same hope of making a living in the city. They quickly became close, and before long, they had started dating. As time passed, however, Rinser gradually changed. She became increasingly obsessed with money, and watching that change saddened him. Even so, he continued believing that one day she would become the same person she had been when they first met. Afterward, the scene shifted to the Adventurers Guild, where Yuri warmly welcomed Rita with a cheerful morning greeting. Rita smiled as he returned Yuri's morning greeting, noticing that she had arrived early once again. Yuri let out a cheerful laugh, explaining that she had wanted to use her healing magic as soon as possible. Before long, the guildmaster noticed Rita's arrival, while Tita also called out to him. Rita walked over to the two of them and politely asked if they had some business with him. Tita casually replied that there was nothing in particular, only that someone wished to greet him. Curious about who it could be, Rita looked over as Amanda stepped forward and called his name. Seeing her standing there, he immediately asked if she was already able to move around. Amanda confirmed that she was, explaining that it was thanks to Rita's help, as well as the medicine prepared by the elves, that she had recovered enough to move again. Nexon added that the medicine Edith had made was truly remarkable. Despite Amanda having lost a great amount of blood and becoming extremely weak, she had recovered this much in only 1 week. Hearing that, Rita quietly expressed his amazement. Amanda hesitated for a moment before admitting that there was something she wanted to say. Without any delay, she bowed deeply before everyone, sincerely apologizing for the trouble she had caused, especially to Rita Dixon. Rita immediately asked her not to apologize, believing that she had simply done what she needed to do. The guildmaster also told her to lift her head, making it clear that the Adventurers Guild had no complaints against her. Amanda quietly thanked them for their understanding. At that moment, Fearon suddenly spoke up, mentioning that Nexon also had something he wanted to say to Amanda. Before she could continue, Nexon quickly stopped her, insisting that he would speak for himself. Yuri then shyly admitted that she also had something she wanted to say. Amanda fell silent for a brief moment before realizing that they were talking about the clinic currently being built in the town. She then revealed that she also had a favor to ask regarding it. She hoped that the two of them would work together with Rita at the new clinic while continuing to serve as healers in the Healer Guild. She made it clear that there was no need for either of them to quit being healers. In fact, she wanted them to remain members of the guild. Nexon stared at her in surprise, unable to hide his reaction. Amanda explained that as long as they continued paying their membership fees, she would personally handle any issues involving the higher-ranking members of the guild. As for making treatment costs more affordable, she promised that she would find a way to make it happen. She admitted that everything that had happened during the recent incident had completely changed the way she thought. Until then, she had believed that it was enough for healers to exist only for the nobility. Now she understood that common people also needed healers. The painful memories of what she had experienced surfaced once more. Her hands trembled slightly as she confessed that she had only realized that truth after going through such suffering herself. Looking back on it, she felt it had been incredibly foolish. The guildmaster and Tita remained silent, listening carefully as the weight of her words settled over the room. Amanda continued, explaining that she intended to bring change to the Healer Guild from within and reform it little by little. Turning her attention back to Rita, she admitted that she believed this was the best way she could repay everything he had done for her. She looked directly at him, quietly waiting for his answer. Fearon watched in surprise, while Nexon gave her a puzzled glance. Slightly caught off guard, Rita quickly accepted her proposal and reached out to shake her hand. A small smile gently appeared on Amanda's face. Afterward, she turned toward Tita and the guildmaster, calling their attention. Amanda entrusted Yuri Temperance and Nexon Crow to Rita's care. Tita assured her that she could leave them in their hands. He also admitted that reforming the Healer Guild would take a great deal of effort, but if anything happened along the way, she could rely on them. They would help her to the best of their abilities. Amanda sincerely thanked them. She bowed once more before announcing that it was time for her to leave, and prepared to excuse herself. Just then, Rita called out to Amanda. He smiled warmly and encouraged her to do her best. Amanda paused for a brief moment before returning his smile with a bright expression. She nodded in agreement before departing. Meanwhile, deep within a forest, a hidden hideout stood in silence until a powerful explosion shattered the calm. The building was blown apart, and thick smoke rose from the destroyed ruins. Amid the wreckage, the sound of something heavy collapsing echoed through the air. A young girl stood calmly with her sword pointed toward a man lying defeated on the ground. The man angrily cursed, unable to believe that she had attacked him despite knowing he was one of the executives of the Crimson Topaz. He warned that she would regret her actions, insisting that the organization would continue hunting her until her final breath. The girl answered without emotion, stating that there was no organization anymore. A nervous expression spread across the man's face as disbelief overtook him. The girl quietly wondered if this had been the 11th hideout. Every other base had already been destroyed. Her sword pierced into the ground before she pulled it back out, calmly stating that every executive had already been killed. The man froze in shock. The girl continued, recalling how each of them had spoken about angels, the resurrection of the Demon King, and an artificial hero. None of it had made any sense to her, and she found every one of them equally boring. As she finished speaking, she tossed the sword onto the ground in front of the man. Fixing him with a cold stare, she questioned what kind of person he was. Without hesitation, the man grabbed the sword and charged at her while cursing. Believing that if only he possessed the power of the evil god, someone like her would stand no chance, he threw himself forward. The girl simply muttered that he was just another boring person. In the next instant, blood splattered across the area. Later, the girl quietly hummed to herself while sitting on a chopped tree trunk. Behind her, the hideout continued to smolder as smoke drifted into the air. Beside her lay a large pile of documents. As she read through one of the papers, she realized that it contained the list of assassins raised by the organization. Continuing through the records, she found detailed lists of the missions they had carried out, along with evaluation sheets for each of them. Stopping at one particular page, she noticed that every assassin was currently away on missions. It seemed they often spent their time outside the hideouts. A small chuckle escaped her as she remarked that it would be nice if at least one of them turned out to be strong. She then stood up, filled with determination, and proudly declared to herself that she, Naomi Daniels, a hero, would defeat the bad guys. Her loud laughter echoed through the silent forest. At the Adventurers Guild, Mina welcomed Rita back after his work. Rita turned toward them with a smile and returned Mina's hug. His attention then shifted to the other girls, wondering if they had also come to pick him up. Malay thanked both Rita and Yuri for everything they had done. Yuri quietly returned the appreciation to Malay and Master, while admitting to herself that it had felt good to use heal again that day. Rita reflected on how, after Amanda had returned, Yuri had started working alongside him at the Adventurers Guild clinic. In addition, Yuri had wanted to watch his heal spell from up close. At the same time, Nexon was continuing to treat patients at his own clinic until the new one was completed. As the thought crossed his mind, Rita remembered the girl who had been with Amanda. Firen had not seemed to belong to the Healer Guild, yet she and Amanda had appeared very close. He wondered if she might be an acquaintance of Nexon. Luna suddenly called for him. Rita turned to her and asked what was wrong. Luna gave him a suspicious look, sensing that he had just been thinking about another woman. Rita immediately reacted in surprise, unable to believe what Luna was suggesting. Hilda watched the exchange with an amused smirk. At that same moment, some distance away, Naomi suddenly stopped in her tracks. She quietly repeated Luna's name to herself. Without warning, loud laughter echoed through the busy streets, causing Rita and the others to stop where they were. Naomi declared that she had finally found her. Pointing directly at Luna, she identified her as the assassin Luna Pears and claimed that she was the last one remaining. Mina nervously called out to her older sister. Luna answered with a smile before denying the accusation, insisting that Naomi had mistaken her for someone else. Even so, Luna's thoughts immediately turned to the name Pears. The fact that Naomi had mentioned it made her wonder if she was connected to the organization. Rita gently patted Luna on the head and tried to explain that he did not know who Naomi was talking about, because the girl beside him was Luna Dixon, his daughter. Before Rita could finish speaking, Luna suddenly cut him off by firmly correcting him to wife as she swiftly threw her dagger toward Naomi. Rita gasped in shock, unable to believe Luna had acted so suddenly. Naomi effortlessly caught the flying dagger with a single finger, allowing the blade to fall harmlessly to the ground with a sharp clatter. Rita stared in disbelief, shocked that she had stopped the attack with only one finger. A faint smirk appeared on Naomi's face, and without hesitation, she rushed straight toward them. Hilda immediately warned Luna to be careful because Naomi was strong. Luna answered that she already knew. Rita let out a heavy sigh. Naomi swung her sword through the air and brought it crashing down toward them, but at the last moment, Rita blocked the attack with a magic spell. Amusement filled Naomi's eyes as she quietly reacted. Tightening her grip on her sword, she pushed forward with overwhelming force. Rita's magic barrier shattered into countless pieces, and Naomi's strike sent him flying through the air before he crashed into a nearby wall. Mina immediately cried out in worry for her father. Luna's anger rose as she reacted to the attack. Hilda also lost her composure, believing that crossing the line by harming their family was unacceptable. Without hesitation, Luna and Hilda charged at Naomi together. Luna rushed in with a swift strike, but Naomi skillfully avoided it. Before Naomi could fully recover from the movement, Hilda followed with another attack, yet Naomi evaded that one just as easily. As the two continued attacking in perfect coordination, Naomi burst into laughter, finding them remarkable. Naomi glanced over her shoulder and noticed Rita already healing his own injuries. Surprise spread across her face as she realized he had remained conscious and was even able to heal himself. To her, that meant he could continue fighting without end, and the thought filled her with envy. Rita was confused by her reaction, wondering if this woman actually enjoyed fighting. Getting back on his feet, Rita realized they needed to seriously stop her. Quietly casting a spell, he called upon the spirit of the wind to become a shield and blow the enemy away. A magic circle suddenly appeared beneath Luna. Naomi noticed it immediately and looked at it with excitement. Rita activated Wind Shield. With a confident smirk, Naomi thrust her sword directly into the magic circle beneath her feet. A powerful shockwave burst outward, instantly erasing the magic circle. Black smoke then began swirling around her sword. Naomi casually observed the weapon, noting that even though it had just been repaired, it had already become worn out again. Hilda clicked her tongue in frustration, unable to believe Naomi had even resisted Rita's magic. Luna questioned who Naomi really was, believing she had to be a pawn of Crimson Topaz. Naomi repeated the name before calmly revealing that Crimson Topaz no longer existed because she had personally wiped them all out. Both Mina and Rita froze in shock at the unexpected revelation. Naomi let out a small laugh before explaining that, because of that, she was now simply wandering around and hunting down the assassins that organization had once trained. Luna quietly bit her lip as uneasiness settled over her. Naomi dismissed the other assassins as nothing more than weak, mindless killers. She then pointed directly at Luna and began calling her Lunapid, before correcting herself to Luna Dixon and questioning what she was supposed to be. Before anyone could respond, a frying pan suddenly flew through the air and struck Naomi on the head. A sharp voice immediately followed, scolding her for saying things like that. Naomi cried out in pain as she dropped to one knee, quietly muttering to herself. She then demanded to know who had thrown the pan at her. The crowd turned toward Tex, who calmly walked forward while holding another frying pan in his hand. Naomi immediately recognized him. After nearly calling him something else, she corrected herself and identified him as the demon, Tex. Tex simply looked back at her with an annoyed expression. Naomi casually greeted him, remarking that it had been a long time. Rita could only stare in complete shock. At that moment, Aisha arrived and explained that they had come to investigate the disturbance. She asked Rita what was happening. Rita admitted that he wanted to know the same thing himself. Tex identified Naomi to everyone, but before he could continue, Naomi suddenly hit him in return, reminding him that it had hurt. Tex continued anyway, explaining that there were too many people gathered around them. Looking across the crowd, he suggested moving somewhere else. Someone nearby reacted in surprise after realizing she was a hero. Naomi proudly confirmed her identity as Naomi Daniels, the hero of flames. Tex explained that, before he had come to Amulus, he and Naomi had taken part in the same operation at the Capital's Guild. He admitted that he would not go into the full details, but revealed that Naomi had defeated the Demon Lord and earned the title of hero. Rita was left stunned by the mention of the Demon Lord. Tex clarified that he and the other adventurers had only supported the battle from the rear. Naomi proudly declared that the King of Demons was the enemy of humanity. The next moment she suddenly cried out in pain. Rita gently examined the spot on her head and noticed a bump. He immediately cast heal on her. After finishing the spell, Rita smiled, satisfied that it should take care of the injury. Naomi stood there speechless, surprised by what he had done. Scratching the back of his head awkwardly, Rita wondered how he should address her, whether as Naomi-chan, Fumi-san, or even Naomi-sama. Naomi simply told him that calling her Naomi was enough. Rita hesitated for a moment before calling her by her name. He then smiled and explained that Luna and Mina were both part of his family, and that alone should be enough. Hilda immediately added that she was part of the family as well. Naomi looked away with a guilty expression before admitting that it was enough. She then explained that she had never intended to kill or capture Luna. She had only recognized Luna from the organization's records, but after meeting her in person, she had realized that Luna was not a bad person. Hilda questioned why Naomi had attacked her in the first place. Naomi honestly admitted that everyone had looked strong, and she simply thought it would be fun to fight them. Rita quietly muttered to himself that he had already figured as much. Without any hesitation, Naomi bowed deeply before everyone and apologized. Tex could only sigh at the situation. Rita then clasped his hands together and suggested that everyone shake hands and make up. He turned to Luna and asked if that would be alright. Luna let out a sigh and admitted that she did not really like the idea, but since Rita was asking and he had suffered the most damage, she would agree. With awkward expressions, Luna and Naomi reached out and shook hands. Aisha sighed in relief, feeling that everything had finally been settled. Rita gently patted their heads, satisfied that this was enough. Naomi's expression gradually softened. Mina watched the scene in surprise before a gentle smile appeared on her face. Rita noticed Naomi's expression and wondered if her head was still hurting. Naomi quietly murmured a single respectful honorific. Rita looked at her in confusion. Staring directly at him, Naomi asked if he was really Luna's father. Luna reacted in complete surprise at the unexpected question. Without any warning, Naomi loudly called out the names of Rita, Luna, Mina, and Hildegarda before boldly declaring that she would also become Rita's daughter. Rita could only shout in complete shock. As night fell, a loud voice echoed through the area in confusion. Luna was stunned, unable to understand what Naomi meant about becoming his daughter. Naomi paid no attention to her. Even as Luna tried to call out to her, Naomi continued forward and asked if there was still a room available. Riggs answered that there were still rooms left. Luna quickly urged them to let Naomi stay, but her frustration only grew as Naomi continued acting as if nothing unusual had happened. Naomi then turned to everyone and wondered if they disliked the idea of becoming a family with her. Hilda calmly answered that as his wife, she would not mind having more daughters. Luna let out a sigh and quietly admitted that she also would not mind if Naomi simply became a daughter instead. Even so, Luna suddenly raised her voice and questioned whether Naomi was truly certain about what she was saying. She wondered if Naomi had already realized what that would mean. Naomi looked at her with confusion and asked what she meant. Luna explained that if Naomi became Papa's daughter, then she would become Naomi's mother. Naomi's eyes widened, and her mouth fell open in shock. She quietly struggled to accept the idea, especially since Luna was younger than her. Luna immediately confirmed that it was true and asked if Naomi would now have to call her mom. She then looked at Naomi with a smug expression. Naomi cheerfully replied that since they would all be family, those kinds of titles did not really matter. Whether Luna became her mother or her little sister, she could simply call her Luna. Luna calmly accepted that answer, but only for a brief moment. She suddenly grabbed Naomi in disbelief after hearing the words, "little sister." She loudly questioned why Naomi called her that instead of big sister and demanded to know her age. Naomi proudly answered that she was 17 years old. Luna gasped in complete surprise. Nearby, Aisha turned to Rita and wondered what he would do now. Rita scratched his head and admitted that she should not ask him because he did not even know what he was supposed to do. Mina commented that his dad power was truly amazing. Rita looked confused and asked Mina what that even meant. Aisha answered that it was probably his patience. She remarked that he had changed a great deal compared to the time he had been in the capital. She then jokingly declared that she would also become his daughter and playfully entrusted herself to Papa. Rita immediately reacted by calling it a heavy warrior joke. The three of them repeated together that it was a heavy warrior joke. Tex gently tapped Rita on the back and put the jokes aside before asking whether he truly intended to treat Naomi as part of his family. Meanwhile, Aisha happily praised Mina and Miran, saying they had become quite good at this, just as she had taught them. Mina and Miran answered together with cheerful agreement. Rita then asked Tex with some concern. He admitted that he personally did not mind, but wondered whether someone like him was really good enough. Tex simply replied that he trusted him because he was Rita and Aichan. Hearing those words, Rita quietly fell silent for a moment. Tex explained that Naomi had been born with tremendous power. Her parents became afraid of that power and abandoned her when she was still a child. Rita quietly murmured that he understood. Tex continued by explaining that the Adventurers Guild had taken care of her. Even so, he admitted with some embarrassment that although he had been able to become her master and her friend, he had never been able to become her family. Tex then told Rita that because of that, Naomi did not have to remain only Naomi Dixon. He would be happy if Rita became her family and gave her a place she could always return to. Without any hesitation, Rita agreed and promised that he would do everything he could. Mina let out a relieved smile and said that she was glad. She then happily declared that this was exactly why she loved him as her dad. After that, she warmly welcomed Naomi once again as Naomi Wanichan. Naomi gladly accepted. A moment later, Naomi suddenly became quiet. Mina looked at her with confusion as Naomi continued staring at her. When Mina asked what was wrong, Naomi admitted that she had the strange feeling that they had met before. However, she quickly added that she did not know anyone like Mina, so she assumed she was only imagining it. Mina let out a small chuckle and commented that it was strange. Just then, the door suddenly swung open, interrupting everyone. A figure stepped inside. The butler politely apologized for disturbing them so late at night. Tita entered the room together with his wife and Valerie. Tita explained that he had heard Naomi-sama was there. Rita reacted with surprise upon seeing Tita. Naomi quietly wondered who they were. Luna introduced them as the lord of the town, his wife, and his sister. Naomi immediately reached out her hand in greeting. She introduced herself as Naomi, the hero of the flames. Tita accepted her handshake and introduced himself as Tita Amulus Rodenwald. Naomi smiled brightly and cheerfully announced that since she had now become Rita's daughter, she would be relying on him from now on while living in this town. Valerie suddenly responded with interest before introducing herself as Valerie Rodenwald. She also revealed that she planned to become Rita-sama's wife and hoped they would get along as family. Shock and confusion immediately appeared across Naomi's face. She quickly realized what that meant and wondered if there were now 3 mothers. Mina calmly confirmed that it was exactly like that. Naomi immediately turned toward Rita and excitedly admired how amazing it was that the family just kept getting bigger. Rita simply scratched the back of his head and awkwardly agreed. Meanwhile, Tita quietly leaned toward Tex and asked what exactly was happening. Tex respectfully answered before explaining the entire situation to him. Hilda commented that Valerie had become much more straightforward than before and remarked that it was not bad. Valerie simply responded before letting out a small chuckle. Naomi then happily addressed everyone, announcing that she would be counting on all of them from now on. Riggs let out a sigh and quietly remarked that things would probably become much noisier from now on. Riggs and Mirren then shared a hearty laugh together. A few days later, Naomi decided that until her exhausted power fully returned, she would spend her time taking quests from the Adventurers Guild. Mina continued helping at the inn alongside Mirren while also assisting Rita whenever needed. As usual, Hilda and Luna spent each morning defeating the monsters surrounding the town. In the afternoon, everyone gathered to learn cooking as part of their bride training. Edith-san also came to teach them. According to Mina, there were moments when they made rather frightening expressions. She mentioned that they kept talking about things such as aphrodisiacs and vitality. Hearing that, Rita quietly thought it would be better not to think too deeply about it. Later that evening, Tex invited him out for a drink. It had been quite some time since they had gone drinking together. Tex enthusiastically suggested having another round. Rita replied that instead of just one more, he could even drink 2 or 3 more that night. Tex laughed, pleased with the answer. As they continued walking, Rita quietly remarked that Amulus had a surprisingly large entertainment district. Tex laughed again and explained that although it was a remote place, there were many adventurers living there, so the town had naturally grown into what it was. Suddenly, a loud shout broke the silence of the night. Another angry voice followed, complaining that a woman was being too noisy. Tex immediately became alert and called out to Rita. Rita answered without hesitation. The two of them immediately rushed toward the source of the commotion. One man angrily declared that this was what happened when someone refused to listen. Another warned that if the other girl did not want to end up the same way, she should stay quiet. As one of the men grabbed a girl's arm, she fiercely resisted and refused to go along with men like them. Another girl cried out in panic, desperately calling for Lily and urging her to hold on. Not far from the disturbance, Tex quietly muttered that he disliked those men. Rita agreed. Without hesitation, Rita activated a binding spell in his mind to restrain them. After that, he cast a healing spell. The injured girl's wounds quickly disappeared. The girl tearfully thanked him over and over. Another girl immediately embraced Lily, overwhelmed with relief that she was safe. Tex smiled and assured them that everything was fine now. He explained that the vigilante group would arrive soon to take the captured men away. The woman gratefully accepted his reassurance. Rita's expression then became serious. As he tied up the restrained men with rope, he quietly remarked that anyone who pointed a sword at a girl's face was truly a terrible person. Tex guessed that they were probably inexperienced adventurers who had only recently arrived in town, or perhaps thugs hired to collect debts. Rita quietly acknowledged the explanation. After noticing people approaching, Rita observed that the vigilante group had arrived and suggested that they move on. Just then, the girls hurriedly stopped them, asking to at least let them express their gratitude. Rita politely declined, explaining that they had only happened to pass by while they were drunk. Tex questioned whether he was really sure, saying it would be a waste to leave like that. Rita calmly insisted that it was fine. At that moment, another voice interrupted them, saying that as a merchant, she could never allow someone to leave without properly receiving thanks after helping them. Tex turned toward the speaker and wondered if those girls belonged to her establishment. The woman confirmed that they did. Rita quietly asked Tex whether he knew the beautiful young woman standing before them. The woman smiled and introduced herself as Angelina. The moment Rita heard her introduction, his cheeks turned slightly red. Angelina then added that she had already heard many rumors about Rita-sama. Inside the room, Rita sat quietly on the bed, lost in his own thoughts. Angelina asked if brandy tea would be alright for him, and he quickly replied that it would be fine. For some reason, he had ended up inside Angelina's house after coming from the only brothel in Amulus. Uneasiness filled his mind as he wondered how everything had turned out this way. His thoughts drifted back to the last thing he clearly remembered. Tex, who had been with him, had disappeared into a large room filled with girls as a form of thanks. Angelina had already retired and was now teaching those girls. As he looked around the room, his face gradually turned red. He had no idea where to direct his gaze. More accurately, he found himself unable to look away from her. She gently placed the cup of tea on the table before letting out a soft laugh, encouraging him not to be so nervous. Feeling embarrassed, he apologized, admitting that he had never been inside a girl's room like this before. Angelina moved closer and sat beside him, making him even more tense. She quietly wondered what he meant by that. Startled, he tightly shut his eyes. A small smile appeared on her face as she rested a hand on his leg, causing his face to grow even redder. After teasing him for a moment, she apologized with a light giggle. In one quick motion, he finished the tea in a single gulp before instinctively grabbing her. He hurriedly pleaded with her not to be angry, trying to explain that it was not because he found her unattractive. His words failed to come together before she calmly finished the thought for him, realizing that he simply could not bring himself to embrace her. Surprised, he stared at her in confusion. She apologized once again for teasing him and explained that he had become the teacher of her 3 adorable wives. Because of that, she had wanted the chance to speak with their partner at least once, so she had asked Tex to bring him there. The explanation left him stunned. Still nervous, he asked what exactly she planned to teach them. She only laughed softly and decided it was better not to say any more about that. Instead, she suggested that he tell her more about himself. Sometime later, he let out a deep sigh. Angelina quietly remarked that they had talked for quite a while. He admitted that, because she was such a good listener, the conversation had continued much longer than he expected. Even so, he realized it was time to return, since his family would start worrying about him. She agreed, acknowledging that it was indeed time for him to head back. She quietly told Rita that if he ever felt like talking with her again, he could call for her in private. He turned toward her in confusion, unable to understand what she meant. She then added that she would also be happy if he included her among the people he loved. Caught completely off guard, he could only respond with surprise. She softly insisted that she was serious. A startled gasp escaped him as his face turned a deep shade of red. Seeing his reaction, Angelina admitted that even she was beginning to feel embarrassed. After leaving the room, he quietly muttered to himself that he felt dizzy. It was not only the alcohol that had affected him, but also Angelina's charm. Just then, a girl's voice echoed loudly, complaining that someone should properly say goodbye to their mama before leaving. Nexon immediately apologized to his mother. Hearing the word, mama, Rita turned toward the voice. It sounded strangely familiar. The moment their eyes met, both of them froze where they stood. Meanwhile, deep within a distant forest, a group of adventurers carefully searched the area around them. One of the men quietly noted that they had finally found the hiding place of what remained of the Crimson Topaz. He called out to Nikto Refkastel and remarked that he was glad a mage like her had joined the quest. According to him, all that remained was to finish the inspection. One of the women cast a detection spell. Nikto did the same. The woman instructed everyone to examine the belongings left behind by the remnants. She pointed out several items, noting that some reacted to magic power, while another reacted only weakly, making her wonder whether it carried some kind of blessing. Nikto examined another object and observed that it also responded to magic power. The woman asked if that was everything. Nikto confirmed that it was, explaining that the remaining items showed no reaction to magic at all. Alex expressed relief that none of the items appeared to be cursed. The man behind him agreed, remarking that dealing with cursed objects would have been a real problem. Alec then instructed everyone to prepare the recovered items for delivery to the guild. After that, he called out to Nikto and tossed an object toward her. She caught it with a puzzled look and wondered what it was. He explained that since the purpose of the quest had been to recover enchanted items, the ordinary belongings were free for them to keep and sell. She carefully examined the object in her hand and thought that it was a rather strange-looking amulet. Since it did not seem to possess any magical power, she decided to keep it and placed it inside her pouch. After loading the recovered items into the wagon, Alec changed the subject and asked whether she would like to continue working together with them from then on. She politely declined the offer while thanking him for asking. One of the women commented that it was unfortunate, admitting that having another female mage on the team would have made her happy. Another man suddenly remembered that Nikto had once belonged to the Jet Black Wolves. She briefly confirmed that it was true. He then mentioned hearing that their leader, Jill, had attacked the town of Amulus, only to be defeated by his former companion, Rita, before being executed a few days earlier. The unexpected news left Nikto visibly surprised. A few days after the meeting with Angelina, the day finally came for Luna's birthday celebration. Everyone gathered at a restaurant near the Adventurer Guild to celebrate the occasion. Everyone gathered together and wished Luna a happy birthday. She smiled warmly and thanked them. Edith reminded everyone that they were family now. Claus explained that among the elves, it was a tradition to give a knife to someone who had reached adulthood, adding that he was happy she liked the gift. Yuri presented her with the white coat worn by healers. Nexon told her that they would be working together in the same place in 3 days and hoped they would get along well. Riggs gave her an apron along with a knife from their side, while Mirren let out a proud laugh. Tex then handed over a gift from the vigilante group. Ada explained that it was a silver necklace with a small protective enchantment. Angelina stepped forward with her own present, offering a bottle of cologne. She mentioned that she had chosen the same scent that Rita liked. Mina happily called out to her older sister and handed over another gift. Valerie explained that it was from the women's group. Hilda added that everyone had carefully chosen things they believed would suit her and hoped she would like them. As Luna opened the package, she looked at it in surprise. Inside was a cute dress. She wondered if it would really suit her. Naomi reassured her that because she was cute, she should wear something cute from time to time. Hearing those words, tears slowly formed in Luna's eyes. She thanked everyone, admitting that it was the first time she had ever celebrated her birthday like this. Mina quietly smiled at her older sister. Without warning, Luna embraced her tightly and apologized for celebrating before her. She promised that when Mina's birthday came, they would celebrate it even more. Mina happily agreed. Angelina then suggested that Luna try on the dress. Edith offered to help, and Luna accepted before the two of them entered the changing room. After a short while, Edith announced that they were back. Angelina welcomed everyone once again and invited them to greet the birthday girl. Wearing the new dress, Luna shyly asked how she looked. The room immediately filled with cheerful reactions as everyone admired her appearance. Tex quietly expressed his amazement. Claus commented that she truly was beautiful. At the same time, Yuri gently pushed Rita forward, reminding him that it was his turn. Feeling embarrassed, he handed Luna his present. Seeing the size of the box, she teasingly wondered if it was a wedding ring, though it seemed rather large. He quickly explained that it was actually a bracelet. She smiled, making it clear that she already knew that, before implying that there was something else he should be saying. Embarrassed, he admitted that the dress suited her very well and that she looked really cute. Behind them, Hilda quietly remarked that the compliment had been surprisingly effective. Valerie looked confused and asked what she meant. Hilda pointed toward Luna and commented that she needed to shake up Rita even more, otherwise everything would be pointless. Valerie agreed, smiling mischievously as she remarked that he needed to become more aware of all of them. Luna quietly repeated the word, cute, to herself before calling out to him again. He turned his attention toward her, waiting. In her heart, she resolved that she would one day make him call her beautiful and eventually make him propose to her. Without any warning, she suddenly leaped toward him and kissed both of his cheeks. Hilda gasped in surprise. Valerie immediately cried out that Luna had gone too far. After things finally settled down, everyone returned to their seats. Naomi then brought up another topic, asking whether Luna and Hilda had any plans to join the Adventurer Guild. Hilda simply replied that she was not interested. Luna explained that she would be helping Papa at the clinic, so joining the Adventurer Guild was not something she really cared about. Naomi nodded in understanding. She remarked that, when it came to fighting ability alone, Luna was already as strong as Tex, making it feel like a waste. She added that someone had become incredibly strong with only that much. Luna smiled and thanked her for the compliment. Naomi then shifted her attention to Hilda, commenting that, while they were on the subject, she knew Hilda was still hiding her trump card. Hilda simply wondered about that before letting out a quiet chuckle. At that moment, Valerie suddenly brought up another question, wondering why Rita was still only an F-rank adventurer. Hearing his name, he flinched from where he was sitting behind them. Claus looked puzzled and wondered what she meant. Tex explained that after registering with the Adventurer Guild, promotion exams normally began during the 3rd year, so adventurers usually remained at F-rank until then. Feeling awkward, Rita quietly tried to respond. Before he could continue, another voice interrupted. Everyone immediately turned toward the source of the voice. Nikto calmly explained that during his promotion exam, he had become so nervous the day before the interview that he could not sleep. Because of that, he drank too much alcohol and failed the exam. The entire group fell silent in surprise after hearing the explanation. She then added that the same thing had happened for 3 years in a row. He stared at her in complete surprise. Ada was equally shocked by her sudden appearance. Mina looked at her curiously and wondered who she was. Ada explained that she was the same person she had mentioned before from the party. Nikto greeted Rita, making it clear that it had been quite some time since they had last met. Smiling, he asked why she was there. She explained that after visiting the guild, she learned he was at the restaurant, so she decided to come. After a while, everyone settled into their seats and continued talking. Nikto quietly reflected on everything that had happened, finding it unfortunate that both Jill and Gilliam were gone. He admitted that he felt he should have said something as well. She quickly reassured him not to blame himself, reminding him that none of it had been his fault. Changing the subject, she looked around at everyone and quietly remarked about the friends and family surrounding him. A gentle smile appeared on her face as she admitted that she was happy to see him living happily. She then accepted Mina's outstretched hand and mentioned that she would also be staying in Amulus for a few days, hoping they would get along. Mina happily agreed. The two of them shook hands, but the moment their hands touched, Mina suddenly froze as an unsettling chill ran through her. She instinctively shook her hand, looking confused, before quietly glancing back at Nikto. Naomi noticed the reaction and asked what was wrong. Mina brushed it aside, insisting that it was nothing before suggesting that they eat the cookies together.